Hello everybody, welcome back to another episode of The Casual Criminalist. As always, I'm your host Simon, I'm still one of my writers, in this case David. Thank you, David. Very simple title today, Bill Cosby, allegedly. Yeah, because Bill Cosby got out somehow, like on some technicality, which is just like, goddamn. If you do some crimes, make sure you got that money for those expensive lawyers. Anyway, the format of the show, if you're new, is that I've never read this before. David obviously wrote it for me. I'm going to read it. Dear audience, we're going to explore it together, so let's jump in. Today, we're doing a deep dive into the veteran comedian, actor, major brand spokesman, and fictional gynecologist, Dr. William Henry Cosby Jr. Wait, was he really a doctor? I mean, Bill Cosby, fictional gynecologist. I realize I know absolutely nothing about Bill Cosby. People will be like, oh yeah. I mean, Americans, I feel like everyone knows who he is. And I know who he is, but only because of his crimes. So someone's like, what show did he play a fictional gynecologist on? I honestly could not tell you. I'm sure if someone told me the name, as David inevitably will, I will remember, but I don't know. So strap on your ugly sweaters, crack open a can of new Coke, and get ready for a Kodak moment you'll never forget. I have no idea about any of these references. Unless, of course, your new Coke is purple and fizzing like a potion in a monster movie, in which case your memories of the next 2 or 3 hours might fade into nothingness faster than Ghost Dad. Again, what is Ghost Dad? So many references that I don't know. For legal reasons, I'm departing from my usual and preferred format. I'll not be starting today's episode with a cold open, since that would require reporting on witness testimony before I could issue the following statement. I, Dr. David Charles Baker, scriptwriter of The Casual Criminalist, do not claim to speak with any authority or expert knowledge on the life or times of Bill Cosby, or the unproven allegations of misconduct that have been made against him. Yes, me neither, David. Me as the host of the show, neither do I. The information provided in the following script is derived entirely from primary and secondary sources produced by third parties that are well within the public domain and do not constitute a direct assertion of fact or legal allegation on my part. I make no claims as to the veracity of these or third-party allegations. Yeah, this is going to be an episode that's full of,
according to, this person said,
absolutely not our own. We're just reporting here on what has been alleged. Allegedly. This script is produced for entertainment purposes only. Any personal opinions or speculations expressed in the script do not constitute statements of fact. I get the feeling that one's covering mostly me. My wild-ass speculations. Any inaccuracies made in the script are entirely unintentional and not made with malicious intent, notwithstanding. I, Dr. David Charles Baker, personally accept all the possible legal liability for the words in this script. I don't think that's how it works, David. I mean, you could say that, but people could choose to see whoever they want, and not really helping my case, am I here? I'm just going to shut the fuck up and get on with it. Conversely, Simon is reading this script to camera for the first time without prior knowledge of its contents. Any improvised commentary made by him in reaction to the script is just entertainment. Yeah, goddamn it. And not for documentary or journalistic purposes. Any factual inaccuracies that may occur in the improvised commentary are the result of the show's format and are not made with malicious intent. Yes, just that like, for sure. I feel like, David wrote a script for me recently. I was like, whoa, David, you need to say allegedly. You can't just be like this. And David has now thoroughly covered his ass. Bill Cosby's convictions on 3 counts of aggravated sexual assault against Andrea Constant were overturned on the 30th of June 2001 by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court. At the time of writing, April 25th, 2024, Bill Cosby has no other criminal convictions or pending criminal charges against him, and no other allegations have been proven in a criminal court of law. This episode of The Casual Criminalist is not an exploration of any proven misconduct or criminal wrongdoing by Bill Cosby. This episode of The Casual Criminalist is an exploration of the jurisprudence involved in his being charged, convicted, and then having his convictions overturned, along with the relevant background to those events. For precedent, please see the episode A Dingo Ate My Baby, whereby we explore the jurisprudence involved in the case of Linda Chamberlain and Catherine Folby in Australia. There we go. Writing that statement was stressful for me. I'm going to pop a few Quaaludes and pass out for a few hours. Oh, it's just like, oh god, it's on the nose. They will return directly to the man who, prior to his prosecution in a criminal court for being an alleged serial R-wordist, thank you YouTube, was once known to hundreds of millions as, quote, America's dad. Meet Bill Cosby, figuratively speaking. William Henry Cosby Jr. was born on the 12th of July, 1937 in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. The Cosby family name was derived from a white slave owner, John Cosby, who sold Bill Cosby's great-great-grandfather Samuel along with his mother for $315. That's $13,000 in modern money at a slave auction in 1833. Bill's great-grandfather, Zachariah, was 24 years old and working on a slave farm in Virginia when he was freed in February 1865. Zachariah Cosby and his wife, Louisa, went on to have a whopping 18 children, one of whom was the second Samuel Crosby, Bill's grandfather. Samuel and his wife Gertrude were part of the vast black diaspora who fled the segregationist South in the early 20th century. They settled in Philadelphia in 1911. Cosby's father, William Sr., was born there in 1913. On September 6, 1936, 23-year-old William Sr. married his 24-year-old wife, Anna. William Sr. worked as a factory laborer, and Anna, as was expected at the time, kept their modest row house on Beechwood Street in a mixed neighborhood consisting of Poles, Irish, Blacks, Jews, and Germans in North Philly. According to Bill Cosby, his father, William Sr., was an alcoholic who regularly beat his wife. If witnessing this impacted the boy's mental health during his formative years, like such trauma has done for so many subjects on the Casual Criminalist, as a child, Bill Cosby gave no sign of it. Meanwhile, William Sr.'s alcoholism interfered with his ability to work, reducing the family income. In 1940, when Bill Cosby was 3 years old, the family was forced to downgrade, moving from their house on Beechwood Street to a dilapidated slum without hot water or a tub on Stewart Street. Combined with his father's regular bouts of drunkenness and domestic violence, Bill Cosby would later recall the year he spent on Stewart Street as, quote, the worst in his life. It's got to be so hard. Like, I think about this quite a bit, where it's like, life's good, everything's ticking along, and then you're like, oh, life's not so good anymore. Like, generally, the experience of my life has just been like up and up and up. And at some point, it's obviously just not going to continue going up and might even slide down a little bit. And then you're like, that's kind of scary. I mean, hopefully I won't ever end up living in a slum, but I mean, you never know. When the United States entered World War II in 1941, William Sr. enlisted in the Navy and served as a mess hall steward. For the next 15 years, William Sr. would spend most of his life at sea, rarely returning to Philadelphia, and only sending a pittance from his wages home, while he spent the rest on drunken carousing during shore leave in various world ports. This left his wife, Anna, to raise Bill and his younger brothers, James, Robert, and Russell, as a de facto single mother. She found work as a housemaid and moved her family to a small apartment at Parish Place, next to a railway track. That's got to be so hard. We've got friends, my wife and I, who's got 3 boys, young boys. Boys are wild. Like, I have a boy and a girl, and the girl's kind of chill, and the boy's pretty wild, and I think the boy is less wild because of the girl. When you got like 3 boys, they're just crazy. And she's got 4 boys, single parents, in an apartment, like, which is probably small. Did we say it was government subsidized? I see that here, government subsidized. Like, that's small. Trains rattled past day and night. I remember I once went to look at an office. I was looking for like a new office building to work at. I think it was my first office that I was looking for. And I looked at this one place and I went around and I was like, oh, it's pretty nice. This is pretty good. Everything I need looks pretty good. And then I noticed there's a railway like track running very close. And I say to the realtor, like, how loud are the trains coming through here? And the guy's like, oh, not really loud at all. Everything's fine. Literally, like 1 minute later, a train comes past, and I'm like, pretty fucking loud, isn't it, mate? I did not get that place. I kind of need quiet to work. But at least the apartment had hot water and a tub, though Anna could not afford a telephone. Is a tub such a big thing? I've got a bathtub at my house. I've never used it. Not once. This area of Philly was composed of government-subsidized housing recently built over the bulldozed remains of the slums. It was part of a New Deal-era federal government project to improve the living conditions of inner-city families, and thus in the 1940s, Cosby's new neighborhood gained the nickname The Projects. However, the effort failed, and within 20 years, the term The Projects became synonymous with poverty, crime, drug addiction, prostitution, and gang warfare in predominantly black neighborhoods all over America, just as the term slum had previously. It was as if the New Deal had never happened and the slums had been left standing. Yeah, because you just go in and you demolish houses and then you build houses. You haven't dealt with the core problem. Age 6, Bill Cosby attended Mary Channing Wister Elementary School, 2 blocks away from Parish Place, where he proved himself to be a bright student. His first grade teacher kept assigning him extra homework until one day she told Bill that she had run out. Bill asked for some second grade work, to which his teacher replied that she, quote, only knew the first grade stuff. Cosby was also a charismatic child, which allowed him to form fast friendships. As a kid, he ran with a ragtag group of boys with colourful nicknames like Bootsy and Skeet. That would later form the inspiration for Cosby's cartoon Fat Albert. The boys spent most of their time playing sports in the street. One day, Cosby came dead last in a competition with his friends, and as a punishment, he had to face a wall, pull down his pants, thus exposing his ass to the other boys, while they threw rubber balls at him. He's got such a specific memory of this from his childhood. Okay. Ada Cosby happened to look out the window while this was happening, and she screamed at her son to pull his pants up and never expose himself on the street again. Yeah, but he lost a bet. You can't just renege on that. Bill Cosby's neighborhood in the projects was pretty rough, and there was a gang of teenagers who used to prowl underneath the railroad tracks on 9th Street, robbing younger kids of their pocket money, and if they couldn't pay, beating them up. Bill Cosby, who certainly didn't have pocket money, avoided violence by making the teenagers laugh, and as a result, they left Bill and his friends alone. Yeah, there's a lot you can get away with if you're just likable. If people like you, they'll just be like, yeah, they're going to beat you up today. Being likable is good. In June 1946, when Bill was 8 years old, his younger brother James died, age 7, of rheumatic fever. After his brother's death, Bill lost interest in his schooling and gained a reputation as the class clown. His grades slipped accordingly. In 1947, when Bill turned 10, he joined the Boy Scouts. His mother couldn't afford to buy him the uniform, so he wore only the neck scarf. His troop also couldn't afford to leave town to go camping in the wild, so they contented themselves with taking the trolley over to Fairmont Park in the middle of the city, where they picked sassafras flowers until they were ordered to move along by the police. In their apartment at Parish Place, Bill and his brother Russell had to share a bed, and baby Robert slept in a crib in his mother's room. Often, at the Cosby house, there was nothing but cereal to eat, and the family otherwise subsisted on leftovers Anna brought home from the dinners she cooked as a housemaid. At Christmas, when Anna could not afford a tree, Bill used a colourfully painted wooden crate as a replacement. In the summer of 1948, at the age of just 11, Bill got a part-time job as a bull boy at a local white-only golf club, and a second one as a bathroom attendant at the Broadway Hotel in order to supplement the family income. That autumn, Bill Cosby entered the 6th grade class of Miss Forchick, a friend of his mother's who recognized that Bill was bright and strove with the utmost kindness to bring him back into line. It worked, and Bill quickly became known as the teacher's pet. His grades shot up to A's. Forchick even convinced Cosby to try out for the school play, where he was paired with a young girl named Betty Anderson, as they performed numbers from Rodgers and Hammerstein's musical South Pacific. From that point forward, Cosby caught the theater bug and further developed his natural talents as an entertainer. And that wasn't the only bug he caught in the 6th grade. According to his 2014 biography, it was around that time that he began to flirt enthusiastically with girls. What age is 6th grade? 11? He's 11? Dying young, Billo. When acting as a crossing guard, Cosby once got so absorbed in flirting with a girl named Elaine that she nearly got hit by a car. In September 1949, at the age of 12, Cosby started 7th grade at the Thomas Fitzsimmons Junior High School. It was quite the commute because it wasn't a school in the projects, and had insisted on sending her son across town in order for him to get a better education. It did, however, require Cosby to wake before dawn. Meanwhile, Cosby continued to work odd jobs to help the family. A paper route before school, shoe shining and bagging groceries after school, and assisting the milkman on the weekends. Wow, this sounds like tough, man. Like, you got school, and then basically the rest of your time is made up of work. Like, I remember when I had a job when I was a kid, and I used to work Tuesday evenings, and then Saturday afternoon, and then sometimes Sunday for like the whole day, but not every Sunday. And it was like, man, that's a lot of work. When you got school as well. On Friday and Wednesday nights, boy-girl dances were held at the local rec centre in the projects. The young Cosby, gifted with charisma, a sense of humour and a talent for dancing, did very well with the girls there. The following year, at age 13, his success with the opposite sex was assisted by a massive growth spurt that made him tall as well, eventually ending up at 6'1" by the end of puberty. Cosby's various part-time jobs and his affinity for girls just distracted him, and his grades slipped again. Nevertheless, Cosby managed to bluff his way through an entrance exam and landed at the prestigious Philadelphia Central High School, a predominantly white prep school for elite colleges, in autumn of 1951. Cosby immediately signed up to play football, another way to get into a good college without stellar academics, but he broke his arm in the first game, putting him out for the rest of the season. By spring 1952, his arm had healed, and Cosby tried out for track and field, landing on the varsity squad. It's Bill Cosby. He's completely innocent and everything. But this is a great start, coming up from the slums to the projects to being smart enough to get into an elite school that's going to feed you into an elite college. That's pretty good. That's pretty damn good. Good on Mum for this. Meanwhile, Anna had for 10 years scrupulously saved every penny of her wages and what William Sr. had sent home, accruing approximately $750 or $8,800 in modern money. She used it on a down payment on a house and moved the family out of the projects to a lower middle class neighborhood on North 21st Street in Germantown, a suburb of Philadelphia. Despite a superficial contradiction of terms, 70 years of black diaspora from the segregationist South had transformed Germantown into a predominantly black neighborhood. The Cosby's house was small, but it was a drastic improvement over the apartment at Parish Place. Anna's fixation on class mobility and determination to get out of the projects was something that she attempted to drill into her son Bill. It sounds like she's getting him well out of the projects and obviously becomes Bill Cosby, so we know that worked. Cosby, however, was more lackadaisical about the work required to rise in the world. He continued to play class clown at Central High, chronically neglected his homework, and filled his spare time with sports and fantasies about becoming a jazz drummer. He also used some of his part-time money to buy used television, avidly watching the comedy shows and variety hours of the 1950s. On the weekends, instead of studying, he prowled the town with a group of boys called the Downcats, dressed to the nines in Brooks Brothers suits, hanging out in diners and attending house parties. Okay, how old was he? Straight to Brooks Brothers, huh? They'd stay out until about 4 a.m. Cosby claims, and his various biographies reinforce, that he did not drink at these parties because he'd seen his father's alcoholism, and that he smoked pot only once but he didn't like it because it reminded him of his grandfather's cigars. Cosby was nevertheless the life of the party and dated a furious sequence of girls in a short space of a few months. He only seemed to get rejected by girls whose parents, according to his biographer Mark Whitaker, warned their daughters about him. Uh-oh, Billy boy! The American Dream, allegedly. In 10th grade, at Central High School, when Cosby was 15 years old, his grades became so appalling that he was forced to repeat a year. His grades didn't improve, and he was held back yet again. It's gotta be a bit weird. Like, at school, it seems like the class below you and the class above you are so different from you, and to be like, can you imagine being at school and just being 2 years older than the rest of the people in your class? You'd be like a giant. You'd be like this, and it'll be, not having their voices broken and stuff. Be weird. With the writing on the wall, in 1954, Cosby transferred to Germantown High, where the standards weren't as exacting and he could potentially slip through to graduation. Cosby quickly became captain of the football team and the track team. His low grades prevented him from being allowed on the basketball team, though. At Germantown High, Cosby finally managed to squeak through to the 11th grade in 1955 at the age of 18, when most of his Central High friends were already graduating. Cosby was still flunking a lot of his classes and realized he might never graduate, so he dropped out altogether. But he's smart, right? So he just can't be bothered. He'll be fine. Cosby got a couple of jobs at a shoe repair store and an auto body shop. He initially took remedial classes at night school to get his diploma, but he quickly dropped out of that as well. Cosby drifted for a few months, depressed and unsure of what he would do in life. Then in 1956, he enlisted in the Navy. Initially, Cosby was not used to the degree of discipline the Navy required, and somewhat pathetically wrote his mother, begging her to contact his base commander and get him discharged. Bit by bit, however, Cosby began to behave himself and rose to the rank of Chief Petty Officer. Then he transferred to the Navy Hospital and served as a corpsman, taking care of wounded sailors. He learned how to draw blood, administer x-rays, and provide physical therapy. Cosby served as a corpsman for the National Naval Medical Center in Maryland and for the U.S. Marines in Virginia, before being transferred to Argenta Naval Station in a U.S.-occupied port in Newfoundland, Canada. During his service, Cosby played on various military football, basketball, and track teams, and occasionally played as a drummer in a jazz band. Seen as a charismatic joker, Cosby was always popular with his peers. Then, in autumn of 1958, Cosby dislocated his shoulder in a sports accident so severely that he needed surgery. He was sent to the Naval Hospital in Philadelphia. There he charmed the nurse in charge of Ward P, Lieutenant Jean Lamb, and convinced her to allow him to transfer permanently to the Philly Hospital rather than return to Newfoundland. Cosby distinguished himself at the Naval Hospital for the quality of his patient care, and as his tour of duty drew to a close in 1960, Cosby decided that he wanted to go to university, get a degree in physical education, and become a gym teacher. Doesn't he? He didn't even graduate. He didn't get his high school diploma there. He's going to go to college. Cosby busied himself earning his high school equivalency diploma via correspondence, and got Lieutenant Lamb to agree to write him a letter of recommendation. Okay, good for you. But before his discharge, Cosby had to serve aboard the USS Fort Mandan, his first actual ship posting, which was making a run to Guantanamo Bay in Cuba. The journey scared the wits out of Cosby, especially when the ship hit a storm. Interesting choice joining the Navy then, if you're afraid of a little weather. Upon returning to Philadelphia, Cosby went out of his way to charm the track coach at Temple University and managed to finagle himself a sports scholarship. Cosby accordingly sat the SATs and scored a pretty wretched 500 points, which should have ended his university dreams right there and then. However, American universities love their athletes for some reason, despite it having bugger all to do with academic knowledge. But college football is a very lucrative industry for everybody except the actual players, and so Cosby was warmly welcomed into Temple University's hallowed halls. Yeah, it is weird, America, that we definitely don't have this, where it's just, oh, you're really good at sports? Well, we'll just forgive the academics. You just come play on our football team. And I get that it's lucrative and stuff, but it's got to be weird. You know, you're like Princeton or whatever, and you're like, I can do maths. 2 + 2 is 4. I don't know, sorry about the stereotypical drawly American accent. Probably vaguely racist, but you know what I mean. It's got to be weird for those people who go there on a sports scholarship and there's just all these giant wrinkly brains around and you're like, I like football. It's like Forrest Gump accent, isn't it? Life is like a box of chocolates.
After only 5 years of playing football, I got a college degree.
At Temple, Cosby excelled at track and field and joined the football team. He also began regularly playing as a jazz drummer. As usual, Cosby quickly made friends and began dating extensively. As for his grades, they were middling at best. But it was in his remedial English class that Cosby first had the idea that he could become a comedy writer. He started doing stand-up comedy routines at open mic nights in Philadelphia, along with performing to captive audiences at a small bar called The Cellar, where Cosby worked as a part-time bartender. It was through this that Cosby scored an audition for paid stand-up work in Greenwich Village in New York. The audition was a success, and Cosby was told to come back the following summer for regular work. Cosby arrived in Greenwich Village in 1962, where he performed stand-up at the Gaslight Cafe between musical acts. He was on call between 8 p.m. and 4 a.m. every night and slept in the storeroom. Cosby quickly distinguished himself as a rare talent. On July the 26th, Cosby's act was covered in the New York Times. The article, however, written by a white liberal author, pigeon-toed Cosby's acts as ripping off racial tensions in America. In fact, Cosby had only a few fairly tepid jokes that were racially themed. For example, quoting, "I used to live in a nice neighborhood, but then 2 white families moved in." Cosby was unsettled by being classified as yet another angry black comic, and at that point decided to eliminate any racial themes from his act. Around the same time, he decided he was going to work clean, eschewing all the curse words and saucy content. David says, speaking of saucy content, now is a good time to plug his book. David has a book, The History... I got a copy of it. Sex, 2 Billion Years of Procreation and Recreation, written by David Baker. And what's that? A foreword by me. Pick it up at your good bookstore, at good bookstores. That's what people say, right? Pick it up at good bookstores. Why not? Give it a crack. Meanwhile, notable talent agent Roy Silver booked Cosby as a client. When the summer ended, Cosby tried to maintain a balance between his comedy career and his enrollment at Temple. In November 1962, Cosby bowed to the inevitable and dropped out of university. Transitioning to comedy full-time, Cosby played clubs in Philadelphia and New York, and quickly he began to get offers from elsewhere, playing Chicago and Washington, D.C. in February and March of 1963. The money was pretty good too. He was offered $500, or about $5,000 in modern money, for a week's work in Washington. God damn, okay. After arriving, Cosby's booking was extended to a whole month, netting him the modern equivalent of $20,000. Not bad for a newly christened comic at the age of 25. Holy, he must be a talent. They're paying a random new dude $20,000 a month in modern money? That's sick. I mean, sick good. During his time in Washington, D.C., Cosby was introduced to a young black woman who was studying psychology at the University of Maryland named Camille Hanks. The 19-year-old Camille was raised just outside of Washington, D.C. by relatively affluent parents. Her father was a chemist at a hospital and mother was a childcare worker. Both of them had college degrees. Camille had attended private Catholic schools, and as a highly intelligent young woman, she was a shoo-in for university. Camille Hanks was also extremely beautiful. By their second week of dating, Cosby had already asked Camille to marry him. Moving fast, my dude. When Cosby's time in Washington, D.C. came to an end, he headed to New York and called Camille almost every night. On the weekends, Cosby drove 4 hours back to Maryland to see her. He was making serious money at that point and could afford a Dodge convertible. Camille's parents, however, did not approve of their 19-year-old daughter dating a man several years older than her who worked in seedy nightclubs. Yeah, but he also gets paid $20,000. He's making $250,000 a year in modern money. That's something. It's like, yeah, he works at CD Night, but he's a very successful comic. In the early summer of 1963, Camille went up to New York City to visit Cosby, and her parents were infuriated. However, Cosby's meteoric rise in show business began to slowly melt these objections away. In June 1963, Cosby was featured in the prominent showbiz magazine Billboard, and in August he appeared on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. For context, if you made it as a stand-up on Carson, that's pretty much your career assured. Cosby performed extremely well, got called over to Carson's desk after his stand-up routine, a significant sign of Carson's approval, and the show aired to millions of viewers across the country later that night. Then things began to happen very rapidly. Within days, Cosby was signed by the prestigious William Morris talent agency and was contacted by Warner Brothers, who wanted Cosby to make a comedy album for them. Such albums were all the rage in those days, so I guess it's like a comedy special. Wow, this is a meteoric rise. Not even 2 years in the industry, and Cosby was already looking like a comedy A-lister. In September, Cosby appeared on The Jack Paar Show, and in October he flew out to Los Angeles for a guest spot on the variety show Hootenanny. He was also supposed to appear on The Gary Moore Show in November, but the Kennedy assassination delayed his appearance. In December, Cosby gave another successful performance on Johnny Carson to rave reviews. With that, Cosby purchased an engagement ring, drove down to Washington, and paid a visit to the home of Camille's parents. Cosby asked her father for permission to wed his daughter. I mean, he might have had objections earlier, right? But he just saw her. What was the guy's name? Even I heard of this dude. Johnny Carson. He's like on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson like multiple times. You'd be like, yeah, I know he's successful. He's like very publicly successful. Despite his earlier objections to Cosby, Camille's father gave his assent. Camille's mother was not pleased at all, but didn't stand in the way. After a very short engagement, Bill Cosby married Camille. On January the 25th, 1964, Camille had not yet turned 20. No, but she's 19. He's what, in his mid-20s? Mid-20s, so let's say he's 25, half age plus 7 is 19. Yeah, that's fine. Within the span of a short time, the high school and college dropout's entire life had been transformed. He was famous. He was well on his way to being rich. He had a beautiful new wife. It seemed like one of those Hollywood rags to riches fairy tales, but according to numerous allegations, below the surface, things were not what they seemed. American Nightmare. In 1964, Cosby continued to make successful television appearances, which in turn made him high in demand at comedy clubs around the country. They began paying him appearance fees of between $750 and $2,500 per week, or $7,500 to $25,000 for a week's work in modern money. God damn, he's over $1 million a year. Woo! He's just like a year or two into it. For perspective, Cosby was now earning for a week's appearance at a comedy club at least what it had taken his mother, Anna, 10 years to save as a housemaid living in the projects of Philly. Yes, kind of nuts, isn't it? So good were the comedy club opportunities that Cosby combined his honeymoon with a tour down the East Coast. Meanwhile, his first comedy album, Bill Cosby is a Very Funny Fellow, Right?, was selling like hotcakes. In April 1964, he was featured on the cover of Ebony magazine, and in July, he had already recorded his second comedy album, I Started Out as a Child, which soon hit number 85 in the charts, being the only comedy album to crack into the top 100. A month later, Cosby was back in Los Angeles for a table read, having been cast in a television adventure series, I Spy. The show premiered the following year in September 1965. It ultimately ran for 3 seasons and 82 episodes, which Cosby got paid roughly $20,000 in modern money per episode. During those 3 seasons, Cosby won 3 consecutive Emmys for a lead actor in a drama series. Whoa! Holy that's impressive. As a result of this development in his career, Cosby and Camille settled in LA. And it was around this time that Christina Rulli claims that Bill Cosby R-worded her. According to an exclusive interview that Rulli gave to Philadelphia Magazine in 2014, she first met Bill Cosby at an unspecified date in 1965. She was then a 22-year-old working as a secretary at a talent agency in Beverly Hills. Cosby came in for a meeting. Afterward, he allegedly walked up to a group of secretaries in the office and allegedly said to Rulli, quote, "I'm going to be on Hollywood Palace tonight, and I'm going to have a party at my home afterwards." Rulli replied that she would come. She didn't think anything of it at the time, being a rather attractive young blonde who was frequently invited to parties by famous clients to add to the eye candy in the room. Rulli arrived at Cosby's house at 10 p.m, only to discover that there was no one else there. You'd be like, uh-oh. Not even his wife. Uh-oh. According to Rulli, Cosby told her that Camille was out of town. Then Cosby allegedly invited Rulli into his house and showed her his newborn daughter Erica asleep in a crib. weird, dude. That's weird. This is all alleged, remember. Really took note of the fact that neither a maid nor a nanny was anywhere to be seen, despite the fact that Cosby had only recently got back from his appearance on the Hollywood Palace. According to Rooley, Cosby then led her to the kitchen, where he allegedly poured her a glass of bourbon mixed with 7-Up. Rooley claims she drank 2 of them before her faculties suddenly became hazy. She has a vague memory of allegedly being stripped of her dress, nylon stockings, and high heels, and somehow winding up in Cosby's swimming pool. Dude, these drugs that just make you forget all this stuff is scary, bro. I took an Ambien recently because I had laser eye surgery, and afterwards they're like, you gotta lie down for a minute and then just take a nap. And I'm like, it's the middle of the day, and they're like, that's why we give you this sleeping pill. And I took that I went to sleep in my lounge, and I woke up 5 hours later in my bed, not really sure how I got there. And my wife was like, yeah, well, I put you there because you came up from the lounge and were just walking around the house saying that your eyes hurt. And I'm like, I have no memory of this. It's wild. And that's just Ambien. It's not one of these date R-word drugs. Then Rooley claims that she somehow wound up in Cosby's bedroom on his bed. According to her, it was at this point that she blacked out. To quote Rooley, at that age, 2 bourbon and 7s would not have knocked me out cold. In those days, I could drink most men under the table. It was a standard 8-ounce glass, and they were not overly strong, or I would have noticed it. He must have drugged me. There is just one point at which I was having a drink and feeling normal, and the next I was somehow passed out completely. He must have slipped something into my drink. It's the only way to go lights out like that. According to Rooley, she woke up several hours later, naked, in Bill Cosby's bed. Cosby was allegedly next to her with his shirt off and his pants unzipped. As Rooley was just regaining consciousness, Cosby allegedly tried to force her to perform fellatio. Rooley claims that she resisted, broke away, and ran to the bathroom, where she vomited. When she exited the bathroom, Cosby had allegedly disappeared. By then, Rooley claims it was around 5 a.m. She got dressed, found that her nylons had been torn, got in her car, and drove home. Rooley showed up at work 4 hours later at 9 a.m. She asked her fellow secretaries why nobody else had gone to Cosby's house for the party. Rooley indicates in her 2014 interview that the muted, head-shaking response of her peers implied that first, there was no party, and second, that Cosby already had enough of a reputation that the other secretaries knew better than to go to his house, allegedly. Bro, your colleagues, what the f***? You'd be like, yo, Rooley, can I talk to you in the break room for just 1 sec? What the f***? This is, however, the earliest known allegation that we have against Cosby. Shortly after the alleged incident, Christina Rooley left her job at the talent agency and began working at a law firm. Not long after that, she got married. Rooley did not talk about her experience until several decades later in 2005 when Andrea Constand sued Bill Cosby in a civil trial. Rooley claims that she did not tell anyone about the incident because she was embarrassed putting herself in that position. I mean, what position? You went to his house thinking it was a party. He allegedly tricked you. What did you do wrong? Nothing. It was only after Constand came forward that Rooley says that she realized it must have happened to other women. Cosby's legal representatives deny that the above story is true. In 1966, Cosby bumped into the legendary jazz musician Miles Davis at the O'Hare Airport in Chicago. According to his biography, during the course of a conversation about I Spy, Cosby said, quote, I just hope that they give me one woman to have a relationship with before the show is over. They're acting like black people don't go to bed or have love lives like white people do. I hope they just give me a love scene with one woman one time. Just let me have a kissing scene just once. I mean, definitely weird. Definitely weird. Perhaps coincidentally, or perhaps not, around the same time, a lawyer from the National Association for the Advancement of Colored People, or NAACP, paid a visit to the show's head writer to demand that Cosby get a love interest. In response, in the second season of I Spy, the writers gave Cosby not one love interest, but 3. The famous jazz singer Nancy Wilson, the up-and-coming actress Cicely Tyson, and the singer-turned-mainstream actress Leslie Uggams. Cosby would continue to work with all 3 actresses on several projects over the years, and at the time of writing, none of them have made any allegations of misconduct. Cicely Tyson has gone on record saying in a memoir, quote, in all our years working together, he never laid a finger on me off set. Tyson would later marry Miles Davis in the Cosby home in 1981. With the airing of the third and final love arc for Cosby in I Spy in January 1967, the show began to be criticized for only giving Cosby love arcs with black women. This came at a time when the Supreme Court was overturning state laws that banned interracial marriage. But talking to the press at the time, Cosby said, quote, "As far as white women go, I want Scotty, his character, to be sterile. I believe in my women first." Okay then. However, during her appearance on The John and Ken Show in 2014, Carla Ferrigno, who is white, painted a rather different picture of Cosby's conduct and attitudes in 1967. Back then, she was still Carla Green, an 18-year-old Playboy bunny, model, and aspiring actress. She married Incredible Hulk actor Lou Ferrigno in 1980. According to Carla, on an unspecified date in 1967, she was taken by a man claiming to work in the record industry to Cosby's house. Both Bill Cosby and his wife Camille were allegedly there. According to Carla, they were all playing a game of billiards when she looked up and realized that her date and Camille were no longer in the room. Cosby then allegedly ordered Carla a cocktail, which she declined. Cosby allegedly insisted on his offer, but Carla still declined. Then, according to Carla Ferrigno, Cosby grabbed her forcefully and kissed her on the mouth. She allegedly responded by pushing Cosby away and ran down the hallway looking for a date, getting out of there as fast as she could. Speaking to Inside Edition in 2016, Carla Ferrigno claimed that Camille was Cosby's enabler. To quote Ferrigno, "His wife? She knew. She knew everything because every woman knows her husband. She had the plan. She knew what was going to happen." Carla Ferrigno remained silent about the alleged incident for years, only privately telling her husband Lou, but she came forward publicly with the allegations in 2014, claiming that she wanted to support the other alleged victims. A few months earlier, Bill and Camille Cosby had posed for the September 1966 cover of Ebony, with Camille dressed remarkably like Jackie Kennedy. During the accompanying interview, the then 22-year-old Camille described her husband as considerate, thoughtful, a great father and a good family man to his mother and brothers, but that he could also be, quote, temperamental, impulsive, and moody in private. On July the 12th, 1967, Bill Cosby celebrated his 30th birthday on the set of I Spy with a gaggle of Hollywood friends, including Sharon Tate, later murdered by the Manson family, and her boyfriend Roman Polanski, later accused of drugging and R-wording an underage girl before fleeing to Europe to avoid prosecution. Where he remains, right? Roman Polanski fled to... was it France? Does he live in France? And he just never went back, because he's like, yeah, I'm in trouble. In 1968, Cosby received word that NBC would not be renewing I Spy for a fourth season, but Cosby capped things off with winning his third consecutive Emmy for the show. Meanwhile, Cosby departed on a stand-up tour of 24 American cities, playing to enormous crowds and netting himself between $35,000 and $45,000 a pop, or between $315,000 and $400,000 in modern money. God damn, that's crazy money. He also aired a comedy special on NBC and was in talks with them about another sitcom role. Finally, Cosby's comedy albums were still selling like hotcakes. Warner Brothers offered Cosby $3.5 million to stay on their record label for another 5 years, $31 million in modern money. However, Cosby refused the offer and invested $2 million of his own fortune, $18 million in modern money, to start his own record label, Tetragrammation, which also produced films and television shows. It was Tetragrammation that put out the first Fat Albert cartoons in 1968 and 1969. That seems very smart. He's just like, no, I don't need you. I'm famous. I'm making this stuff. I can sell it. Thank you very much. Yet, with the production company, Cosby direly overextended himself. I guess it's like, you gotta be good at business as well. The records division struggled and the film division splashed out huge amounts of cash for prominent actors and directors with few finished projects to show for it. Combined with Cosby's extravagant purchases of properties and fancy cars, by 1969, it dawned on Cosby that he was running out of money. He only had $50,000 left in the bank. Only. I mean, yeah, but it's like, if you've got expenses like someone who makes millions a year, you're going to come across a bill for $50,000 at some point. I place the only in quotations there because that's still approximately $425,000 in modern terms. Yeah, but this is reasonable because that's what he was making in a night at some, like, didn't they say, yeah, between $315,000 and $400,000 in modern money? A pop? Like, bro, just go out and do a tour. This caused a great deal of stress behind the scenes, with Cosby splitting rather acrimoniously from his business partners, including his old agent Roy Silver. Nevertheless, Cosby quickly recovered, signing a 7-year comedy album deal with MCA Records in May 1969, making a killing with more stand-up tours and signing with NBC to produce the first iteration of The Bill Cosby Show, a sitcom where Cosby played a Los Angeles gym teacher. It first aired in 1969 and ultimately ran for 2 seasons. It was also around this time that Cosby turned his personal finances over to his wife Camille, who acted as his business manager from that point forward. As long as Camille's competent, I think that's pretty smart, because you're in it together. Like, the person you're married to is literally the person who you're in it together with most. So, yeah. Kind of makes sense for them to handle your affairs if you're not very good at it, and they can be. Camille soon developed a reputation for her ruthlessness. To quote Bill Cosby speaking in 1988 to Ebony, "People would rather deal with me than Camille. She's rather rough to deal with when it comes to my business." Yes, but that's why you have that person. Because if you're too nice, then it's like, that's not good. You need this person to handle your stuff. Like, I've got someone who handles all of this stuff for me. And it's like, of course, because I don't want to do it, and I'd be rubbish at it. This guy's like way more ruthless than me, as it should be. It was also in the tumultuous year of 1969 there was a spike in alleged sexual assaults. Joan Tarshis, who was then a 21-year-old comedy writer, claims that she first met Bill Cosby through a mutual friend. Cosby allegedly invited Tarshis to the set of The Bill Cosby Show, ostensibly to help her with the script that she was working on. According to Tarshis, Cosby took her to a nearby bungalow where he gave her a drink, and she fell unconscious. Tarshis said she awoke to find Cosby stripping off her clothing. Cosby then allegedly tried to force Tarshis to give him oral sex. She returned to New York and did not tell anyone what had happened. 2 years later, in 1971, Tarshis claims that Cosby phoned her house, spoke to her mother, and invited Tarshis to the Westbury Music Fair where Cosby would be performing. Tarshis claimed that she reluctantly agreed to go. According to her, Tarshis was again drugged and lost consciousness while riding in a limousine with Cosby. Look, this isn't your fault. But after you got drugged by the dude once, why are you accepting an invitation? And I know it's because he's like rich and powerful, and so that's why. That sucks. She claims that she awoke the next morning in bed with Cosby, who had allegedly undressed and R-worded her. Tarshis claims that she told her story to a freelance journalist, John Millward, in the 1980s, but that he declined to write a story. Joan Tarshis ultimately came forward with her allegations against Cosby in 2014. In 1969, Linda Traitz was an 18-year-old, new to Los Angeles, working as a waitress at Cafe Figaro, of which Bill Cosby was part owner. She claims that on an unspecified date, Cosby offered her a ride home in his Rolls-Royce after she finished her shift. According to Traitz, during the ride, Cosby said he would like to swing by the beach. Cosby allegedly parked in a secluded area, opened a briefcase full of pills, and offered Traitz one so that she could relax. Traitz claimed that she refused, but Cosby kept insisting to the point that it made her uncomfortable. According to Traitz, Cosby then allegedly groped her chest, pushed her down in her seat, and tried to mount her. At that point, Traitz said that she demanded to be taken home. Traitz first went public with her allegations in 2014. Also in 1969, in Toronto, Canada, 21-year-old model Linda Brown was allegedly told by her agent that she had arranged for her to meet Bill Cosby. According to Brown, she went and watched Cosby perform his stand-up act, and afterwards Cosby took her to dinner. After the meal, Cosby allegedly offered to drive Brown home, but said that he wanted to swing by his hotel first because he had a gift for her. Up in his room, Cosby allegedly handed Linda Brown a copy of one of his comedy albums and a soda. Cosby then allegedly told Brown to wait while he went to make a phone call. Brown claims that she drank the soda and passed out. According to Brown, she woke up naked, in bed with Cosby, who allegedly began to R-word her. Talking to New York Magazine in 2015, around the same time she first went public with her allegations, Brown said, quoting, "I felt like a real-life blow-up doll for him. I kept it secret because I was so ashamed and embarrassed about allowing something this horrible to happen to me. Originally, I thought I was the only one to fall into that trap. When I realized that not only was I not the only one, but he did this to many, many women, I felt the need to come forward and help support them, because there is strength in numbers." Again, in 1969, this time in New York City, 21-year-old Sindra Ladd was working on a production crew when she allegedly met and befriended Bill Cosby. According to Ladd, she and Cosby would regularly hang out at her apartment and watch TV together. Ladd claims that one day Cosby asked her to meet him at a friend's apartment. When she arrived, Ladd claims that she told Cosby she had a headache. Cosby allegedly offered her a pill, which Ladd claims Cosby referred to as his, quote, miracle cure. According to Ladd, she lost consciousness and remembers waking up in a bed with a mirror on the ceiling and Cosby in the room allegedly wearing nothing but a terracloth bathrobe. Ladd claims she got dressed, made some polite small talk, and left. Ladd then told her roommate about the alleged incident, but told no one else for decades. Sindra Ladd went public with her allegations in 2015, saying, quote, "The Cosby Show was watched in my house. My daughter liked it. My husband liked it. I would look at it and think, he did that to me." Bill Cosby's legal representation has denied all of the above allegations. Call a cab. During the production of The Bill Cosby Show, NBC quarreled with Cosby over his refusal to use a laugh track, considered an unusual move at the time. Nevertheless, the first season of The Bill Cosby Show premiered to respectable ratings, which kept network executives off of Cosby's back. But when filming for the show's second season began in 1970, the executives were again on Cosby's case to adopt the laugh track, to write tighter scripts, and to bring in guest stars of greater stature. The demands got on Cosby's nerves, and in September 1970 he announced that he was going to quit the show at the end of the second season. Meanwhile, in 1970 in Los Angeles, Victoria Valentino was dining with a roommate at the Café Figaro. During the meal, Bill Cosby, part owner of the Figaro, found out that Valentino's 6-year-old son had just died. According to Valentino, Cosby approached the two women and offered to take them out on the town to cheer Valentino up. They agreed, and at a later date, the two women allegedly met Cosby for dinner. Valentino claims she just sat there, letting Cosby and her roommate talk. Then Cosby allegedly turned to Valentino and placed a small pill next to her wine glass, claiming that it would make her feel better. Valentino took the pill. Cosby then allegedly convinced Valentino to take another one and pushed 2 pills on her roommate as well. Valentino claims that she began to feel nauseated. Cosby allegedly offered to drive her and her roommate home, but somehow they allegedly ended up at Cosby's place instead. At that point, Valentino claims she lost consciousness. She awoke sometime later to find Cosby allegedly standing over and leering at her friends. According to Valentino, she successfully defended her unconscious friend, but then Cosby turned his aggression towards Valentino herself, allegedly forcing her to perform oral sex on him and then turning her over and R-wording her. After the alleged assault was over, Valentino claims that Cosby silently got up and walked toward the door. Valentino says she asked him, "How do we get out of here? How do we get home?" According to Valentino, Cosby allegedly replied, "Call a cab," and left without another word. In 1996, Victoria Valentino described the alleged incident during a videotaped interview designed to expose the sordid lives of Playboy models. However, Valentino's interview was never published. Valentino next went public about her allegations in 2014. Also in 1970, 23-year-old Autumn Burns was working in a casino in Las Vegas when she was allegedly approached by Bill Cosby. According to Burns, Cosby offered to help her break into the acting and modeling industries. Then Cosby allegedly invited Burns to see his show and gave her money to gamble with. Burns claims that she later continued her association with Cosby for a few days and allegedly attended at least one event with him. According to Burns, one evening, Cosby handed her $500 or $4,000 in modern money and told her to come up to his hotel room after his show. Up in his room, Burns claims that Cosby gave her a glass of scotch, which was drugged, and then took her into his bedroom, ordered her to sit down on the bed, where he allegedly forced fellatio on her and R-worded her. Autumn Barnes first came forward with her allegations in 2015. In 1971, Bill and Camille Cosby bought a 15-bedroom dream house in rural Massachusetts along with 21 acres of land for $65,000 or roughly $500,000 in modern money. They further renovated the house for a whopping $375,000 or $2.9 million in modern money. They sold their mansion in Los Angeles and bid goodbye to residing full-time in Hollywood. According to Cosby's biographer Mark Whitaker, Camille wanted to move for 3 reasons. 1, it made more financial sense given Cosby was recovering from near bankruptcy. A $2.9 million renovation doesn't exactly scream financial recovery, but do remember everything is relative. 2, she was worried about her family's safety in Hollywood in the aftermath of the Manson murders. And 3, she wanted to raise her children away from the moral degeneracy and hedonistic temptations of Hollywood, along with avoiding, to quote Whitaker, the pain that her husband's selfish behavior had caused her in their LA years as he indulged a roving eye. Okay, so she knows about that something's going on. Also, to recover financially, this is like the 1970s. Don't you need to, if you're going to be in movies and stuff, don't you need to be in Los Angeles? That same year, up-and-coming actress Louisa Moritz was due to appear on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson in New York. Moritz was known for playing the role of the ditzy blonde and had recently appeared in the raunchy comedy The Man from Orgy. According to Moritz, during the show's taping, she was in her dressing room waiting to be called when Cosby allegedly entered the room and closed the door behind him. Moritz claims that without a word or a moment's hesitation, Cosby allegedly unzipped his fly and pulled Moritz's head toward him. Speaking to New York Magazine in 2015, Moritz described what allegedly happened next, saying, "It was automatic. It was like he did this with everyone who was on a show with him backstage. I couldn't push him away. He was Mr. Cosby. He moved himself back and forth, and my head was on his penis at all times. Finally, the Tonight Show announcer called my name. I was supposed to be out, but he wouldn't let me go. He rushed out and came out on my call, and he said, "I'm Louisa Moritz," and got a huge laugh. I don't remember if they introduced me again. I was a zombie. But I sat down, and the show went on. I didn't look at him. He didn't look at me. Also in 1971, Cosby was hired to star in the new children's television program, The Electric Company. Given Cosby's successful appearances in early episodes of Sesame Street, the show's producers felt that Cosby would give The Electric Company instant credibility with the child audience and their parents. According to Mark Whittaker, in between takes, Cosby allegedly took delight in telling rather adult-themed jokes. In one skit, Cosby played a milkman trying to buy some flowers for his girlfriend. He said, "You don't have any bluebells, blushing violets, blooming things?" His co-star Rita Moreno answered, "All gone," to which Cosby replied, "I know, I'll get her Tampax." Classy, Bill. Speaking to a press conference hosted by Gloria Allred in August 2015, Linda Ridgway White Deer claimed that in 1971, at a job interview on an unspecified movie set, Bill Cosby allegedly forced a sex act on her. White Deer said that the act was physically coercive, and Cosby did not drug her. Also in 1971, Cosby was awarded a bachelor's degree from Temple University without having to attend any classes, submit any assignments, or sit any exams. And this wasn't an honorary degree either. Oh, I just totally assumed it was like, yeah, honorary degree. This happens all the time. Wait, they give him a real degree without doing anything? Temple University simply decided to give Cosby a bachelor's by dint of what they called, quote, life experience. It should be noted that Cosby also became a major donor to Temple and held charity performances to raise money for student scholarships. Then Cosby enrolled at the University of Massachusetts Amherst and somehow managed to receive a master's in childhood education within a year. Can you really just donate and they'll just give you a degree? I understand if they give you an honorary degree, but an actual degree? It's weird. With his eyes set on ultimately getting a PhD in education, Bill Cosby revisited the Fat Albert concept for Saturday morning cartoons. It began to air in 1972, along with The New Bill Cosby Show, which aired during primetime on weekdays. Cosby would ultimately earn his doctorate from Amherst in 1976, with his research dissertation being on how the Fat Albert cartoon could be used as a teaching aid. Meanwhile, Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids ran for 13 years, from 1972 to 1985, while The New Bill Cosby Show lasted only one season before it was cancelled due to low ratings. On an unspecified day in the early 1970s, Tamara Green claims that she met and befriended Bill Cosby. At the time, Green was a model and aspiring actress in Hollywood. Green claims that one day she came down with a cold and phoned Cosby to let him know that she couldn't go out that night to help him raise money for a new club of his. According to Green, Cosby convinced her that she'd feel better with some food in her belly and met her at the Café Figaro for lunch. At the Figaro, Cosby allegedly gave Green 2 pills claiming they were decongestants. Green claims she took the pills and began to feel dizzy. Cosby allegedly drove Green to her apartment, where he allegedly disrobed and began to strip the clothes off of Green. Then Cosby allegedly penetrated Green with his fingers while he masturbated with the other hand. According to Green, she struggled and managed to prevent things from going further, allegedly repeating the words, "You're going to have to kill me." Cosby allegedly placed 2 $100 bills on Green's coffee table before leaving her apartment. Depending on the year, that's somewhere in the region of $1,500 in modern money. Tamara Green was the second woman to publicly accuse Cosby after Andrea Constand in 2005. She signed on to Constand's civil suit, but waived her right to anonymity. To quote Green, "From the first day until this day, I have told everyone who will sit still long enough." By 1973, Cosby was regularly hopping between the East and West coasts. On the East Coast, his wife Camille was at their dream house in the Massachusetts countryside with their 4 children, Erica, Erin, Ennis, and Enza. On the West Coast, according to Mark Whittaker, Cosby spent a lot of time at Hugh Hefner's Playboy Mansion. Also, while on the West Coast, Cosby indulged his love for playing tennis, participating in a number of celebrity tournaments, and hosting 3 such events himself. And that is where, in Pebble Beach, California, Bill Cosby allegedly sexually assaulted the 38-year-old legal secretary Helen Hayes. Speaking publicly in December 2014, Hayes claims that in 1973, she and some friends were attending Clint Eastwood's celebrity tennis tournament. According to Hayes, this is where she met Bill Cosby, who allegedly stalked them throughout the day. That evening, Hayes and her friends went out to dinner, but had to keep switching restaurants because Cosby allegedly kept showing up and harassing them. Hayes claims that at the last restaurant, Cosby approached her, confronted Hayes about avoiding him, and then leaned over and grabbed her breast. Bro, in public, you've kept this behind closed doors and fairly, quiet. Now what are you doing? This is crazy. This is like obvious harassment. I mean, all of this was obvious harassment, but now you're doing it in public in front of other people. Speaking to New York Magazine in 2015, Hayes said, quote, "I just stewed about it for years, and for years, no one cared." Meanwhile, Kathy McKee was an aspiring actress and Vegas showgirl who, back in 1965, at the age of 16, had toured with and allegedly dated Sammy Davis Jr. It was through him that McKee got to know a number of his famous friends, including, allegedly, Bill Cosby. She and Cosby had allegedly been friends for 8 years when, in Detroit 1973, Cosby allegedly invited McKee back to his hotel room after a show. According to McKee, when she arrived, Cosby opened the door, spun her around, and R-worded her. Kathy McKee came forward in 2014 saying, quote, "I managed to get over to the guest bathroom. I tried to figure out what was happening, what had happened. I was really very confused and shocked and mixed up. It happened so fast. Bill had been a friend. I'd worked with him. I had known him for many, many years. He never made a pass at me. So when this happened to me, I just couldn't understand what was wrong with him. Had he lost his mind? Was he on drugs? What the heck was going on?" According to McKee, when she emerged from the guest bathroom, she allegedly found Cosby, fully dressed, standing by the door. Then he allegedly said, quote, "Okay, come on, let's go, they're waiting for us." McKee claims that she wasn't able to speak and just walked out of the hotel room. Cosby also allegedly maintained a stony silence while they walked toward the elevator. It's weird. Also in 1973, in Los Angeles, the list just goes on and on, doesn't it? Like, how is this dude free again? Like, I know all of this is alleged, but it's a ton of alleged, isn't it? I mean, smoky. Also in 1973 in Los Angeles, aspiring actress Charlotte Fox claimed that she got hired as an extra on the comedy adventure film Uptown Saturday Night. According to Fox, she met Bill Cosby on the set of the film, and he invited her to listen to him perform at a jazz club in Redondo Beach. Fox accepted, and afterwards she allegedly joined Cosby for dinner and drinks. Then Cosby allegedly suggested they go to the Playboy Mansion. There, Fox claims they had more food and even more drinks. Hugh Hefner allegedly stopped by and introduced himself but did not stay. During the evening, Fox claims that she became ill and went to the bathroom, and shortly thereafter, she blacked out. Fox says that she regained consciousness lying naked in bed while Cosby allegedly crawled on top of her and R-worded her. According to Fox, Cosby then got up and left while Fox gathered her clothes and made a hasty exit of the Playboy Mansion. Fox claimed in 2015 that, quote, "I did see Mr. Cosby on set again. He looked right through me. I was afraid to say anything. I buried it deep in my soul until now." Bill Cosby's legal representatives have denied all of the above allegations. Dr. Bill Cosby, family man. Now, according to Bill Cosby's biographer Mark Whitaker, in 1974, Cosby met 22-year-old Sean Burks, or Bars, or Upshaw, later Sean Brown, that's a confusing surname, in a hotel nightclub in Los Angeles. They allegedly danced together, and Cosby asked for her phone number. Cosby then allegedly arranged for Burks to meet him in Las Vegas for a rendezvous. Sean Burks/Bars/Upshaw/Brown is one of the only women with whom Cosby has publicly admitted having an extramarital affair, first copping to it in a 1997 trial and a television interview with Dan Rather. However, I've dropped some extra allegedlys above for good measure in case the publicly available facts reported by Whitaker and numerous mainstream media outlets are somehow incorrect. You'd always just say, like, according to, Cosby has claimed in court that he recalled only having sex with Brown once, while the latter has claimed that the affair carried on for an unspecified number of months. And talking to the Daily Mail in 2014, Sean Brown claimed that sometime during the affair, possibly in San Antonio, Texas, Cosby allegedly convinced her to drink a spiked beverage, smoke pot, and then R-worded her while she was unconscious. Speaking of the alleged incident, Brown said, quote, "I had never really been into him, and the other times I had really just been going through the motions. I don't think I was freaky enough for him, and that's why he drugged me." Then in September of 1975, Bill Cosby was performing a series of shows at the Las Vegas Hilton when, according to Mark Whitaker, he summoned Sean Brown to another rendezvous in his hotel suite. But this time, Brown arrived with a picture of a 12-month-old baby girl named Autumn, who Brown claimed was Cosby's illegitimate daughter. According to Whitaker, when Brown made this reveal, her daughter Autumn already had the last name Jackson on her birth certificate from a former boyfriend of Brown's named Gerald Jackson, who has since also claimed paternity of Autumn. Conversely, according to Brown, it was Cosby who allegedly convinced her to put Jackson's name on Autumn's birth certificate to protect his reputation. I mean, yeah, now we can figure this out though. Just do a DNA test and you will know for sure. According to Whitaker, Cosby wasn't sure if the child was his, and Brown made no requests for money at their first meeting. However, Cosby testified in court, which was widely reported on by several mainstream media outlets, that the demands for money soon came, and he paid the modern equivalent of nearly $200,000 over the next 2 decades to keep their affair secret. For considering how rich he is, and how 2 decades, so 20 years, so we're talking like $1,000, $10,000 a year? That seems kind of reasonable considering how rich you are, Bill, and how much damage this would do to your public reputation. No? First with regular payments to Sean Brown, in addition to paying the bill for various sundry expenses, and later in setting up a trust fund for Autumn. Cosby also claimed in 1997 that he told his wife Camille about the affair and the possible love child around 1981. It's unclear how Cosby could have paid thousands of dollars in hush money for 6 years when Camille famously had control over Cosby's business and personal finances. Probably because, as weird as it is to say, $200,000 is probably just, you wouldn't notice. It's just such a small amount of money that it's possible. They just give Bill, she's like, here's your monthly allowance, Bill, $1 million, spend as you will. And he's just like dropping $1,000 a month, basically, or $10,000 a month. How much was it? It wasn't even $10,000 a month. It was like $1,000 a month or something ridiculous. $10,000 a year. No one would notice this. No one would notice this money missing. Cosby continued to pay money into a trust fund for Autumn Jackson, bought her a car, and paid for her tuition at Tallahassee Community College in Florida. It should be noted that Cosby has paid the college tuition of hundreds of young people over the years, not requiring them to be love children. During the 20 years that Cosby was making payments, Autumn and Cosby allegedly talked on the phone approximately 15 times. Again, look, if he's paying for all of this stuff, that's just going to get lost in the shuffle. One that is dodgy compared to just charity for the others, right? In court, Cosby testified that he always addressed her as Autumn, and she always addressed him as Mr. Cosby. Bill Cosby also testified that he told Autumn, quote, "I will be for you a father figure, but I'm not your father." This is not the last we will hear about Autumn Jackson in this story. Back in 1965, 16-year-old Judith Huth and an unspecified friend of similar age wandered onto the Los Angeles set of the comedy Mother, Jugs, and Speed, in which Cosby had a starring role. According to Judith Huth, Cosby befriended her and her companion and invited them back to where he was staying. There, Cosby allegedly plied the minors with alcohol. Oof. Oh yeah, he does, doesn't he? Is this, allegedly? There was minors involved at some point, right? Didn't we say that right at the beginning of today's episode, allegedly? At the party, Huth says she relieved herself in an ensuite bathroom of one of the mansion's many bedrooms. When she emerged, she allegedly found Cosby sitting on the bed. Cosby then allegedly grabbed Huth's hand and masturbated himself with it. Judith Huth first came forward with her allegations in 2014. Also, during the filming of Mother, Drugs, and Speed in 1975, Bill Cosby allegedly paid a visit to a donut shop in Santa Monica, where he allegedly spoke to then 18-year-old Maggie Shapiro, who was working at the counter. Cosby allegedly invited Shapiro and her supervisor to the movie set. When Shapiro arrived, Cosby allegedly invited her to a dinner party at his rental home that evening. According to Shapiro, Cosby picked her up, and when they arrived at his place, it was only the two of them there. Cosby allegedly said that the party had been rescheduled and asked Shapiro if she'd like to go to the Playboy Mansion instead. There, Cosby allegedly challenged Shapiro to a pinball competition, where the loser would have to eat a small pill that Cosby allegedly produced. That is fucking weird, dude. If you're ever in this situation, just don't do it. I know it's not that simple, but especially after a few drinks, you just be like, hey, it's Bill Cosby. What could go wrong? He's famous and great. Yay. Oh God, allegedly. Shapiro claims that she lost the game, swallowed the pill, and passed out. When Shapiro woke up, she was allegedly naked in bed, and Cosby was already in the process of penetrating her. According to Shapiro, after the alleged R-word, Cosby drove her back to his place and had his chauffeur drive her the rest of the way home. Also in 1975, Marcella Tate, who was then a young model and actress, claims that she met Cosby in a nightclub via a mutual friend. Then one day, Tate claims that Cosby called her out of the blue and asked her to pick him up at the airport and take him to the Playboy Mansion. After they arrived, Cosby allegedly offered Tate a glass of wine. She says that she drank it and passed out. According to Tate, she woke up in bed next to Cosby, who was allegedly naked. Tate says she doesn't remember how she got home. Marcella Tate came forward with her allegations in 2015. And it just goes on. It's crazy. It's crazy that none of this has essentially led to anything. In the spring of 1976, Bill Cosby, still the darling of show business, guest hosted for Johnny Carson on The Tonight Show. One of the guests that evening was comedian Tommy Smothers, who mocked Cosby for the apparently arrogant and dismissive way he was introducing the guests. According to Whittaker, Cosby allegedly threatened Smothers with violence after the show, to which Smothers allegedly replied with something to the effect of, "Go ahead and try." A few months later, ABC gave Cosby a sketch television show called Cos. It was a ratings bomb and was cancelled in less than 2 months in favor of the Hardy Boys' Nancy Drew Mysteries. The failure of his show apparently set Cosby on edge. On September 28, 1976, Cosby went to the Playboy Mansion to watch a boxing match between Muhammad Ali and Ken Norton on TV. Smothers was also at the gathering. He approached Cosby and paid him a compliment on the show Cos, calling it a really good effort. Whether Smothers meant this genuinely or sarcastically, Cosby was allegedly so enraged that he punched Smothers in the back of the head. Yeah, like a coward, allegedly. Word of his assault hit the media, and Cosby left Los Angeles in temporary disgrace. In Las Vegas, outside of the Hilton Hotel, Cosby allegedly came up behind 19-year-old Therese Serengnacy and put his arm around her and asked, "Will you marry me?" According to Serengnacy, Cosby then asked her to come to his show, which she did. Afterwards, Serengnacy claimed she met Cosby backstage, who allegedly offered her some pills. Here we go again. Then Cosby allegedly bent over a table and R-worded her from behind. Bent her over a table. In 2005, Serengnacy became a Jane Doe in Andrea Constand's civil suit against Bill Cosby. During his deposition for that civil trial, Cosby admitted under oath that he'd provided Serengnacy with quaaludes and then they had sex. However, Cosby's legal representation steadfastly maintained that the sex was consensual. The admission under oath was later to prove substantially pivotal in determining Cosby's fate. On the plane ride back to Los Angeles, Bill Cosby allegedly met a 20-year-old flight attendant and asked her out to dinner. Quote-unquote Elizabeth came forward in August 2015, represented by Gloria Allred under condition of anonymity. She claims that Cosby took her to a Wait. Oh, okay, so we don't know her name. Alleges like Elizabeth is the name she chose. Sorry, I was just trying to follow there. She claims that Cosby took her to a Japanese restaurant where he gave her a glass of sake, which immediately left her in a trance-like state. Then Cosby allegedly took her to his hotel room where he forced an unspecified sexual act on her, which the accuser described as, quote, the most horrifying thing that could happen to an innocent young woman. Also in 1976, Sharon Van Eert, then an 18-year-old waitress at Concerts by the Sea Jazz Club in Redondo Beach, claims that Bill Cosby gave her a spiked drink. Van Eert claims that when the drug started to take effect, Cosby allegedly walked her out to her car in the parking lot, saying that she needed to sober up. According to Van Eert, once they reached the car, Cosby allegedly began to grope her, and at that point, Van Eert lost consciousness. When she awoke, Van Eert claims that her panties were missing. Sharon Van Eert came forward in 2015. The average age of the alleged victims in this period was 18. Bill Cosby's legal representatives have denied all of the above allegations. In May 1977, Bill Cosby attended his formal graduation ceremony at the University of Massachusetts Amherst for the PhD in Fat Albert that he'd completed the previous year. Likely eager for the added publicity, officials at Amherst asked Cosby if he'd also give the commencement address, but Cosby declined. A few months later, the now 40-year-old Cosby was again on the cover of Ebony magazine along with Camille, Erica, Erin, Ennis Enza, and newborn baby Evan, a girl. The accompanying article included pictures of Cosby playing backgammon with his kids, cutting into a birthday cake, and eruditely reading books on psychology in his study. Emblazoned on the front of the magazine were the words Dr. Bill Cosby, comedian, actor, author, philosopher, educator, and family man. All caps on family man. Good Lord. This just goes on for decades. Like, we hear about this all coming, what was it, 2014, 2015, when all those testimonies were being given? This is from like the 1960s until then. It's wild, dudes. What the f***? Razzle, frazzle, Jello pudding pop. By the mid-1970s, Cosby was a mixed financial success. Certainly he was popular, but 3 of his television shows had flopped, and Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids was only brought in a modest amount of money that could hardly support Cosby's lifestyle. Cosby had recently been in a lot of movies, but most of those were low-budget films with Sidney Poitier that Cosby had done for scale. What was keeping Cosby's fortunes afloat was his grueling stand-up schedule, where comedy clubs, universities, and stadiums paid exorbitant fees for Cosby to come and do what he arguably did best. And so, in the mid-1970s, Cosby alighted on the venture that he said earned him the most money of all: advertisements. Cosby got his agent, Court Jello, who responded positively to Cosby's approach. Jello marketing executives thought that Cosby had a lot of appeal to mothers across America because of his stint on Electric Company, his continued involvement with Fat Albert, and his clean, family-friendly comedy. Oh yeah, he's family-friendly. I feel like, is that true at all? But the comedians who make the more nasty jokes seem to be the ones who get into less trouble. Is that true? I feel like it would be, because if you were making all these jokes, you wouldn't be it wouldn't be so close to home, would it? Why would you do that? And so Cosby became the face of Jell-O for over 2 decades, and in a dozen ad campaigns, each of which had an extremely long run on television. Cosby was so frequently seen on TV flogging Jell-O that it became one of the things that most people in America and abroad remember him for, apart from all the allegations discussed in this episode, of course. Yeah, all I know Bill Cosby for is literally the allegations. I had no idea who Bill Cosby was before any of this. And I know it's very much an American phenomenon or whatever, but it's still it's interesting how things don't cross the pond. Cosby's Jell-O Pudding Pop campaign alone generated $100 million in sales in the first year after Cosby introduced them to the public. That's roughly $380 million in modern money. God damn. In the mid-1970s, Cosby also picked up major brand deals with Del Monte, a massive food conglomerate, and the Ford Automobile Company. The public just seemed to trust Cosby's friendly, avuncular, and squeaky clean persona, much more so than your typical celebrity endorsement, and he fast became the spokesman of choice if you could afford him. Added to which, Cosby also had an immense amount of stamina and could reportedly knock off up to 25 different ad spots in a day. I could do that. I could definitely do that. I've recorded, maybe not 25, but pretty close to number of sponsorships in a day, no doubt. So self-apparent was Cosby's light-hearted and trustworthy nature that a few years ago, he was chosen by soda giant Coca-Cola to front their new Have a Coke and Smile campaign. That foray into the world of soft drinks was so successful that Coke also selected Cosby to wage a counterattack against the Pepsi Challenge campaign, featuring Cosby mocking Pepsi as the number 2 who wanted to be Coca-Cola when it quote-unquote grew up. A few years after that, Cosby and a consortium of investors bought 36% of the Coca-Cola Bottling Company of New York and took control over one of its subsidiaries, the Coke factory in Cosby's hometown of Philadelphia, producing even more wads of cash. Yeah, money makes money, you know. You get that money from all of the ads and just invest it into that business or whatever that you're promoting. That's such a win-win for you. Then Kodak Film, Texas Instruments. Wait, Texas Instruments is in people who make those fancy calculators. Bill Cosby's like, get yourself the fancy calculator today. Why? E.F. Hutton and even the U.S. Census Bureau paid Cosby extravagant fees to represent them as well. Financial analyst Stephen Gale estimated at the time that Cosby was earning approximately $3 million per year from his various ad deals, or $10.3 million annually in modern money. I have to say, I did think it would be a lot more. That doesn't seem like that much for the amount of work he's doing and the amount of sales he's driving. $10 million in modern money? I think celebrities get paid way more than that these days for endorsing. Cosby took this immense fortune and bought an additional 200 acres for his estate in Massachusetts, purchased a renovated brownstone in the middle of Manhattan, snagged a mansion in Los Angeles for when he was in town. He referred to it as the house that Jell-O built, and took an annual vacation at an exclusive luxury resort in Antibes in the south of France. $10.3 million in modern money. A brownstone in the middle of Manhattan, a mansion in Los Angeles, and 200 acres in Massachusetts. How do you get all of that for $10.3 million? I guess it was the past and property was cheaper, but still, holy shit. Bill and Camille Cosby also started amassing a multi-million-dollar art collection, including 19th century artist Henry Asawa Tanner's The Grateful Poor, which was the largest purchase ever made by a private collector for a work by a black artist at the time. Gradually, Bill and Camille Cosby accrued the most valuable collection of African-American art in the world, numbering over 300 pieces, for which for decades they steadfastly refused to loan out to art galleries or museums, saying that the purchases were for their own private enjoyment and for the edification of their children. I mean, honestly, fair enough. If you buy something, it's not on you to loan it out. If you do that, fantastic. But if you're just enjoying it in your own home as you paid a fortune for it, also fine. I'm not judging you for that. Eventually in 2014, the Cosbys finally loaned 62 of their paintings to the Smithsonian, and through a lavish and pretentious gala called Conversations, African and African-American artworks in dialogue. Unfortunately, the chit-chat between inanimate paintings was upstaged at the gala when an interviewer from National Public Radio had the audacity to ask Cosby about the recent flood of allegations against him. Oh, this was in 2014. I totally missed that. We just jumped forward decades. Cosby responded with a long and stony silence. The interview was duly broadcast, along with the yawning chasm of dead air. Uncomfortable. Back in 1977, at Cosby's increasingly palatial estate in Massachusetts, the Cosbys threw a party on Christmas Eve. Allegedly, among the extensive guest list was 22-year-old Playboy bunny Sarita Butterfield. According to Butterfield, Cosby had allegedly seen her pictures in Playboy a month before, called her up without ever meeting her, and allegedly invited her to celebrate Christmas with his wife, kids, and other guests. It's so random, you're just inviting someone you don't know to Christmas. It's weird. She's a Playboy bunny. What the Bill? Butterfield claims that Cosby also paid for her plane ticket and sent a driver to pick her up from the airport. At the party, Cosby allegedly cornered Butterfield in the guest house, tried to kiss her, and pawed at her breasts. Butterfield says that she managed to fend Cosby off and that she did not accept a drink from him. Good for you. Nevertheless, Butterfield had to wait around at the Cosby home until the next morning before she could depart. Nowadays, you'd be like, I need an Uber. Sarita Butterfield first came forward in 2014. She has said, quote, I've imagined him drugging and R-wording the other girls. I'm not going to say I am surprised. I know what he did to me and the look he had on his face. What happened to that nice man? I think you just don't know what he was up to. It doesn't seem like he was ever nice. It just seems like he's got the facade going on. A few months later, in 1978, Bill Cosby gave a lecture at the University of Massachusetts, where he allegedly met 22-year-old aspiring singer and actress Patricia Leary Stewart. Cosby allegedly offered to mentor Stewart and help her break into showbiz. Then he allegedly invited her to a dinner party at his Massachusetts home. According to Stewart, when she arrived, she discovered she was the only guest. Here we are again. Then Cosby allegedly gave her a drink and she lost consciousness. Stewart claims that she next awoke naked in a guest room with Cosby standing over her wearing a bathrobe. Cosby allegedly handed Stewart a toothbrush and told her that she'd fallen ill and passed out. Stewart allegedly bought his story at the time, though she had lingering doubts. Cosby allegedly kept in touch, paying for acting lessons and gym membership, and for the next 2 years, he allegedly invited Stewart to a number of social events. Then in 1980, Cosby allegedly asked her to join him in Atlantic City. According to Stewart, when she arrived at his hotel suite, Cosby gave her a glass of champagne and 2 pills, which she took. Speaking to New York Magazine, Stewart explains, I wanted to spend time with him because this was the man who said he was going to make my career. Yeah, the power dynamic, the leverage is just crazy. So I thought, okay, I'll take the pills. I really had no idea what his modus operandi was. Not that I blame myself or that I feel responsible, but I allowed my ambition to overrule my judgment. After taking the pills, Stewart allegedly fell unconscious and later woke up naked in one of the rooms of Cosby's suite. Stewart joined Andrea Constand's civil case as a Jane Doe in 2005. And I just realized, we're reading all of these things and learning about all of these women. These are just the ones that came forward. These are just the people who wanted to go through the past. I'm sure there's plenty of people who are like, well, I'm not digging through that can of worms. In 1979, P.J. Marston was a 29-year-old quote-unquote bunny manager at the Playboy Club in Chicago. Marston claims that this is how she met Bill Cosby. They allegedly had lunch together, and the next day, Cosby allegedly invited her out to dinner. According to Marston, she met Cosby in the lounge of the Whitehall Hotel, where Cosby allegedly gave her a Grand Mariner on the rocks. Marston claims that she woke up naked and bruised in Cosby's bed with her alleged assailant lying beside her. Marston allegedly got up and left. The next day, Cosby allegedly phoned her, repeatedly asking her why she left, and allegedly sent Marston a ficus tree, which came with a note, friendships have to be groomed like this tree. When Marston went into work at the Playboy Club that evening, she allegedly told her supervisor about what had transpired. The supervisor allegedly replied, "You know that's Hefner's best friend, right? Nobody's going to believe you. I suggest you shut your mouth." God damn. That's up. Also in 1979, 25-year-old Pamela Abeta allegedly flew to Los Angeles for a meeting with Bill Cosby arranged by an unidentified mutual friends in the hope that Cosby would put a good word in with Hugh Hefner and allow Abeta to become a Playboy model. According to Abeta, she arrived at the Las Vegas Hilton just as Cosby's performance that evening was ending. Abeta says that she was taken to Cosby's dressing room by his producer, and Cosby entered 5 to 10 minutes later. Cosby allegedly took her up to the Elvis Presley penthouse and told her to drop her things in the guest bedroom. Then Cosby and Abeta allegedly went downstairs, with Cosby allegedly giving her $200 or $860 in modern money to gamble with. Abeta says she stayed at the casino until 1 a.m. and then headed upstairs to sleep. The next morning, she was woken up at 8 a.m. by Cosby making noise in the penthouse kitchen. That day, Abeta claims she was shopping and was charged $2,500 or $10,000 in modern money to Cosby's room. God damn! You taking that? Like, wait. So far he hasn't done anything to you. She's like, yeah, I'll just bill 10 grand to his room. Why the not? That evening, Abeta says she went down to Cosby's show with his producer and the producer's wife. They sat at a table, ate, and drank, and near the end of the show, Abeta claims that she was drugged. She says she does not remember leaving. Abeta claims that she momentarily regained consciousness, recognized she was in Cosby's bed, and that two strange men were in the room, naked, and Cosby was also allegedly there, sitting beside the bed. Then Abeta claims she passed out again. According to Abeta, she woke up the next morning in her own room, but was still feeling foggy and barely remembers leaving the hotel and flying home. Pamela Abeta first came forward in 2015. Joyce Emmons was a comedy club manager in her early 30s who claims she first met Bill Cosby in 1977. In 1979 or 1980, Emmons allegedly went out to a club with a female friend and joined Cosby and his entourage. According to Emmons, she developed a headache and asked Cosby for a Tylenol. Cosby allegedly said that he had something stronger. Emmons allegedly took the pill, passed up, and woke up naked in bed with one of Cosby's friends. It's weird. Like, now he's branching out to, like, because didn't we just say there were other people in the room? And now it's like, with his... What are you doing? The friends allegedly asked Emmons if she had a good time. She allegedly responded by saying, "Do you always like a dead person?" Emmons said she showered, got dressed, and allegedly confronted Cosby, asking him what he gave her. Cosby allegedly replied that it was a Quaalude. Emmons also claimed that Cosby showed Emmons a drawer full of pills and allegedly said that he didn't do drugs, but that he kept it for his friends and the women he was sleeping with. Yeah, allegedly. Bill Cosby's legal representatives have denied that any of the above allegations are true. In the autumn of 1980, Bill Cosby, now 43, wrote a comic essay for the... Oh, he's really old then. 20, 40, 80... Oh, he's in his late 80s. God damn. He wrote a comic essay for the December issue of Ebony entitled Bill Cosby Talks About Middle Age and Other Aggravations. In the article, Cosby writes, quote, "One of the most important things when you turn 40 is that you weigh things thusly. You look at the enjoyment you may get from a given activity, and then you look at the amount of work that may go into it. For example, sex with a young, beautiful woman who has plenty of energy. The amount of seating and digging and crawling you're going to have to do, it's not worth it." Next to the article is a picture of Cosby smoking a cigar while standing on a diving board, gazing longingly at a woman in a bikini. The caption reads, "One of those things you want, but are glad you can't have." Creepy given the alleged context, isn't it? Damn. America's Dad. And look, everybody, just before we get into this section, need to address this real quick, especially for the video listeners. Yes, I'm wearing a different shirt, possibly different glasses, because this I recorded in 2 parts, and I've actually been on a short holiday in between these recordings. So if I don't remember something that happened about 3 minutes ago, that's why. I'm going to do my best. We'll be fine. In 1981, Bill Cosby took part in a mixed double. Wait, who's Bill Cosby? Just joking! Of course I remember who Bill Cosby is. Mixed doubles tennis tournament in Las Vegas. He allegedly bet his opponents, 25-year-old Linda Kirkpatrick and a partner, that if they won, he would give them free tickets to his show. Kirkpatrick and her tennis partner won. However, Kirkpatrick claims that her partner wasn't available, so she attended Cosby's show on her own. She was allegedly escorted to Cosby's dressing room, where he allegedly handed her a drink. You gotta have all these allegedlys in there because he's not in prison anymore. Because he got off. Allegedly on a technicality. Do I need to say allegedly? It was like a technicality, right? Wasn't it? According to Kirkpatrick, her memory of the rest of the evening is in fragments. Cosby allegedly mounting her and trying to kiss her. Cosby allegedly wearing a silver bracelet with Camille engraved on it. And Kirkpatrick somehow arriving home. Later, Cosby allegedly called Kirkpatrick and apologized, inviting her to the Las Vegas Hilton with the promise of front row seats to his show. It's like, I'm really sorry, allegedly, about all the alleged abuse that happened at the last show I invited you, and I'd love you to come to another one of my shows. Allegedly. Like, what the f***? Like, sure, Bill, I'll be right there. However, Kirkpatrick claims that at the Hilton, Cosby allegedly tried to force himself. Why did you go, Kirkpatrick? I know it's not your fault, you're a victim, but, like, why did you go? However, at the Hilton, Cosby allegedly tried to force himself on her, so she pushed him away and left. Linda Kirkpatrick first came forward in 2015, saying, "I didn't come forward before. I was a coward. I felt at 25, if I'd revealed what a celebrity with seemingly family-oriented persona had done, that I'd be called a liar." Yeah, that's entirely fair. I still don't understand why you went to the next show after what happened to you, allegedly, but not coming forward, I completely understand. When people are like, oh, why didn't these women come forward before? And it's like, well, for really good reasons, if you'll just listen for a second. Coming forward in 2018 under a condition of anonymity, a woman with the pseudonym Katie has also claimed that in 1981 she met Bill Cosby while working as a waitress in a nightclub in Denver, Colorado. Cosby allegedly gave her a glass of red wine and she lost consciousness. She allegedly awoke naked in a hotel room covered in bruises, with Cosby allegedly standing over her wearing a bathrobe. The anonymous woman claims that she fled the room while Cosby allegedly begged her to stay. In 1982, Cosby allegedly invited 27-year-old supermodel Janice Dickinson to his hotel in Lake Tahoe shortly after she had left drug rehab, allegedly saying that he had an acting role for her. Cosby had not met Dickinson before, but he had allegedly been following her career with interest. At dinner, Cosby allegedly gave Dickinson a pill to have with a glass of wine. According to Dickinson, she awoke the next morning to find Cosby on top of her. Dickinson was allegedly naked, with semen between her legs. That's a sentence I didn't need to know. Dickinson says that she immediately realized that she had been R-worded. Dickinson allegedly first recounted the story for her autobiography in 2002, but the publisher allegedly cut it for legal reasons. God damn. I mean, yeah, I guess. But it's like, you got... This is just what she's saying. She says, this happened to me. It's not defamation if it's true, right? But then I guess you got to prove it's true. If they sue you, well, then it's on balance of probabilities, right? So, and then it's going to be really hard because they'll have really good lawyers. This sucks. Dickinson also made a vague allusion to her allegations in 2006 on the Howard Stern show. Janice Dickinson first came forward publicly with a full story in 2014. There's much more to say on that later. Yeah, you got a illusion. It's like, say, this really famous dude who you probably know, right, Howie? Between 1978 and 1984, Bill Cosby hosted a children's television program, of course he did, called Picture Pages, aimed at preschoolers. The show was, in theory, interactive, where children learned geometry, maths, and art by following Cosby's instructions and filling out a workbook. In 1982, Cosby was in Pittsburgh, where the show was filmed, allegedly looking for young actors to play as sidekicks on the show. And yes, this is going where you probably think it's going. Oh, it's so grim. It's like, somehow, because he's casting them to be like a lot, in a children's TV show and stuff, obviously not children, but it's just even more creepy. Oh my God, wait a second. I just read the next sentence. One of those young actors was 15-year-old Renita Cheney Hill. Cosby allegedly plied Hill with alcohol, whereupon she fell unconscious and allegedly woke up hours later in bed. According to Hill, as a 15-year-old, she didn't immediately draw the connection between drinking the alcohol and her lapses into unconsciousness. Meanwhile, Hill had dreams of fame and fortune as an actress, and Cosby allegedly took on the role of her mentor. Cosby's relationship with Hill allegedly continued from 1982 to 1986, and he would allegedly fly her to several locations, including New York and Atlanta, so she could allegedly come to his hotel room at night. Just allegedly. There's never been a script with more allegedlys. Speaking to KDKA reporter Ralph Iannotti in 2014, Hill claimed that whenever she met Cosby, the same sequence of events would ensue. Cosby would allegedly pressure her to drink, and then Hill would pass out. Hill claims that one time, just prior to her passing out, she remembers Cosby allegedly kissing and touching her with a taste of cigars on his breath, and when Hill woke up in bed the next day, Cosby allegedly mentioned to her that she could stand to lose a little weight. What's going on? One day, Hill allegedly told Cosby over the phone that she didn't want to drink when she met him because it made her feel funny. Cosby allegedly replied that if Hill didn't drink when she came, then she shouldn't bother coming at all. After a few years, Hill enrolled in college and Cosby allegedly paid her tuition. Nevertheless, at age 19, Hill claims that she suddenly cut off contact with Cosby and gave up on her dream of becoming an actress. Yeah, because you tasted that Hollywood world and were like, yeah, this and the creeps. Hill first came forward publicly in 2014, saying what made her mind up was listening to the other accusers being called liars in the media. Yeah, I mean, this is how it works, right?
It's like, oh, they're liars, they're liars, they're liars.
And then loads of people come forward. It's like,
maybe there's something to this.
In 1982, 24-year-old Janice Baker Kinney was working as a bartender at Harrah's in Las Vegas, where Cosby was performing. After the show, one of Kinney's co-workers allegedly invited her to a pizza party at Cosby's place. According to Kinney, when she arrived with her friend, they noticed that nobody else but Cosby was there. Bit of an MO there, isn't there? Cosby allegedly gave Kinney 2 pills which she swallowed before starting a game of backgammon. Then Kinney claims that she fell unconscious, awakening later on the couch, allegedly with her pants unzipped and her blouse unbuttoned. Kinney claims that her friend was gone, and Cosby allegedly stuck his hand inside Kinney's shirt. Kinney says that she remembers Cosby carrying her upstairs. When Kinney awoke the next morning, she was allegedly naked in bed with Cosby, with the latter stroking her stomach. Before Kinney left, Cosby allegedly told her, "This is between me and you." Bro, this is so disgusting. In 1983, Cosby released footage of a stand-up performance he gave in Canada as a movie in theaters called Bill Cosby Himself. This was aping the hugely successful theatrical releases of two stand-up performances by Richard Pryor. Bill Cosby himself opened with a montage of pictures of Cosby's children, over which he sang the parody song Just the Slew of Us. Roughly half of his act revolved around Cosby telling cutesy stories about his life with Camilla and his kids. Fox executives who released the film suspected that the material was not edgy enough like Pryor's to draw a massive audience, and one critic in Variety likened the film to being forced to watch someone's home movies. Due to low box office numbers, Bill Cosby himself was quickly withdrawn from theaters and relegated to HBO, the new cable movie channel that had just launched. As a new channel starved for content, HBO would play the film whenever they needed to fill airtime. Oh, how far you've come, HBO. Now you just make awesome shows. I mean, that's not true. They make some trashy shows, some bad shows. But HBO, generally, makes some good shows. Was it HBO made Band of Brothers? Is that right? Despite this failure, Cosby had not yet given up on the idea of putting forward wholesome content that reinforced his public image as a family man. And so, in early 1984, with network television desperate to have a new hit after several failed primetime sitcoms, Cosby entered talks with a TV production company to create a new show. During negotiations, Cosby asked for more than $1 million per season. I was thinking per episode would be a lot because weren't the stars of Friends and The Big Bang Theory making $1 million episode? And that was regarded as the highest ever. So this wouldn't be in 1984, you wouldn't be doing this, but it's per season, which seems still like a lot. Cosby originally wanted the character to be working class, driving a limousine while his wife would be a Hispanic handywoman. But the producer said they wanted Cosby and his wife's character to be reasonably well-off, upper-middle-class college grads, so the question of money didn't distract from the main focus of the show on family. Camille backed up this decision, though she is sometimes credited with coming up with the idea. Cosby and the production company ultimately decided that Cosby's character would be an obstetrician, sorry, difficult word, a gynecologist who deals specifically with childbirth, pregnancy, and postpartum, and his wife's character would be a lawyer. They'd have 4 daughters and a son. And the light comedy would be accompanied by a strong moral backbone that explained family themes. This is rather ironic, isn't it? Once they developed the show's concept, there began a period of horse trading, where instead of taking his show to ABC, where the producers had the most connections, Cosby and his producers flirted with CBS and ultimately moved the show to NBC because they agreed to give Cosby creative control, shooting the show in New York and pay Cosby a load of money. Wait, did they give him creative control? It sounds like he wanted the character to be working class and they kind of made him the opposite of that. And so in 1984, The Cosby Show hit American television screens with an average viewership of around 30 to 40 million people. That is a big show. I've never seen an episode. This wasn't something that crossed the pond, also maybe a bit before my time. The show ultimately ran 8 seasons until April 1992 and gained Cosby the title of America's Dad. In 1984, while The Cosby Show was getting off the ground, 24-year-old Heidi Thomas got a call from her agent allegedly saying that Bill Cosby wanted her to audition. According to Thomas, she flew out to Reno, Nevada, and Cosby's driver took her out to a ranch where he was staying. Cosby allegedly got Thomas to read a script where her role was a drunk woman, and he allegedly gave Thomas a drink as a prop and allegedly encouraged her to sip at it. Thomas claims that when she regained consciousness, she found Cosby allegedly naked and trying to put his penis in her mouth. This is again just according to her. According to Thomas, the next memory she had was Cosby allegedly telling her that they were going to do this again. Thomas allegedly told him that wasn't why she came to Reno in the first place and promptly slammed the door in his face. Good. Heidi Thomas came forward with her allegations in 2015. At another alleged private audition in New York in 1984, a woman, then 30, who has only identified herself by her first name, Dottie, claimed that Bill Cosby allegedly drugged and R-worded her. Standing at a press conference led by Gloria Allred in October 2015, Dottie held up a black cast jacket which had her first name embroidered on the front and the Cosby Show logo on the back, which she claimed that Cosby had allegedly given her as a gift. At the press conference, Dottie added, quote, "I was too embarrassed to tell anyone of the shame I felt. Anyway, he was Bill Cosby. Who would believe me?" It's just thinking it's all about when one person is brave enough to come forward, right? And be like, yo, yes, this happened to me. And then other people are brave. And they're like, yeah, it happened to me too. And then basically other people come forward. There should be an app. This sounds so cringe now that I'm saying it out loud. But what if there's an app which has all the famous people who could be doing, Cosby. And then you go in there and anonymously say like, yeah, this person did this. And then when like 5 or 10 people or whatever have shared their experiences, you all get connected in a Telegram group or whatever. And you can be like, are we doing this? Are we doing this? Because then it would be like you get that group thing going rather than just being the one accuser, which, you know, then if no one comes forward else, that's gonna suck. It's so cringe that I thought about turning this into an app. Please no one do this. I mean, maybe do. I don't know. It just feels cringe somehow. My bad. Around the same time, 31-year-old model and actress Beverly Johnson also allegedly attended a private audition for The Cosby Show at his brownstone in Manhattan. According to Johnson, she brought her young daughter with her, and Cosby allegedly served them brunch and gave them a house tour. However, Johnson allegedly returned a second time alone, and during a scene reading, Cosby allegedly gave Johnson a cup of espresso. Johnson claims that she took 2 sips and shortly thereafter immediately realized that she'd been drugged. As Cosby allegedly approached her and put his arm around her waist, Johnson allegedly started cussing Cosby out for slipping her a roofie. Cosby then allegedly grabbed Johnson by the arm, dragged her out of the brownstone, and manhandled her into a cab. Beverly Johnson first published her allegations in a Vanity Fair article in August 2015, which coincided with the release of her memoirs, where Johnson also recounted the alleged incidents. Is that the best idea, though? Like, to come forward with allegations just as you got a financial incentive? I know I'm just going to stop because you're like a victim and stuff, but it doesn't seem like the best time. Bill Cosby, it's always a good time, but not the best time. Bill Cosby hit Johnson with a defamation lawsuit that December, but dropped it in February 2016. Also in 1984, Beth Ferrier claims that as a 25-year-old model, she allegedly embarked on an affair with Cosby and had consensual sex with him. The affair allegedly lasted several months. According to Ferrier, a few weeks after they broke up, Cosby allegedly invited her to watch him perform in Denver, Colorado. Ferrier claims that when she visited Cosby backstage, he allegedly gave her a cappuccino and she lost consciousness a few minutes later. According to Ferrier, she woke up in the back of her car with her bra unhooked several hours later. Ferrier joined Andrea Constand's 2005 civil lawsuit against Cosby as a Jane Doe. In 2015, she told New York Magazine, quoting, "It's like a slap in the face until we can actually have our day in criminal court or we get the statute of limitations to change. It makes me really angry. I can't feel happiness. I feel very sad and alone, but I'm not afraid of him anymore." In 1985, the first season of The Cosby Show won 3 Emmys for Best Comedy Series, Best Writing, and Best Directing. Wow. With Cosby refusing to be considered for Best Actor, saying that the 3 Emmys he won for I Spy were enough. Oh, what a humble and nice dude. The show also scored exceedingly well in every single demographic. Men, women, black, white, or Hispanic, all of them seemed to identify with the show. It was arguably the first sitcom featuring a black family that seemed to transcend racial lines. As the show carried on, the Huxtables increasingly came to resemble the actual Cosby family. Privileged, with bright prospects, and with Claire Huxtable, played by Felicia Rashad, fast becoming an idealized version of the well-bred and cultured Camille. The fact that they had chosen to make the Huxtable family upper middle class was also applauded as being a breath of fresh air for a black family not to be depicted as struggling and lower class. I guess the first, sitcom for me, that wasn't, that had, the black family as the core was Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. That's definitely my generation. 1990s? Late 90s? Early 2000s? With Will Smith? Good ass show. But a number of critics lambasted the show for this very reason. It was not representative of the experience of the overwhelming majority of African Americans at the time. A scathing what? So they should only be portraying lower middle class, working class? That's a bizarre take. A scathing critique in the Village Voice said, quote, "Cosby no longer qualifies as black enough to be an Uncle Tom." Is an Uncle Tom where it's like you're racist against black people despite being black? Is that an Uncle Tom? I think that's an Uncle Tom. And in New York Magazine, the show was described as Leave It to Beaver in blackface. I have no idea what Leave It to Beaver is. According to Mark Whitaker, in private, Cosby accused these critics of being quote-unquote poverty pimps, discouraging black people from thinking that they could ever achieve social mobility in America. I'm with Cosby! After all, Cosby had risen from a high school dropout in the projects of Philly to become an immensely wealthy spokesman, comedian, and America's dad, so why could others not do the same? Meanwhile, in 1985, America's dad was allegedly in Denver, where he was allegedly introduced to a 17-year-old model, Barbara Bauman, by her agent. According to Bauman, Cosby allegedly offered to mentor her and brought her to numerous high-profile events across the country. Cosby allegedly arranged for Bauman to live in New York and allegedly paid for her to take acting classes. According to Bauman in New York, Cosby allegedly gave her a glass of wine laced with a sedative and R-worded her while she was unconscious. Bauman claims that she did not immediately connect the act of drinking in Cosby's presence and then waking up groggy and disheveled. According to Bowman, Cosby allegedly drugged and R-worded her repeatedly over the course of 2 years. Then in 1987, when Bauman was 19, Cosby allegedly invited her down to Atlantic City to watch him perform. Afterward, in Cosby's hotel room, Bauman was allegedly drugged again, and before she lost consciousness, she phoned the concierge to find out where her luggage was. According to Bauman, Cosby flew in a rage and allegedly said, quote, "What the hell are you doing, letting the hotel know that I have a 19-year-old in my hotel suite?" I don't know, Bill. Maybe you should have fucking thought about that. Bauman claims that the next morning, she woke up in her own room, again disheveled, with a hazy memory of what happened the night before. Then Cosby allegedly summoned Bowman to his suite, where he allegedly berated her for being indiscreet. Then Bowman claims Cosby jumped on her, held her down on the bed, and allegedly began choking her. According to Bowman, Cosby then allegedly tried to take off his pants and attempted to R-word her, but his belt buckle got stuck, and Bowman claims she managed to wriggle free. In 2015, Bowman described what happened next, quoting, "It was like a switch went off, like somebody flicked a switch, and he suddenly came to reality that he was really going to make a bigger scene than I had ever made. He did not R-word me. That was it. He just decided I was too much work. He wrote me off, he kicked me out, I was done." When it was all over, the words that came out of Cosby's mouth were, "I better never ever see your face or hear your name again." Barbara Bowman has claimed that Cosby subsequently tried to sabotage her career. She joined Andrea Constand's civil suit against Cosby in 2005. Bill Cosby's legal representatives have denied that any of the above allegations are true. Fatherhood. By the third season of The Cosby Show in 1986, it was number one in the ratings chart and served as the launching pad for NBC's primetime entire Thursday night, which included such legendary heavy hitters as Family Ties and Cheers, which were second and third in the charts. That year, Cosby also rolled out a book called Fatherhood, which recounts several humorous Cosby stories and gives a how-to guide on being a good dad. It's so... oh god, the mask versus the person is just crazy here. Like everyone, every celebrity, even me, like we're a little bit different in real life because of course we are. But like this is crazy. It would be like me writing a book about how to care for dogs. In the book, the author rails against fathers who abandon their kids and encourages dads to take part in all aspects of their kids' lives, including tasks quote-unquote traditionally given to the mother. This is a little bit like, don't get me wrong, this is like the least bad thing that Bill Cosby has allegedly done. But it's a little bit out of touch to be like, yeah, the men should just be as involved as they are. What do you know about people's lives, Bill? These people are probably working really hard, and they don't have all the money in the world to just do everything exactly right, do they, Bill? The book spent 54 weeks on the New York Times bestseller list, earning Cosby several $1 million in royalties and scoring him a $2 million advance, that's $5.7 million in modern money, for his follow-up book, Time Flies. But it turns out that both Fatherhood and Time Flies were ghost-written by a literary humorist named Ralph Schoenstein and quote-unquote attributed to Bill Cosby. This isn't like, again, of all the things that Cosby's done, this probably wasn't even his idea. And ghostwriters writing books for famous people? Hardly a new thing. I don't really have a problem with this. No doubt Cosby was too busy with his other pursuits to write his own damn books. I don't really have a problem with this. It's not his thing. He's not a book writer. He's just a brand. Conversely, my books... slide that plug in there, David. The Shortest History of Sex and The Shortest History of the Universe were not ghost-ridden, have not seen a whiff of a bestseller list, and I wish my publishers would offer me even 1% of the advance that Cosby got. Throw some shade there, David. But they are still available at all fine booksellers everywhere. Meanwhile, as Bill Cosby seemingly moved from strength to strength, the private auditions for The Cosby Show allegedly continued. In 1986, Lisa Jones was a 17-year-old model working in Canada when she claims that without ever meeting her, Cosby allegedly contacted her agency out of the blue, offering Jones and her mother tickets to a performance that he was giving in Vancouver. According to Jones, the following year, Cosby invited her to New York to audition for The Cosby Show. When Jones arrived, she was allegedly taken to Cosby's brownstone, where the so-called author of Fatherhood allegedly gave alcohol laced with a sedative to a teenage girl 2 to 3 years younger than his eldest daughters. This just makes it so much more f***ed up, allegedly. Jones claims that Cosby then became very crass, allegedly ranting about how women got successful in showbiz via the casting couch. Then Cosby allegedly crouched in front of Jones's knees, grabbed her legs, and allegedly tried to spread them open. I don't like that this builds a mental image in my mind. She's 17. Allegedly. Jones claims that she was shocked, got up, and managed to escape the brownstone before things went any further. Also in 1986, Challen Lasher was a 17-year-old high school student and aspiring model who worked part-time at the Las Vegas Hilton. In order to kickstart her modeling career, Lasher's stepmother allegedly sent a letter and a picture of Lasher to Bill Cosby. He allegedly responded by inviting Lasher and her grandmother to a show he was doing at the Hilton. After the show, Cosby allegedly invited Lasher up to his suite, allegedly saying that a representative from the Ford modeling agency would arrive there to meet her. According to Lasher, when she and Cosby arrived in the suite, Cosby allegedly offered her a pill, which he allegedly said was an antihistamine for her cold, and then gave, allegedly, the 17-year-old a double shot of amaretto to wash it down. Then Cosby, allegedly, asked Lasher to put on a hotel robe and wet down her hair for the Ford agent's arrival. Lasher claims that she remembers someone briefly coming into their room and snapping a few photos before they left. Cosby then allegedly brought Lasher into his bedroom and allegedly gave her another shot of amaretto. Lasher says she laid down on the bed, and Cosby allegedly laid down beside her. Then Cosby allegedly started humping her leg. It's kind of weird. Lasher claims that at this point she passed out. She says she woke approximately 13 hours later, as Cosby allegedly stood above her, clapping his hands and shouting, "Daddy says wake up." Bruh. On her way out of the suite, Lasher claims that Cosby handed her $1,500 in cash, that's $4,275 in modern money, and told her to buy something nice. Bro, that's super cringe. And horrible. Just cringe doesn't cover it. I don't know why I said cringe. That just feels like, buy yourself something nice, darling. That feels so cringe after what happened, and also horrible. Challen Lasher first came forward in 2014 saying, quote, "I used to fear for my life because of the type of influence he had. I would cry all the time. All the time. After that, I didn't know who to trust and who not to trust. I have nightmares. I wouldn't let my children watch The Cosby Show because I would cry." Also in Las Vegas in 1986, Rebecca Lynn Neal was a massage therapist at a health club Cosby allegedly frequented. According to Neal, Cosby kept pestering her to come to his show, and when she finally agreed, they allegedly arranged to have dinner afterwards. In addition, Neal allegedly agreed to give Cosby a massage sometime after the show. Neal claims that after Cosby's performance, they went for dinner, but only Cosby ate. Cosby then allegedly ordered a shot of vodka and told Neal to drink it. According to Neal, the drink left her feeling disorientated and she had trouble walking, and Cosby allegedly led her back to his dressing room. There, Cosby allegedly took off Neal's pants and initiated sex. Neal claims that she told Cosby to stop, and he allegedly told her to calm down and started talking about how an orgasm was like a thermostat slowly building pressure, while he continued to R-word her. Neal claims that when it was over, Cosby allegedly rushed her out of the dressing room, telling Neal to call him next time he was in town. However, Neal claims that she never saw Cosby again at her health club or anywhere else. Rebecca Lynn Neal first came forward in 2015. In 1987, Forbes magazine estimated that Bill Cosby was the highest paid celebrity in America, earning approximately $42 million per year, or just shy of $120 million in modern money. God damn! This was derived from his salary on The Cosby Show, his lucrative work as a commercial spokesman, the payments he collected from up to 100 stand-up performances per year, and his book sales. Forbes estimated a sweetheart syndication deal to start showing reruns of The Cosby Show in perpetuity netted Cosby an estimated lump sum of $166 million. That's $456 million in modern money. Holy syndication! I want my in syndication. I don't know what syndication is. Is that just where it's shown on other networks? Can I get $456 million if these are broadcast on, like, Twitch? Is Vimeo still a thing? Come on, Vimeo, hit me up, or on television, let's go. Forbes said that Bill Cosby's net worth was somewhere in the region of $500 million, or $1.4 billion in modern terms. He's a billionaire celebrity. Is he still? Did they manage to take some of his money away? I guess not, if he's not guilty, right? Was this civil culpability? Bill and Camille Cosby took some of this money and started handing out generous donations to what is known in America as HBCUs, or historically black colleges and universities. They gave $1.3 million to Fisk University in Nashville, another combined $1.3 to Howard University in Washington, Florida A&M in Tallahassee, Central State University in Wilberforce, and Shaw University in Raleigh, along with $1.5 million to Mary Medical College in Nashville and Bethune-Cookman University in Daytona Beach. Bill and Cosby also gave a whopping $20 million, that's $55 million today, to Spelman Women's College in Atlanta, where most of the money went toward building a new campus hub, lovingly called the Camille Olivia Hanks Cosby EDD Academic Center, and the remainder went toward paying visiting lectures dubbed Cosby Scholars. I mean, I got no problem with this. I think this is great. It's like, fine, you do you, Bill. Cosby would also offer to randomly pay the tuition of students he met on his numerous college stand-up tours. Cosby ultimately would end up footing the bill for hundreds of lucky students over the years. However, this generosity has arguably been somewhat marred by reports that some of the youth who had the tuitions paid were Cosby's alleged accusers and his rumored love child. Whoa, yikes. Meanwhile, in 1986, Cosby bought Camille a birthday present of a jet black Rolls-Royce complete with the perpetual services of a chauffeur whenever she was in New York City, and the next year he followed it up by buying Camille an elegant 6-story, 12,000 square foot townhouse in Manhattan, half a block from Central Park. God damn! It was built at the turn of the 20th century, and Cosby assigned financial manager Mary Waller to oversee the renovations. According to Whitaker, one day Camille wanted to use the Cosby private jet and found that Waller had taken it. Waller claimed that the use of the jet was related to the renovation, but Cosby fired and sued her, claiming that Waller had abused the use of the private jet and had also siphoned off a bunch of Cosby cash to buy jewelry, a Range Rover, hire a private chef, and pay for renovations on her own house in Connecticut. If that's true, that is brazen. Waller denied this and declared bankruptcy, leading to a number of embarrassing headlines for the Cosbys in the press. Why is it embarrassing? If it's true, they got conned. If it's not, well, that doesn't look very good, but it's like not embarrassing, is it? If someone steals your money, is that embarrassing? It's like, it's a little bit of victim blaming, isn't it? It's like, well, you should have been more on top of your money. Like, people could easily steal money from me. Shouldn't be admitting this. But it is true. It is true. God, you just gotta trust. You just gotta trust and not let anyone take, like, if someone stole a large amount of money from me, I'll be like, yo, what up? But like little bits, like a Range Rover, for like, not for me, but for Cosby's wealth, no one's gonna know. No one would know. Not that this ever happened. It's all alleged, right? As the Cosby Show continued, Shane Brown, Cosby's alleged baby mama, allegedly kept contacting him on set to ask for money. According to Mark Whitaker, Cosby had continued to shell out money to Brown over the years, including paying for Sean Brown's 2 stints in rehab. Whitaker says that one day Cosby angrily instructed his assistant to tell Brown not to call him on set. And 30 minutes later, Brown called again to clarify if Cosby meant quote-unquote forever. Cosby was also informed that his alleged love child, Autumn Jackson, now a teenager, wanted to meet him. Cosby invited Autumn to a taping of The Cosby Show, where they were photographed together. Also, Cosby allegedly took a small portrait of Autumn, framed it, and put it on the set, so the alleged love child could see herself whenever she tuned into The Cosby Show. That's sweet and weird. In 1987, 29-year-old journalist Sammy Mays attended a television industry conference in Las Vegas, and that is where she claimed to meet Bill Cosby. According to Mays, Cosby invited her up to his hotel room, served her a drink, and Mays lost consciousness. Have you heard this one before? Mays claims that when she came to, she was sat in the same chair, saliva running down her mouth and with her bra knocked askew. Cosby was allegedly standing over her. According to Mays, she was confused about what had happened, got up, flustered and embarrassed, and rushed out of the room, allegedly apologizing for wasting Cosby's time. Sammy Mays came forward in 2015, saying, "Whenever I see a Jell-O pudding, it comes flooding back. Bill Cosby, that encounter, that one time, played a major factor in the direction my life took toward the dark side." End quote. Also in 1987, Canadian singer Morgane Pickard, whose precise age at the time is undetermined, but she would have likely been in her late teens or early 20s, was allegedly invited by Cosby to the set of The Cosby Show. Pickard claims that after a set visit on multiple occasions between 1987 and 1990, Cosby allegedly pressured her to drink alcohol that was spiked with sedatives. Pickard specifically cites one incident at Cosby's home where he allegedly drugged and R-worded her while she was unconscious. According to Pickard, who filed a civil lawsuit in 2023, she woke up several hours later, naked in a hotel room with a, quote, soreness in her vagina, In 1988, Kaya Thompson was a 17-year-old living in Washington, D.C. Thompson claims that one day, without her parents' knowledge, she hopped a train to New York to attend a meeting at a modeling agency. Speaking to People magazine in 2005, Thompson claims that on this day, the modeling agency sent Thompson to meet Bill Cosby on the set of The Cosby Show, which was filmed in New York. According to Thompson, Cosby was expecting her when she arrived. During the meeting, Thompson claims that she was astonished when Bill Cosby allegedly called up her mother in Washington, explained the situation, and gallantly vowed to help Thompson move to New York and break her into the industry. 2 weeks later, Thompson and her parents allegedly drove up to New York to allegedly have dinner with Cosby, who Thompson claims did his best to put her parents at ease with the prospect of Thompson relocating to New York alone. A few weeks after that, Cosby had allegedly secured Thompson an apartment in the city and scored her a walk-on role on The Cosby Show. However, Thompson claims that after her move to New York, Cosby started to make her uncomfortable, with his alleged constant insistence that they spend time together, go to dinner together, and his alleged inappropriate touching of her body. Yeah, this is it, right, because he's got her on the hook, because he's paying for her apartment, he's promising her a career and stuff, and it's like, that is really something that you want. And now he's like, yeah, let's just go to dinner. And you're like, I don't want to. But you do go, don't you, in the situation? And then it just gets fucking worse. It's going to get worse, allegedly. According to Thompson, Cosby once told her to pick a favorite outfit out of any magazine so that he could buy it for her. He'd then take her to dinner, then they'd go back to his place where they could have an amaretto, and then she'd probably be so tired that they'd fall asleep on the couch. The straw that broke the camel's back was when Cosby allegedly phoned Thompson at 1 a.m. asking to see her. Thompson vacated her apartment in New York and moved back to Washington. Good. Then, being a teenager, Thompson allegedly sent Cosby an angry poem blasting him for his alleged sexual harassment. In 1989, Thompson claims she returned to New York City and phoned Cosby, hoping to get closure. She and Cosby allegedly met, and Thompson claimed that Cosby said her poem concerned him, made him suspect she had emotional problems, offered to book her into a mental health clinic, after which Cosby offered to buy her a car and pay for her college tuition. She's the one with mental problems, Cosby. You're the one with mental problems, allegedly, Cosby. Thompson says that she declined, but allegedly at Cosby's insistence, that day she allegedly had lunch with a Harvard psychiatrist named Dr. Alvin Pesson, who also wrote the introduction and afterward to Cosby's book Fatherhood. Pesson allegedly asked Thompson questions about her mental well-being, but did not once ask her about her relationship with Bill Cosby. It shouldn't be noted that Pesson says that he does not recall meeting with Thompson, but that he often had people affiliated with The Cosby Show ask him for advice. According to Thompson, after the lunch, Dr. Bussant allegedly sent her back to Cosby's house, where Cosby allegedly fixed a drink, started caressing her, and then allegedly told her to grab a bottle of Lubriderm. And then Thompson claims that she was coerced into giving America's Dad and the attributed author of Fatherhood a handjob. Thompson claims that before she left, Cosby allegedly gave her $700 in cash or $1,760 in modern money, as if she were a sex worker. Kaya Thompson was one of the Jane Does who came forward during Andrea Constand's civil suit in 2005 and later came forward publicly in 2015. Another woman coming forward on the Dr. Phil show in 2014 under the assumed name Lisa claims that in 1988 she was a 21-year-old aspiring model. Lisa claims that she met Bill Cosby in New York and he allegedly invited her back to his house where he poured her a shot of alcohol. Lisa claims that after drinking it, she started to feel dizzy. Lisa remembers allegedly sitting on Cosby's lap on a couch with Cosby allegedly stroking her hair. Then Lisa claims she blacked out. In 1989, 23-year-old model Liselotte Lublin claims that she met Bill Cosby through a modeling agency. One evening, Lublin claims that she was lured to Bill Cosby's Las Vegas hotel suite under the pretext of auditioning for The Cosby Show. There, Cosby allegedly served Lublin 2 shots of alcohol, which Lublin claims she reluctantly drank after being pressured. Lublin's last memory is sitting on an end table, with Cosby allegedly straddling her and stroking her hair. Lublin says that she doesn't remember how she got home that night. Liselotte Lublin first came forward in 2015, and Lublin was a campaigner who successfully changed Nevada's statute of limitations for R-word from 4 to 20 years. Wait, what the Nevada had a statute of limitations on R-word that was 4 years? So after 4 years, you can be like, yo, I did that. You can't do What the Nevada? 20 years is like better, but is that right? Should there be a statute of limitations on something like that? I'm kind of for statute of limitations in general, but for like mega crimes like this? Back in 1987, 18-year-old aspiring model and future Miss America in 1997, Lisa Christie traveled from West Seneca to New York City, where a modeling agency took her and some other girls to visit the set of The Cosby Show. There she allegedly met Cosby, who allegedly asked Christie what she wanted for a career, and she responded that she wanted to act. Cosby allegedly offered to mentor her. Cosby got Christie a spot as an extra on a couple of episodes of The Cosby Show and allegedly got her to accompany him to one of his commercial shoots for Jell-O. Then, allegedly at Cosby's insistence, Christie enrolled at Buffalo State University to pursue an education. Nevertheless, Cosby allegedly stayed in touch and would fly Christie to visit him in New York and Chicago. Christie claims that one time, while visiting Cosby's brownstone in New York, he offered her a cappuccino, but at that moment Cosby got a phone call and asked Christie to leave before she was able to drink anything. Then in 1989, Christie claims she was invited to Cosby's Chicago hotel room to privately audition for a role in Ghost Dad. Christie claims that when she arrived, Cosby encouraged her to sit on the couch and already had a drink waiting for her. Christie, who didn't drink alcohol, says that she only took the smallest of sips out of politeness. Christie claims that a few minutes later, Cosby got her to do an acting exercise and told her to close her eyes. Then Cosby allegedly kissed her on the mouth, and Christie says she immediately moved away. According to Christie, Cosby allegedly said, "You love me, you owe me. You will never make it in the business unless you sleep with me." Allegedly. Christie says this was the last time she ever saw Cosby face to face. Lisa Christie came forward in 2015. Bill Cosby's legal representatives have denied all the above allegations. Also in 1989, there was an alleged incident with Cosby's own daughter, Erin, then 23 years old. According to Whitaker, Erin had often been a problem child. At age 14, when at boarding school, Erin allegedly began drinking alcohol and smoking marijuana. A few years later, after enrolling at Spelman College, the historically black college to which Cosby had donated $20 million to name a campus hub after Camille, Erin allegedly began skipping classes and snorting cocaine at a rate of $200 per day, or $570 in modern terms. God damn, that's a lot of cocaine. In 1987, during her sophomore year, Erin dropped out. In response, Bill and Camille Cosby allegedly cut her off from financial assistance until she got her act together. Erin spent the next 2 years living in New York with friends and allegedly partying quite a bit. Then, in 1989, Erin Cosby met Mike Tyson in a New York nightclub and traveled with him to a party at his house in New Jersey. There, Tyson allegedly groped and tried to sexually assault Erin Cosby. It should be noted that Mike Tyson denies these allegations. That's all they are, just allegations, just they're noted legally. When Erin went to her father with the story, Cosby allegedly told her that he would handle it. According to Mark Whitaker, the National Post, and numerous other mainstream media outlets, Cosby contacted Tyson via his lawyers and told him that they'd be pressing charges for sexual assault unless Tyson sought counseling. Such is said to be Cosby's response to the alleged attempted R-word of his 23-year-old daughter. Okay, thank God. This was bad, but alleged incident with Cosby, his own daughter, could have gone a whole other direction, which it didn't, and thank you for that. Riches, R-word, blackmail, and murder. Wait, how does murder come into the Bill Cosby story? I've not heard of murder being in the Bill Cosby story. Let's find out. By 1989, Bill Cosby was pulling in an estimated $4 million per year, that's $10 million today, for syndicated reruns of The Cosby Show. At first I was like, that's not very impressive, $10 million a year. Come on, you could do better, Bill. You're worth like a Billy. And then it's just, that's just for the syndicated reruns. So that's no additional work. In addition to all his other sources of income, also in 1989, 22-year-old model and actress Eden Turl guest starred on The Cosby Show for 2 episodes, playing the role of a police officer. While filming on set, Turl was allegedly summoned to Cosby's dressing room. There, Cosby allegedly groped her breasts and crotch. Turl claims that she later told 2 Cosby Show staffers what had allegedly occurred, but she was ignored. Turl first came forward in 2015, saying that she was intimidated from coming forward earlier due to Cosby's power and iconic celebrity status. In 1990, while in New York filming for The Cosby Show, Cosby allegedly contacted a modeling agency out of the blue asking to meet one of their clients, Jewel Allison. According to Allison, Cosby invited her to dinner at his brownstone, and she went along willingly, assuming that Cosby was scouting her for a potential part on the show. This is sick. Cosby's shopping. He's seen her in a magazine or something, hasn't he? And being Bill Cosby, he's phoned them up and being like, I like how she looks. Can you make introductions? And I'm like, that's gross, dude. It's gross, in my opinion. I mean, all of this is alleged, but it is gross, in my opinion, if it happened. Allison claims that when she arrived for dinner, it turned out she was the only guest. Feeling familiar? Cosby allegedly gave her a glass of wine, of which Allison took a few sips. Thereafter, Allison says that her memory of events becomes fragmented. She claims that Cosby helped her stand up, lifting her up by her underarms. Cosby allegedly walked Allison into an adjoining room where he allegedly told her to look at herself in the mirror. Then Allison remembers Cosby allegedly pulling her right hand behind her back. Then she remembers allegedly seeing semen on the floor and feeling some sort of liquid on her hand. Then Allison claims that Cosby allegedly put her in a taxi, which took her home. Jewel Allison first came forward in 2015, saying that she had not come forward earlier because she was scared and also didn't want to be responsible for, quote, taking an African-American man down. For me to come forward and basically destroy this very positive image of as few as we have African-American men in America, it was just too difficult to do at the time. Also in 1990, 26-year-old actress Lily Bernard claims that she met Cosby on the set of The Cosby Show, where he allegedly offered to mentor her. Over the next several weeks, Cosby allegedly promised Bernard a principal speaking role on the show if she worked hard and followed his instructions. During their mentoring sessions, Cosby allegedly warned Bernard about the sexual pressures of Hollywood, said that she was like a daughter to him, and allegedly suggested that Bernard call him daddy. During a vocal exercise in 1990, Cosby allegedly grabbed Bernard's breasts. A month later, in the Trump Taj Mahal in Atlantic City, Cosby allegedly lured Bernard to his hotel room under the guise of introducing her to a producer who could help her career. There, Cosby allegedly gave Bernard a non-alcoholic drink, and after consuming it, Bernard claims that she vomited and lost consciousness. According to Bernard, when she came to, Cosby allegedly began undressing her despite Bernard repeatedly telling him no. Then Bernard says that she passed out again. When she regained consciousness, Cosby was allegedly naked and in the process of R-wording her. Then Bernard claims Cosby allegedly put a pillow over her face until she passed out yet again. She says she remembers Cosby allegedly putting her in a jacuzzi to wash her off afterwards, and then she woke up in bed. That's gross. According to Bernard, when she confronted Cosby about the incident, he told her to go to the police and lodge a complaint so that he could sue her for defamation. Bernard backed down. Then in 1991, at Cosby's house in Manhattan, Cosby allegedly threatened to blacklist Bernard if she did not perform oral sex on him. Bernard claims that Cosby also drugged, assaulted, and battered her on additional occasions. Finally, in early 1992, Bernard filmed her principal speaking role on The Cosby Show, playing the heavily pregnant and ditzy Mrs. Minifeld, who winds up giving birth in a taxi, much to the consternation of Cosby's character. Bernard claims that her lost contact with Cosby was on set on her birthday in 1992, when Cosby allegedly said to her, quote, "As far as I'm concerned, Bernard, you're dead. Do you hear me? You're dead, Bernard. You don't exist. I never want to see your face again. Now get the hell out of here." A few months later, Lily Bernard checked into a mental hospital because she had become suicidal. When she was released, she had to see a trauma therapist 5 days a week. Bernard says she still has night terrors and panic attacks. She first came forward in 2015. Meanwhile, on April the 30th, 1992, the final episode of The Cosby Show aired, bringing its 8-season run to an end. In the final slot, Cosby danced with his on-screen wife, Felicia Rashad, as they waltzed past the studio audience and right out of the studio doors. Cosby's next move was to host the game show You Bet Your Life, which first aired in September 1992, but chronically low ratings forced it into the grave in less than a year. Meanwhile, in 1992, Cosby was inducted into the Academy of Television Arts and Sciences Hall of Fame. He used his speech to denounce the portrayal of blacks on TV predominantly as violent thugs, drug addicts, and degenerate lowlifes, which he called a massacre of images. Well, Bill, allegedly, when this comes out, as we will soon see, you're going to do a lot to damage that, aren't you, Bill? Aren't you? Allegedly. Also in 1992, Cosby allegedly lured aspiring actress Angela Leslie to his Las Vegas hotel room under the false pretenses of an audition. Cosby allegedly gave Leslie a drink as a prop to her and told her to act like a drunk woman. Leslie claims she only pretended to drink it. Then Cosby allegedly stripped off his clothes and pulled Leslie's hands onto his penis. According to Leslie, when she resisted, Cosby told her to leave. In 1993, Cosby sold NBC a show called The Cosby Mysteries, a crime drama series where Cosby played a retired NYPD criminalist named Guy Hanks. Wait, but it's called The Cosby Mysteries? That's weird. His sidekick was played by Dante Beze, who later called himself Most Def, and unless I'm misinformed, Mr. Most Definitely on more formal occasions. Cosby's old co-star from The Electric Company, Rita Moreno, played his quirky housekeeper. A 2-hour pilot was aired in January 1994, and the first season began in September of that year. During a shooting in 1995, 29-year-old actress Michelle Hurd, later known for her role on Star Trek Picard, played an unnamed jogger in one episode. Cosby allegedly invited her to his dressing room for lunch on a daily basis. According to Hurd, this escalated to Cosby doing acting exercises with her, including one where Cosby would allegedly run his hands up and down her body. Cosby allegedly told Hurd never to tell anyone about the exercises because the other actors would get jealous. Then Cosby invited her to his house where she could take a shower and they could blow dry her hair to see what it looked like straightened. Hurd refused. Smart, later saying that she'd dodged a bullet. Indeed, in my opinion, allegedly. Meanwhile, The Cosby Mysteries was experiencing appalling ratings and was cancelled after just 19 episodes. In April 1995, Cosby discovered that the now 20-year-old Autumn Jackson, his alleged love child with Sean Brown, had dropped out of Tallahassee Community College. As such, Cosby stopped having money released from Autumn's educational trust fund. In the summer of 1995, CBS had become rather desperate for another hit sitcom. They'd fallen to third place in the ratings and had developed a reputation in Hollywood as a stingy and unsupportive place for creatives to work. They began courting Bill Cosby. In order to woo him, they made a then unprecedented offer to buy 2 seasons of the show straight off the bat and to pay Cosby $1.3 million per episode, or $2.7 million in modern money. That's crazy money. That's huge. And 2 seasons, that's what like Netflix does these days, but this was not a thing back in the day. The show would ultimately run 95 episodes over 4 seasons. He's made $250 million off this. That's nuts. Netting Cosby $123.5 million, or roughly $250 million today. That's madness. CBS also vowed to purchase any other shows that Cosby might propose. The sitcom, named Crosby, was about a retired airline customer service agent named Hilton Lucas who got into a bunch of hilarious situations because he'd had too much time on his hands. These ideas that he comes up with, they sound like the sort of ideas that ChatGPT would give you if you come up with an idea for a 1990s sitcom. Actress Felicia Rashad, Cosby's on-screen wife on The Cosby Show, was brought back to play his fictional spouse, Ruth Lucas. The show premiered on September 16, 1996, watched by nearly 25 million people, or nearly a quarter of Americans watching TV that night. Cosby has a draw. That's a huge pull. While Cosby was in development in 1996, Bill Cosby allegedly invited Kelly Johnson, often referred to under the assumed name Casey, to a business dinner about the project. Johnson had allegedly known Cosby for several years as part of her work for the talent agency William Morris. According to Johnson, she and Cosby gradually became friends, with Cosby allegedly asking Johnson to do a scene reading with him, which ended in a kiss. According to Johnson, apart from some mild awkwardness, nothing else untoward happened that night, but she allegedly later met with Cosby again for lunch at the Bel Air Hotel in Los Angeles. Cosby allegedly answered the door wearing nothing but a robe and slippers. During the meal, Cosby allegedly said that Johnson looked anxious and pressured her to take a single white pill. According to Johnson, she blacked out and soon allegedly woke up in bed with Cosby next to her. She first came forward in 2015 saying, quote, "I really felt for all those years that it was just me, that I was alone. With all the other women coming forward, it just really felt this is the right time." I'd love a count of how many people have come forward with allegations, because this is absolutely it's just an endless stream. In December 1996, Autumn Jackson allegedly left 2 phone messages for Bill Cosby, which he claims to have ignored. Then he allegedly got a phone message from someone calling herself Autumn Cosby, and according to CNN, he interpreted this as a blackmail threat. Cosby phoned Autumn, who said that she was homeless and $2,100 in debt, or $4,180 in modern money. Cosby offered to send her $3,000 and renewed his offer to pay for her education. When Cosby asked Autumn about the use of his last name in a previous message, Autumn allegedly denied using it. A few weeks later, Autumn and 2 accomplices sent Cosby a message demanding $40 million. That's $79.6 million today, or else they would go to the media with the story about her alleged paternity. Wow. That is a big ask. I would try and aim for something a little bit more realistic. Cosby's lawyer contacted Autumn, negotiations will begin in about a second, and warned her that this was extortion. In response, Autumn sent Cosby a copy of the $25,000 contract she'd negotiated with the Globe to sell her story, and also threatened to share it with CBS executives and the various corporations who used Cosby as a spokesman. Cosby's legal team contacted the FBI, who set up a sting operation, luring Jackson to New York under the guise of negotiating a settlement agreement in order to gain further evidence that Autumn Jackson was engaging in extortion. Jackson and her accomplices were arrested on January 20th, 1997. What proof are they going to have? This is 1997. Could they do a paternity test? How is that going to run? Cosby's not going to give his DNA willingly. In response to the story, Cosby's PR team tried to claim that he barely knew Jackson and was paying for her tuition and so forth like he had done for hundreds of other young people. However, Gerald Jackson, while claiming to be Autumn's actual father, told the media about the Cosby's affair with Sean Brown. 2 days later, Cosby admitted the affair in an interview with Dan Rather. He later was compelled to provide further detail when he testified at Autumn Jackson's trial. Bill Cosby and Gerald Jackson both offered to get DNA tests to determine paternity once and for all. However, both Autumn Jackson and Sean Brown refused to give a sample. Autumn Jackson was convicted of extortion in 1997 and received 26 months in prison, of which she served 14. Yeah, this wasn't the best plan. She was pregnant with twins at the time of her incarceration. In 2000, legal scholar Richard Rosen commented that if Autumn had contacted Cosby via a lawyer rather than on her own, it would have not been classified as extortion, but as the opening of a settlement negotiation. Oh my god, yeah, that's so true. If this was just done through a lawyer, it would just be like settlement rather than going to court. Wait, what's the difference? What's the difference? That's crazy. Lawyers can just do extortion. Oh my god. That's crazy. I just never thought about that before. This has led to other legal scholars pointing out that some settlement negotiations done through lawyers are little more than blackmail. Yes, I never thought about this, but it's fucking true. 4 days prior to the arrest of Autumn Jackson, at 1 a.m. on January the 16th, 1997, Cosby's 27-year-old son, Ennis, pulled over on the I-405 outside of Los Angeles to repair a flat tire on his Mercedes-Benz. Wait, doesn't this guy die? Have I heard of this? Is this the murder? Ennis Cosby called his girlfriend, Stephanie Crane, who drove out and pulled up behind him, using her headlights to illuminate Ennis's repair efforts. Just then, 18-year-old Markashev approached Crane's driver's side window and said, "Open the door or I'll harm you." Crane put her car into gear and sped away. She had traveled no more than 15 meters when she heard a gunshot. Crane pulled the car around and drove back to the location, where she saw the suspect running away and found Ennis Cosby lying in a pool of his own blood. Oh my god, even if you're Bill Cosby and you're allegedly a piece of shit, no one needs to lose their own kids. He had been killed by a single bullet to the head. Markashev was ultimately apprehended when the National Enquirer put out a $100,000 reward for information, leading one of Markashev's acquaintances to turn on him. Markashev was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life in prison without parole plus 10 years. Well, life in prison without parole, doesn't that just about cover it? Bill Cosby was informed of his son's death on the set of his sitcom. A private car drove him back to his Manhattan home. Confronted with a throng of reporters, Cosby turned to them and said, quote, "He was my hero." He then went inside quietly and shut the door. The Gathering Storm. On January 27th, 1997, 11 days after his son's murder, Bill Cosby was back on the set of his sitcom. He said to the cast and crew gathered, quoting, "If you see me being quiet, you'll understand. But my job is to make people laugh, and I like my job. But I can't do my job if everyone around me is looking sad." A few days later, on the 1st of February, Cosby flew to West Palm Beach to do a stand-up show. He spent the first 15 minutes talking about his son Ennis and about dealing with grief of family and friends, but also fans. "I have to give my fans a release, because that's what I do for a living. I don't sing, but I do sell pudding." The crowd burst into laughter. The stand-up routine commenced. This is fine. I know people may be, really, after 11 days or whatever, it's like, and this is fine. This is fine. It's what he wants to do. That's okay. In May 1997, Cosby hosted an hour-long special called Kids Say the Darndest Things, the premise of which was for Cosby to interview cute little kids and goad them into saying naive and funny things. A second series ran on CBS. Why have I heard of this show? On CBS in November, and the show became a weekly series in January 1998, ultimately running 2 seasons concurrent with the final 2 seasons of the sitcom Cosby. In 1999, Cosby released a children's television show based on his book series of the same name, Little Bill on Nickelodeon, for which Cosby was a voice actor, executive producer, writer, and composer of the theme tune. As a tribute to his son Ennis, Cosby incorporated the greeting, "Hello friend," which Ennis was known to commonly use. Little Bill ran until 2004. In January 2000, 20-year-old LaShawn Covington appeared as an extra on Cosby. Oh God, we're just getting right back into this. According to Covington, on January the 25th, Cosby invited her to dinner at his Manhattan townhouse to give her some career advice. Covington claims that Camille was not home. During the evening, Cosby allegedly told Covington that there was nothing she couldn't do if she didn't put her mind to it. He then allegedly offered to show Covington some relaxation exercises. Cosby allegedly came round the table and started rubbing Covington's head, then moved down to her arms and then to her torso, stopping at her buttocks. Then Cosby allegedly told Covington to lay down on a couch in order to relax further. According to Covington, it was then that Cosby allegedly grabbed her hand, put it under his t-shirt, and allegedly attempted to guide it toward the crotch of his sweatpants. Covington says that she pulled her hand away, told Cosby she was leaving, and Cosby allegedly said, "That's fine." 3 days later, Covington reported the incident to the NYPD and Cosby was pulled in for questioning. He denied the allegations. The NYPD consulted the district attorney, who decided that up until Covington pulled her hand away, it was all consensual and no crime had been committed. Yeah, I mean, there's no crime here. Like, he was trying it on. Like, if we didn't know about the backstory, he's trying it on with her. A little bit creepy. Fine. Being creepy's not a crime. It's just creepy-ass creepy. And then she's like, no. And he's like, that's okay. And then leaves. There's no crime there. That makes sense. The incident nevertheless hit the newspapers, causing some damage to Cosby's reputation. The National Enquirer tabloid went further, apparently quoting Covington's relatives who allegedly claimed that Cosby had groped Covington's breasts, exposed himself, and allegedly tried to put his hand down Covington's pants. The sitcom Cosby, meanwhile, had seen a terminal decline in ratings from an average of 16 million to just 7 million by the fourth season. CBS had moved the show from Monday to Wednesday to the quote-unquote Friday night death slot. Cosby ended in April 2000, and kids say the darndest thing wrapped up in June of that year. Cosby told reporters, "I'm going out with the class of 2000. I wish we could have done better." For CBS. After that, Cosby's career petered out for a while. His film career had already dried up after the box office bombs of Leonard Part 6 in 1987 and Ghost Dad in 1990. What the hell's Leonard Part 6? Were there 5 previous Leonard movies I've never heard of? With him only having smaller roles in Meteor Man and Jack since then. His television career likewise went into a slump in the decade after Cosby and Kids Say the Darndest Things ended in 2000, keeping busy only with Little Bill, which ended in 2004. Meanwhile, comedy albums had long since gone out of style, and Cosby hadn't produced one since 1991. Cosby continued to perform stand-up, though the schedule was far less grueling, and he continued to produce coffee table books of humorous essays, though often with the significant aid of co-writers and ghostwriters. Again, fine with that. By and large, Cosby, now in his mid-60s, it appeared that in the minds of the establishment, Hollywood, and wider society, it was time to load America's dad with awards and honors as he rode gracefully off into the sunset. In 2002, Cosby received the Presidential Medal of Freedom from George W. Bush. That's like the highest civilian honor in America, right? That's like getting knighted. Oh, can they take that away? They take away people's knighthoods. Very, very rarely. If you've been a very naughty boy, they'll take that away. Don't know why I said that so sarcastically. It's really people usually, they've done terrible things when they get that taken away. But Cosby seemed to rebel against the idea of being put out to pasture and fulminated about how to stage a comeback. His pet project during the early 2000s was a live-action version of Fat Albert, which was slated for a Christmas release in 2004. And as it transpired, 2004 turned out to be a very busy year indeed, but perhaps not for the right reasons. I mean, this is the thing. If he wants to make a comeback, he has more money than God. Like, he could definitely just pursue whatever project he wants, and if that doesn't work out, he can pursue another one, and he knows what he's doing. Like, he could have made a reasonable comeback, I think. In January or February 2004, Cosby allegedly involved, the 30-year-old director of operations for the women's basketball team at Temple University, Andrea Constand, to his house. Yes, yet another house in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. Yeah, I mean, rich people gonna rich. Gotta buy many houses. Constant had met Cosby in 2002 since he was a trustee of Temple University, his quasi-alma mater. Oh yeah, they gave him a degree. Like, not an honorary degree, but like a real degree. Yeah, received a bachelor's degree in life experience in 1971 before moving on to graduate work at Amherst. Constance got to know Cosby, who allegedly was a regular attendee of women's basketball games, and they became friends. Over the next 2 years, Constand attended a number of Cosby dinner parties in addition to being invited to private dinners. But one night, in January or February 2004, Constand had already been out with friends for an evening on the town when Cosby allegedly invited her to his place. Constand arrived at approximately 9 p.m. and talked at length about the stress she was feeling in her life. Cosby allegedly offered Constand 3 pills that he allegedly claimed were herbal remedies to help her relax, and he urged her to wash it down with a glass of wine. Then Cosby and Constand allegedly talked for another 20 or 30 minutes. Then Constand claimed that the pills made her dizzy, her legs rubbery like jelly, and her mind semi-conscious, and she lost the ability to talk. Constand says she remembers Cosby allegedly leading her to the couch, touching her breasts, and digitally penetrating her before guiding a hand toward his penis. According to Constand, she lost consciousness, only waking up again at 4 a.m. and noticing that her bra was on backward and pushed above her breasts and that she felt raw in her pelvic region. Constand claims that she got up and walked to the front door to find Cosby in a bathrobe, allegedly offering her a blueberry muffin and some tea. Then Cosby allegedly walked Constand to the door and let her out. According to Constand's original police report, they embraced before she left. There was no immediate confrontation between Cosby and Constand over what had happened, and she allegedly maintained regular contact with him in the following months. Andrea Constand resigned from her position at Temple and returned to her home in southern Ontario, Canada, in April. Yeah, again, it's like Bill Cosby scary, allegedly. Like, he's very powerful. On April the 24th, Donna Bartlett was attending a track meet at the University of Pennsylvania. Oh, does it ever end? Does this ever end? Does it just keep on going? How many people, Bill, allegedly? According to Barrett, she and 4 of her teammates had gathered to pose for a photo when Bill Cosby allegedly came up behind her, grabbed her by the waist, and allegedly rubbed his penis against her buttocks while allegedly saying, "Hey, back that thing up here, girl. Back it on up." Barrett claims that she cried out and wrenched herself away. That's a crime there. That's a crime. That's sexual assault, no? Or assault or something. There's something there. There's a crime there. According to Barrett, Cosby quickly left the area while she complained to her teammates. Barrett claims that she told some athletics officials about the incident, but that they didn't know what to do about it. Donna Barrett first came forward in 2015. On May the 19th, 2004, Cosby attended a gala in Washington, D.C., celebrating 50 years since Brown and Board of Education, the Supreme Court decision which ended racial segregation in schools. Cosby was there to accept an award for educational philanthropy. It was at this event that Cosby gave his infamous pound cake speech. I have no idea what that's about. I don't even know what pound cake. It's a type of cake. I don't know this speech. And it had a great deal of influence over what happened in 2005 and 2014. Cosby opened by referencing the people who had fought for civil rights in the 50s and 60s, quoting, "These people, they opened the doors. They gave us the right. And today in our cities and public schools, we have 50% dropout rates. In our own neighborhoods, we have men in prison. No longer is a person embarrassed because they are pregnant without a husband. No longer is a boy considered an embarrassment if he tries to run away from being the father of a child. The lower economic and lower middle economic people are not holding up their end. In neighborhoods that most of us grew up in, parenting is not going on. I'm talking about these people who cry when their son is standing there in an orange suit. Where were you when he was 2? Where were you when he was 12? Where were you when he was 18? And how come you didn't know he had a pistol? And where is his father? And why don't you know where he is? And why doesn't the father show up to talk to this boy? Looking at the incarcerated today, these are not political criminals. These are people going around stealing Coca-Cola, people getting shot in the head over a piece of pound cake. Well, there we go. Then we all run out and are outraged. The cops shouldn't have shot him. What the hell was he doing with the pound cake in his hand? Are you not paying attention, people? People with their hat on backwards, pants around the crack. Isn't it a sign of something? Oh, when she's got her dress all the way up to the crack and got all kinds of needles and things going through her body. What part of Africa did this come from? These people are not Africans. They don't know a damn thing about Africa, with names like Shaniqua, Shaluga, Muhammad, and all that crap, and all of them are in jail. It's right around the corner. It can't speak English. It doesn't want to speak English. I can't even talk the way these people talk. Everybody knows it's important to speak English except these knuckleheads. I can't really comment on this because I'm like the whitest dude ever. But yeah, I'm just... there it is. Cosby continued in a similar vein to an audience that was growing quieter and quieter, talking about a kid committing murder over pizza and women having so many babies so young and men sleeping with so many women that those men might wind up having sex with their own grandmothers. Eventually, Cosby stopped. It does sound like a rant, doesn't he? Stopped ranting, thanked the audience for the award, reiterated the importance of parenting, and walked off the stage to scattered applause. Just imagine that scattered applause, what just happened? No film or transcript was made of this speech at the time, and it was 3 days before extracts of it disseminated through the press. And boy howdy, the fact that it was a famous and almost universally adored black man saying these things made an enormous splash. Public opinion was deeply divided. Right-wing commentators like Bill O'Reilly seized the opportunity to echo Cosby's sentiments that since the establishment of civil rights, it was individual failures within the black community rather than institutional racism that were responsible for the continuing economic and social woes of African Americans, from the 70% single mother rate, the disproportionate crime rates, and the leading cause of death for young African American men was black-on-black crime and gang-related violence. So you know how I commented earlier how because I'm like a super white dude that I didn't really want to comment on what Bill was saying. Seems like Bill O'Reilly's totally cool with that, Bill. He's like, yes, Bill. Original Bill Cosby Bill, not Bill O'Reilly Bill. Bill O'Reilly. A number of elder civil rights campaigners like journalist Colbert King, who had become disillusioned with the evolution of African American culture, broadly shared Cosby's sentiments on personal responsibility, as did a large segment of the African American church community like Jesse Jackson and Al Sharpton. However, a much larger contingent on the left, and among younger black commentators in particular, were enraged by Cosby's speech, saying it ignored the legacy of racism in America and the role of present-day racism in keeping the majority of African Americans in poverty and crime-riddled communities. Ta-Nehisi Coates, in The Village Voice, called Cosby the patron saint of black elitists. Michael, it's a good burn. Michael Dyson, in a rushed book entitled Is Cosby Right, or Has the Black Middle Class Lost Its Mind, called Cosby an aristocrat who ignored white society's responsibility in creating problems for the black community and who now wanted the poor to fix the problems on their own. Dyson also accused Bill Cosby of hypocrisy in lecturing people about parenting and running away from being fathers after the Autumn Jackson debacle. Yeah. I hate the hypocrisy of this. When the mask is so different from the person, it's not nice, it's weird. It's super weird. For decades, Cosby's clean, family-friendly act that generally swerved questions of race had made him accessible to many demographics and to people on the right and left of the spectrum. And given Cosby's support for civil rights and his contributions to African American charities and education, for decades, he was more favorably viewed by the left, despite his refusal to engage aggressively in racial politics and his rather sunny depictions of African American family life in his sitcoms. With the pound cake speech, that equilibrium was utterly destroyed, and it had one crucial, long-lasting effect. The media and Hollywood, the majority of whom trend toward the left wing of politics, became less inclined to run interference for Cosby's public reputation. Even one of Cosby's accuser, Jewel Allison, has gone on record saying she hesitated to go public with her allegations because she didn't want to, quote, take a black man down. With the pound cake speech, Cosby ensured that should another scandal like Autumn Jackson or Lahill Covington emerge, that the media would not be quite so tacit and the African American community not quite so quick to give Cosby the benefit of the doubt. Andrea Constand. On 1st of July 2004, while appearing at another 50th anniversary commemoration of Brown in Education put on by Jesse Jackson's Rainbow Push Coalition, Cosby doubled down on his remarks. In response to criticisms that he shouldn't have aired the black community's quote-unquote dirty laundry in public, Cosby stated, quote, your dirty laundry gets out of school at 2:30 every day. It's cursing and calling each other the N-word as they're walking up and down the street. They think they're hip. They can't read. They can't write. They're laughing and giggling and they're going nowhere. You've got to stop beating up your women because you can't find a job, because you didn't want to get an education and now you're on minimum wage. For me, it's almost analgesic, the act of taking a pain-killing drug, to talk about what the white man is doing to us. It keeps you frozen in the hole you're sitting in. In August 2004, Andrea Constand took her parents to meet Bill Cosby after a performance he gave at an Aboriginal Canadian casino in Rama, Ontario. The meeting was apparently amicable, with Andrea allegedly bringing Cosby a sweater as a present. Nevertheless, Constand and her family claimed that in the following months she was depressed, anxious, and suffered from flashbacks and nightmares. Constand's mother, Gianna, asked her what was wrong, but Constand wouldn't answer. Then, on January the 12th, 2005, Andrea Constand woke in the middle of the night after a flashback of the alleged incident with Cosby and told her mother what had happened. On January the 13th, 2005, Andrea Constand went to the police in Durham, Ontario, accusing Cosby of drugging and sexually assaulting her the previous year. The police referred the matter across the board to authorities in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, who interviewed both Cosby and Constand and called them very cooperative. During the investigations, Cosby claimed that the quote-unquote rendezvous was consensual. Constand's attorney had claimed that Cosby did not realize Andrea Constand was a lesbian until police pointed it out to him. His lawyer, Walter Phillips, went on CNN to call the accusation, quote, utterly preposterous and plainly bizarre. Police went to Cosby's Elkins Park home, but unsurprisingly found no evidence that a sexual assault had taken place the previous year. Constand's mother, Gianna, phoned Cosby to confront him. Cosby called her back a few days later, and they spoke on the phone for 2 hours, which Deanna Constand secretly recorded. In the call, Cosby said that he couldn't remember the name of the pills that he had given to her daughter, but that he would write down the name of the medication and mail it to her. Cosby admitted to touching Andrea Constand's breasts, digitally penetrating her, and placing a hand on his penis. Cosby allegedly stressed that no penile penetration had taken place. He did not explicitly say the actions were non-consensual. Andrea's mother told Cosby he was, quote, a very sick man. Andrea Constand claims that Cosby apologized twice during the phone call for the interaction and what Andrea Constand must be going through. Cosby offered to pay for any therapy that Andrea required and her education aspirations. According to Gianna Constand, the next day Cosby renewed the offer to pay for her daughter's education, and Andrea Constand said that she was contacted by a Cosby representative who allegedly wanted to set up an educational trust fund in her name. Gianna Constand claims that she called Cosby while the police investigation was already underway and did not ask for any money. Just an apology. On February the 8th, Tamara Green waived her right to anonymity and approached the Philadelphia Daily News, claiming Cosby had drugged and sexually assaulted her on an unspecified date in the 1970s. Green said that she was coming forward because it was her civic duty and moral obligation to do so. To quote Green, "Do I want everybody to know that he had his dirty paws all over me? No. But I don't think it's right that they're going to disregard this woman and her allegations." She followed this up with an interview on The Today Show with Matt Lauer on February the 10th and in talks with Constand's lawyers. One of Cosby's lawyers responded that Cosby did not recognize Green's name and that the alleged incident, quote, did not happen in any way, shape, or form. Yeah, deny. Fairly well-established thing that goes on in these sorts of things. Unlike the tepid response of the media to the alleged sexual assault of Lachelle Covington 5 years earlier in 2000, the Constand case made for sustained national news. Over the succeeding 12 days, 12 other women came forward under anonymity as Jane Does, also claiming that Cosby had sexually assaulted them. One of them, a Jane Doe who turned out to be Beth Ferrier, claimed that in 1984 she had embarked on a consensual affair with Bill Cosby that allegedly lasted several months, and after they broke up, she allegedly met him in Denver, where she claims that Cosby allegedly drugged her cappuccino and sexually assaulted Ferrier in her car. Ferrier approached National Enquirer tabloid with her story in exchange for $7,000 or $11,200 in modern money. Sean Brown, the mother of Orton Jackson, also came forward to the National Enquirer, claiming publicly for the first time that not only did she have an affair with Cosby in the mid-1970s, but that on one occasion Cosby had allegedly drugged and R-worded her, although she did not go into further detail until 2014. On February the 17th, 2005, after a little over a month's investigation, District Attorney for Montgomery County, Bruce Castor, issued a press statement saying that he found, quote, insufficient, credible, and admissible evidence exists upon which any charges against Mr. Cosby could be sustained beyond a reasonable doubt, and that Cosby would not be criminally prosecuted. This is the sad reality of these things. Like, all of this may have happened. May have happened. But it's you got to prove beyond all reasonable doubt, and that's going to be real difficult. Castor later explained in court that he thought Andrea Constand had a number of inconsistencies in her story that would reduce her credibility with the jury. Constand could not remember the exact date or even the month in which the alleged incident took place. She could not adequately explain why she waited nearly a full year to report the alleged incident. She could not adequately explain why she remained in contact with Cosby, introduced her parents to him, and even bought him a gift when she attended one of his stand-up performances. Castor added, quoting, "I believed Miss Constand's account of what occurred. What I think is that Andrea Constand was inappropriately touched by Mr. Cosby, but in the ensuing year, she had ruined her own credibility and would not be believed by a jury. That does not mean she was not telling the truth. Just because I didn't think she had a criminal case that could prevail doesn't mean I didn't think Cosby had done something wrong. I thought he probably took advantage of her using his celebrity status, his contacts, his wealth, his connection to Temple University, and I thought that made him a bad guy. That does not mean we could win a case. No, and that's the difference between civil law and criminal law. Like in civil law, you just got to prove balance of probabilities that this happens. But in criminal law, beyond all reasonable doubt, and that's really hard, as this lawyer has well pointed out. Castor claims that he made the press statement on February the 17th, 2005, saying that Cosby would not be criminally prosecuted. So, if Andrea Constand brought a civil lawsuit, Cosby could not plead the Fifth Amendment and would be compelled to testify in a deposition during a civil trial. That, in Castor's view, would allow Constand a fighting chance to overcome the shortcomings of her own story and, quote, exact a measure of justice that would be half a loaf as opposed to nothing at all. Yeah, there we go, civil case. Meanwhile, Bill Cosby allegedly heard of the deal Beth Ferrier had made with the National Enquirer and allegedly met with the tabloid's editor in a hotel room in Houston, Texas on February 21st. Cosby allegedly cut a deal with the Enquirer that they would not run Beth Ferrier's story in exchange for an exclusive interview with Cosby himself. In an article published on March 4, 2005, Cosby declared, "I am not going to give in to people who try to exploit me because of my celebrity status." Cosby admitted to sleeping with Tamara Green in the 1970s, but described her as, quote, a wrecking ball with a questionable background. A Cosby representative in the article described Andrea Constand's case as, quote, a classic shakedown, and claims that Gianna Constant had phoned Cosby before, not after Andrea had gone to the police asking Cosby to make things right with money. Andrea Constant filed a civil lawsuit against Bill Cosby on March 8, 2005, alleging both R-word and libel for his statements to the press, and once again, this instantly became sustained national headline news. All 12 Jane Does, plus Tamara Green, but not Sean Brown, agreed to become witnesses should the case go to trial. Meanwhile, Cosby was subpoenaed to give a deposition and answer questions under oath. Cosby's lawyers were told that he did not have a Fifth Amendment right against self-incrimination because District Attorney Castor had declared he would not criminally prosecute him. This point will become heavily significant later. The deposition for the civil lawsuit took place over 4 days in September 2005, and the written transcript runs to over 1,000 pages. A large portion of this transcript consists of Constant and Cosby's lawyers arguing over whether Cosby had to answer a question, the phrasing of a question, or whether the question was relevant to the case. I would characterize the exchange between the lawyers as, in my personal opinion, extremely hostile, with things turning personal on multiple occasions and several times the lawyers calling each other's competence into question. Cosby's answers, when they do appear in the transcript, are often short and vague, but there are a few statements that stand out. Number 1, Cosby admitted to finding Andrea Constant attractive and pursuing her sexually and, quote, inviting her to my house, talking to her about personal situations, dealing with her life, growth, and education. 2, Cosby admitted to offering to pay Andrea Constant's educational expenses. 3. When asked about whether he thought the sexual encounter with Andrea Constant was consensual, Cosby replied, quote, I think I'm a pretty decent reader of people and their emotions in these romantic sexual things, whatever you like to call them. 4. Cosby admitted to having several prescriptions for Quaaludes in the 1970s, pointing out that they were a popular party drug at the time and saying they were almost as common as having a drink. 5. When Constant's lawyer asked Cosby, quote, was it in your mind that you were going to use these Quaaludes for young women that you wanted to have sex with? Cosby answered yes. Please bear in mind that this is an admission of Cosby using Quaaludes in his sex life in the 1970s, not an admission of drugging an R-word. Constant's lawyer followed up by asking if Cosby had ever given a Quaalude to a woman without their knowledge, but Cosby's lawyer immediately shut this line of questioning down. And finally, 6. Cosby's lawyer asked Cosby about one of the Jane Does who turned out to be Teresa Saraganesi, who he met in Las Vegas in 1976. Cosby admitted, quote, I met Mrs. Saraganesi in Las Vegas. She meets me backstage. I give her Quaaludes. We then have sex. When asked if he thought Saraganesi consented to sex, Cosby replied, if anything, I think she very well may have been very happy to be around the show business surroundings. That's not an answer, Bill. After the deposition, there followed several months of further litigation, hearings, motions, trial preparations, and out-of-court negotiations. The details of the deposition were not made public. On June 9th, 2006, Philadelphia magazine published an article called Dr. Huxtable and Mr. Hyde. The article retold Andrea Constant's version of events, Tamara Green's story, and the story of one of the Jane Does, Beth Ferrier. The article also introduced another Jane Doe, Barbara Bowman, who claimed that she came forward after hearing Constant's story in the media. Philadelphia magazine followed up the article on November 1st, 2006, publishing Bowman's claims that under the guise of being her mentor, Cosby allegedly drugged and assaulted her multiple times between 1985 and 1987. On November 8, 2006, Cosby settled out of court, paying Andrea Constand a sum that was later revealed to the media to be approximately $3.4 million, or $5.2 million in modern money. That's a good amount of money. That's a solid amount of change right there. Cosby's deposition was sealed, and the public was never meant to see it. It should be noted that in civil lawsuits, settling out of court is not an admission of guilt, though it is sometimes depicted that way in the media and in wider public discourse. Often when a defendant reaches a point that the legal costs of continuing the case are greater than the potential settlement, the defendant comes to the table. Also, there is the consideration that unlike a criminal trial, the standard of evidence is not guilt beyond a reasonable doubt, but rather a balance of probabilities of whether the plaintiff or the defendant's arguments appear more credible to the judge, or if they are used, a jury. Yeah, that's the really important thing here, because while the criminal case might be all shut and gone away, civil case is way easier for a defendant to win. You essentially have to pick one side or the other. The risk of continuing, therefore, is a civil judge or jury finding the plaintiff more credible based on evidence that would not have been brought a conviction beyond reasonable doubt in a criminal court. Then you have the court of law calling you an R-wordist in front of the whole world, even though it was a civil trial. After Cosby reached a monetary settlement with Andrea Constand, the furor in the media quickly faded away. Cosby's reputation had been damaged by the headlines, but not beyond repair. I mean, considering what was on the line for him, $5 million in modern money is not a lot. Like didn't we say he had like a billy? Like he's got a ton of coin. And to continue making that coin, if it costs you $5 million, that's kind of just the cost of doing business, Cosby, if you're, an alleged piece of shit like this. Allegedly, in my opinion. It is true that Cosby's media presence went into slight remission for a number of years, but the fact that no verdict on the Constand case had been handed down in the public eye quickly wiped the controversy from mainstream public memory. In the years 2007 to 2013, it's extremely difficult to find a reference to the Constand lawsuit or Cosby as an alleged R-wordist by journalists, media commentators, documentarians, or even comedians. The entire affair seemed to have been effectively and permanently memory-holed, and it wasn't long before Cosby began planning his comeback. How powerful? Cosby's pretty powerful, right? Like, if the comedians aren't making a joke about it, you gotta be like, yeah, because it's, I mean, in my opinion, you gotta be like, it's Bill Cosby. Like, I don't want to talk about Bill Cosby. He's the most powerful comedian there is. He'll end my career if he wants to. No. In 2007, Bill Cosby released a book co-written with Harvard psychiatrist Alvin Passant called Come On People, On the Path from Victims to Victors, which was intended as an exhortation to African Americans to clean up their communities and live better lives. Again, this feels very like, the billionaire preachers. The book told the stories of African American role models and gave advice on parenting, education, diet, and financial management. Appearing on Meet the Press to promote the book, the show's host told Cosby that he should put more blame on institutional racism. Cosby replied, "If you say my black child is going to do more time for selling crack than your white child selling crack, then I'm going to tell my black child don't sell crack. Don't tell me you can't help it." This is a very strange opinion. Why? It's like, yes, but also, do you not see how in that sentence, that is like the institutional racism that is there, no matter what you do about it? While promoting the book on the Oprah Winfrey Show, Cosby used the analogy of a boxer losing a match and his manager telling him, "It's not what your opponent is doing, it's what you're not doing." And Cosby's campaign would continue, with him touring the country, speaking in churches and on college campuses, in what he dubbed a call-out with Bill Cosby. One of his critics, Michael Dyson, called it Cosby's Blame the Poor tour. Yeah, this is it. It's like, oh, the billionaire preachers, It feels very blaming the poor, blaming the victim. Whatever you think about Cosby's message, he had ceased to be a neutral party who kept race out of his public persona and comedy. He was now what The Atlantic called an organic black conservative who preached individualism, strong family values, and personal responsibility. I mean, sure, these are not bad things. Like, I think individualism maybe is a bit selfish, but I understand it. Family values, kind of like family staying together. Yeah, who doesn't like that? And personal responsibility, again, that's a good thing. But it's like, why do you have to mix that in with all the weird? While this made him the darling of Fox News, it had an alienating effect for many other news outlets in the country and generated a fair amount of resentment in the African American communities he criticized. And this would cost him dearly further down the line. He's doing like the Russell Brand thing. Wasn't it? I mean, this is all definitely alleged as well. But Russell Brand... Have I told this story? I met, and this is all allegedly, just things I heard. I am a nobody. Back then, I was a nobody. Like, I wasn't even doing YouTube yet. I was just a regular ass civilian. And I was at just a party of a friends. And we were just talking. I just was chatting to some random person. And they're like, oh yeah, I'm doing the makeup on this movie right now. And it's with Russell Brand. And I'm like, oh, that's interesting. They're talking a little about Russell Brand. And the person just like, shh. And I think this was like right at the beginning of Me Too. And this person was just like, shh, is gonna come out about Russell Brand. And I'm like, oh, really? And then, so for the last decade or so or whatever, I've just been like thinking about that. You know, in the back of my mind, it's like, oh, Russell Brand, huh? What I heard about him one time just on the grapevine. And then it comes, you know, all these accusations come out about Russell Brand. But in the meantime, he'd been preparing for it. He'd been like going down the Bill Cosby thing here of like going very conservative so that when stuff comes out about him, he's like,
Oh, it's the big media. They're trying to take me down.
And this kind of stuff. And it's kind of cringe. But I mean, I understand why he did it. Is there anything updated with that? I mean, it's all alleged right now, like everything in this episode. In 2008, Cosby was allegedly at the Playboy Mansion in Los Angeles when it's beginning again. Why? Can we fucking do something about this? It's like the same. I've read this same line, I swear to God, 1,000 times in this episode. In so-and-so date, Cosby was so-and-so, and he met so-and-so, and then he did so-and-so. I met 18-year-old model Chloe Goines. According to Goines, Cosby allegedly bought her a drink, and shortly thereafter, Goines claims she began to feel ill. Same story, isn't it? Goines says that Hugh Hefner allegedly told her to go lie down in one of the bedrooms. Goines claims that she passed out, and when she awoke, she found Cosby allegedly biting one of her toes. Chloe Goines first came forward in 2014. In 2010, Bill Cosby launched a web series released by his own website called OBKB. It's based on Kids Say the Darndest Things, where he would interview children across the country. Oh, 2010, so YouTube was very small. I'm like, he's hosting the videos on his own website. What's going on? You starting a streaming platform, Bill, in 2010? Each video is 12 to 24 minutes long, and Cosby produced a total of 38 episodes between 2010 and 2012. Meanwhile, Cosby had not returned to film or network television. In 2011, Cosby produced another collection of humorous essays called I Didn't Ask to Be Born, But I'm Glad I Was. In 2013, Cosby produced a stand-up film called Far From Finished, which pretty much says everything you need to know about Cosby's future career plans. And indeed, shortly thereafter, he began talks with NBC to star in another sitcom. Meanwhile, in March 2014, comedian Hannibal Buress added a fresh bit of material to his stand-up routine. To quote Buress, Bill Cosby has the fucking smuggest old black man public persona that I hate. He gets on TV and then mimicking Cosby. Pull your pants up, black people. I was on TV in the 80s. I can talk down to you because I had a successful sitcom. Yeah, but you R-word women, Cosby. So turn the crazy down a couple of notches. And again, as Cosby, I don't curse on stage. Well, yeah, you're an R-wordist, so I'd take you saying a lot of motherfuckers from Bill Cosby himself if you weren't an R-wordist. For the most part, it's fucking public Teflon image. I've done this bit on stage and people don't believe. People think I'm making it up. I'm like, Bill Cosby has a lot of R-word allegations. They're like, no, you do. That shit is upsetting. If you didn't know that, trust me. When you leave here, Google Bill Cosby R-word. It's not funny. Wow, okay. So this guy's stepping forward and he's like, yeah, guys, open secret. Like, come on. For several months, Hannibal Buress's new act was confined to dimly lit comedy clubs, but it wouldn't remain that way. Meanwhile, on July the 12th, 2014, Bill Cosby turned 77. That same day, he recorded an hour-long stand-up special at the San Francisco Jazz Center. Whoa, he's still performing at 77. That's pretty old. Bill Cosby's 87 now? God damn. Bill Cosby's an old-ass man. The act revolved around Cosby's childhood, his first girlfriends, his marriage and children. According to Cosby, Camille edited the film, quote, "My wife is my editor. Trust is what it's called, but it is really beer. It all goes to that one fundamental truth about marriage. The wife is in charge." Cosby's stand-up special was appropriately titled Bill Cosby 77, and Netflix announced it would release the special on November 28th. I wonder if it's still on Netflix. Before that could happen, Hannibal Buress performed his stand-up act at the Trocadero in Philadelphia on October the 16th. Journalist Dan McQuaid filmed the part about Bill Cosby on his phone, and the next day posted it to the website of the Philadelphia magazine. It barely got any traffic online until on October the 20th, it was posted on BuzzFeed and went viral within hours. Google searches for Bill Cosby R-word went through the roof. The stories of Andrea Constant, Mara Green, Beth Ferrier, Barbara Bowman, and Teresa Serengnesi from the 2005 civil suit were rediscovered. Before the end of 2014, 23 more accusers had come forward with similar allegations. One of them was Judy Hath, who, due to the fact that she was underage at the time of the alleged incident in 1974, wasn't constrained by the statute of limitations. Excellent! Look at that! Because wasn't we talking about some 3-year thing for our words? It's like, what the But as soon as it's underage, it's no statute of limitations on that. Because look, that's taking some and making it even more up, isn't it? Hath filed a police report, but the DA decided not to prosecute due to numerous statutory changes since 1974. Cosby's lawyer issued a public statement. The new, never-before-heard claims from women who have come forward in the past few weeks with unsubstantiated, fantastical stories about things they say occurred 30, 40, or even 50 years ago have escalated far past the point of absurdity. Unsubstantiated, as the stories may have been, due to the virality of the news, for Cosby, it was a public relations disaster. Netflix delayed and then later cancelled the release of Cosby's new comedy special. Well, there we have the answer to my earlier question. NBC dropped their plans to have Cosby star in a new sitcom. Lucrative reruns of The Cosby Show were pulled from the air. Universities across the country rescinded 20 of Cosby's whopping 60 honorary degrees that he'd collected over the years. God damn. It's like doctor. Both of Cosby's alma maters, Amherst and Temple, cut ties with him. Spelman College, which had received $20 million, cut ties with Cosby and his wife. Central State University, who had gotten $2 million, removed Bill and Camille Cosby's names from their communications building. The Smithsonian put a disclaimer on their exhibit from the Cosby Art Collection that the exhibit was not a tribute to Bill Cosby, and they did not condone sexual assault. Lastly, Cosby was dropped by his talent agency, leaving him without representation in Hollywood. So he's going to just go have a cry in his mansion, is he? I just don't, of course I don't feel bad for him, but it's his life's not enough yet. It's really not. He deserves, in my opinion, he's not fallen far enough, even though he's been completely fucking cancelled. On December the 29th, 2014, journalist Mary Claire Dale, who worked for the Associated Press, filed a motion with Eduardo Rubino, senior judge for the Eastern District of Pennsylvania, for the transcript of Cosby's deposition for the 2005 civil trial to be unsealed. Judge Rubino approved the motion and said he would unseal the deposition within 60 days. However, Cosby's lawyers fought the motion, claiming that the deposition contained private and embarrassing information, and there was zero legitimate public interest in the subject matter. Judge Rubino rejected this argument, citing things like Cosby's pound cake speech, saying, "Defendant has donned the mantle of public moralist and mounted the proverbial electronic or print soapbox to volunteer his views on, among other things, child rearing, family life, education, and crime. To the extent the defendant has freely entered the public square, he has voluntarily narrowed the zone of privacy that he is entitled to claim." Whoa, that's pretty interesting. So because he's a public figure and he's chosen to share all these elements about his life, the judge is like,
Yeah, we're happy to share these too, mate.
Good. Good. Oh, the hypocrisy coming around and just biting him in the arses. Mwah. On July the 11th, Rubino issued an order to release court papers that contained extracts of Cosby's deposition. One of those extracts included Cosby's admission to using Quaaludes as a party drug and during sex in the 1970s, but many media outlets presented this as Cosby admitting that he drugged and R-worded women. Whoa, media outlets, you gotta be careful. You're just yeah, we think this. It's allegedly, in your opinion. I mean, those two things can be very separate. People doing drugs together and getting it on is very different from someone giving someone drugs and they don't know about it and then assaulting them. On July the 8th, Andrea Constand's lawyer filed a motion to be freed from the confidentiality agreement she signed as part of a financial settlement with Cosby in 2006. On July the 10th, Reza Vetri Furman, who had succeeded Bruce Castor as district attorney for Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, quietly reopened the investigation into Bill Cosby's alleged drugging and sexual assault of Andrea Constand in January or February 2004, and rumors that the case were revived hit the media 2 months later. Furman would neither confirm nor deny. The original charges in the Constand case were treated as misdemeanor-level offenses, which have a 2-year statute of limitations. The question was whether the charges should be elevated to felony levels. Many jurists thought so. Felony sexual assault had a 12-year statute of limitations, due to expire a few months later in early 2016. You gotta delay that. Statute of limitations only runs until they start prosecuting, right? Or say they're going to. Because otherwise, you just, time it out. Right? For, short things, like misdemeanors. You'd just be we're just gonna delay this, and delay this, and it's oh no, he's sick. That's gotta be like the cutoff, right? On July the 18th, the New York Times obtained a copy of the 1,000-page Cosby deposition that was released accidentally by the court reporting service Kaplan, Lehman, and Wolf, despite the fact that the judge had only approved the unsealing of extracts and related court documents. You are good. That is a mistake and a half, ain't it? But the genie was out of a bottle before they could correct the mistake, and more quotes from the Cosby deposition were splashed across the internet in a matter of days. Cosby's comments about being attracted to Constand and using Quaaludes in the 1970s were again misinterpreted by some media outlets as an admission of guilt, and that Cosby had admitted to drugging women and assaulting Constand and Theresa Serengesi. On July the 27th, New York Magazine published a cover story on 35 of Cosby's accusers, which covered each of their allegations in detail. On September the 17th, the television channel A&E had a program called Cosby, The Women Speak, where 13 accusers were interviewed. By the end of 2015, an additional 33 women had come forward with allegations, bringing the total to 61, 31 of whom were represented by the high-profile feminist lawyer Gloria Allred. 2 more women came forward in 2018 and 2023, bringing the total at the time of writing to 63, spanning 43 years, from 1965 to 2008. In my opinion, in my just entire speculation, this is, or just to say fact, these are the people who came forward. Maybe there could be people who were just like, well, I'd just like to leave that buried in the past. Thank you very much. 63 is enough. It's going to be enough, hopefully. Like, I don't need to. I don't want to dig that up. In my opinion, there could be people like that. In my opinion, it's very likely. Welcome to the circus. This may come as a surprise to some audience members not from America, but judges and district attorneys in the USA are very often elected by the people, rather than always being appointed within the judiciary based on their qualifications and experience. Bruce Castor had first been elected as district attorney for Montgomery County in 1999 and served 2 4-year terms from 2000 to 2008, when he resigned and went back to private practice at Elliott Greenleaf and Siedzakowski. Reza Vetri Furman was elected as Montgomery DA in his place. She also served 2 4-year terms, and in the autumn of 2015, she was winding up her duties as DA and hoping to be elected as a judge. So, in the autumn of 2015, when DA Furman was looking into whether Cosby should be charged with the alleged sexual assault of Andrea Constand, a bitter election was taking place for her position. Bruce Castor decided he wanted his old job back. His opponent was Furman's assistant district attorney, Kevin Steele. Castor was polling with a considerable lead when Steele launched a campaign based around how Castor should have prosecuted Cosby for the alleged sexual assault of Andrea Constand back in 2005. Kevin Steele's whole campaign largely revolved around the promise that, if elected, he would seek tough sentences for sexual predators and he would slap the cuffs on Cosby. As a result, the campaign between Castor and Steele turned very negative, with relentless attack ads. Castor was forced to explain publicly how he believed Andrea Constand, but there was no physical evidence. Constand's story had several inconsistencies. She could not remember the month the alleged assault had taken place, and she had waited a year to report it, during which it had regular contact with Cosby, introduced her parents to him, and gave him a gift. Castor said that he didn't think it would hold up in front of a jury. He instead had set up Constand for a civil lawsuit, quote, in the hopes I had just made her a millionaire. Because of the public statements, a week before the election, Andrea Constand sued Castor for defamation and invasion of privacy, asking for $300,000. Constand also released a public statement claiming that Castor had no intention of arresting Cosby in 2005 and suggesting that if Castor won the election, she would not cooperate with a reopened investigation. On November 3, 2015, Kevin Steele beat Castor in the election for Montgomery DA, 89,000 votes to 72,000. But the bitter rivalry between Steele and Castor would later come back to haunt everyone. On December the 29th, due to his... is that something about how he gets out of jail in the end? Or something? Is that about that? That's ringing bells for some reason. On December the 29th, true to his electoral promise, Kevin Steele issued an arrest warrant for Bill Cosby on 3 counts of aggravated sexual assaults. This was a few weeks before the expiry of the statute of limitations, though the exact date has been disputed due to ambiguity over what month the alleged assault actually took place. On December the 30th, Cosby flew by private jet from his palatial estate in Massachusetts to Montgomery County, Pennsylvania, and was taken into custody. He was fingerprinted, posed for a mugshot, and then was released after surrendering his passport and posting $1 million bail. If convicted, Cosby was facing a maximum of 10 years in prison. How old is he by this point? He's got to be an old-ass man, right? December 29th, when was this happening? 2015? 2015. Yeah, so he's like 77, 80, 77? 77, something like that. The judge selected to try the case was Stephen O'Neill. But back in 1999, when Bruce Castor first ran for Montgomery DA in another contentious election, guess who Castor's opponent was? Yeah, it was Stephen O'Neill. After losing, O'Neill went on to be a judge in 2002. Early in 2016, Cosby's defense team filed a motion that the Constant case be dismissed. Oh no. Okay, it's not bad. We're on the wrong mic. I'm going to switch it now. Apologies, everybody. I realized I had the wrong microphone plugged in because I took another break and I filmed something else that uses a different mic. I apologize for the random change in audio. That the Constant case be dismissed due to the fact that in 2005, then District Attorney Bruce Castor had announced Cosby would not be prosecuted for that case and had made a declaration to Cosby's lawyers to that effect. Oh, I remember that. In order to compel Cosby to give a deposition at the civil trial. Yeah, that's what he was like, okay, we're not criminally prosecuting you. Now you can do the civil trial without risk of, Fifth Amendment? What's it called? Where you, incriminate yourself. Right, because he's not incriminating himself, so he has to testify at the civil trial. During the motion hearing, Castor testified in court that all of this was true, but Judge O'Neill dismissed him as not credible and later declared Castor a hostile witness. Meanwhile, on February 3rd, 2016, Judge O'Neill rejected the defense motion and declared that the trial would go forward. Wait, there's going to be a court reporter, don't they have records of this? This decision would later come back to bite everyone but Cosby on the arse. Okay, so this is it. And honestly, if you say he's not going to be criminally prosecuted for that thing, and then you take that back, that's pretty bad. But aren't there other stuff that he could be prosecuted on, allegedly? In that same session on February 3rd, Judge O'Neill also declared that Castor's other political rival, Kevin Steele, would be retained to prosecute Cosby. Also, Judge O'Neill never disclosed to the jury that he was once Bruce Castor's political rival, but had passed judgment on Castor's credibility, allowing the trial to happen. Bruce Castor later said, quote, "The short-term gain of the judge getting an opportunity to poke me in the eye for beating him in an election, and for the district attorney, Kevin Steele, to get the benefit of all the publicity and the negative attacks on me outweighed the long-term embarrassment that these men now have to carry around with them." On April the 13th, Cosby's defense team filed a motion with the Superior Court of Pennsylvania that his 2005 deposition be resealed. The motion was denied, with the judge saying that, quote, "It would be like trying to put toothpaste back in the tube." Yeah, bro, that's all over the internet. Like, what are you going to do? Get every single thing shut down? It's out of the bag, my dude. Cosby's defense team also appealed Judge O'Neill's decision to go ahead with the case, but on the 25th of April 2016, the Superior Court refused to hear the appeal. In retrospect, they should have. On September the 6th, O'Neill set a trial date for June the 5th, 2017. The jury was selected from a different county and were to be sequestered from media coverage during the trial. Yeah, but kind of like the OJ trial, it's like, everyone's been following along, no? In terms of jurisprudence, sexual assault trials are extremely complex and fraught with public tension. Approximately 20% of R-words and sexual assaults that are reported to police actually go to trial, and of those cases that do go to trial, only between 8 and 10% result in a conviction. That's 1.6 to 2% of the overall number of reported incidents, a woefully small percentage that only serves to inflame public opinion and increase distrust in the justice system. I understand that, but the justice system is also built on a system of it's better to see many innocent, guilty people free than one innocent person in prison, which is why we have beyond all reasonable doubt. And, I mean, it is a very low percentage, but it's the justice system. And, I don't know. Yeah, well, I don't have a good answer, do I? It's just there isn't a good answer here. One of the main reasons for this paucity is that many victims do not go to the police immediately after an incident and have a R-word kit procedure done, largely due to extreme psychological trauma and often because they know their assailant. Thus, an overwhelming number of sexual assault trials are conducted without clear physical evidence and often with the only strong circumstantial evidence being the victim's own testimony, which can potentially be made to look less credible by the defense. In other areas of criminal law, for instance, if your house were to get robbed and you saw the person who did it, but you cleaned up the forensic evidence and didn't report the robbery to the police for a year, it would be highly unlikely that a prosecutor would touch the case, much less get a conviction. However, due to the fact that sexual assault is such a horrific crime, extreme trauma prevents victims from immediately going to the police, sometimes for years, and because it holds the potential of a sexual predator walking free and committing another assault, it has become increasingly common for prosecutors to get any other alleged victims whose claims have not been tested in court of law to testify to establish a pattern of behavior by the defendant. The strategy is controversial and has been criticized by some jurists as cluttering up a trial with further unsubstantiated claims, and a defendant finds themselves having to dispute not one sexual assault accusation but two or more, in a move critics argue is designed to poison the jury against a defendant. Well, if this person has a pattern of behavior of being a bit of a piece of isn't that what court is about? They establish that pattern of behavior, and it's you're poisoning the jury to the defendant because the defendant is a piece of It has also been questioned how unproven claims of other crimes can be used to establish guilt beyond a reasonable doubt for the crime actually being adjudicated. I think because it's about establishing a pattern of behavior. Propensity witnesses, as they are called, are used in trials for everything from stalking to murder, so there's a clear legal precedent for them, but the legal test for using a propensity witness is that their testimony has to be logically connected to a specific material issue related to the crime being tried. That doesn't seem very hard. It's like, what's the trial for? Sexual assault? What are all these propensity witnesses? Well, they claim that the defendant was also sexually assaulting them. So, boom, done, easy. Judge Whistler has spoken. Beyond just demonstrating the defendant's bad character, the propensity witnesses had to demonstrate the defendant's motive, intent, mistake, plan, or identity in the crime for which they are being tried. Propensity witnesses have recently played a much more pivotal role in achieving guilty verdicts in sexual assault trials than for other types of criminal trials that have other physical and strong circumstantial evidence. For instance, such testimonies proved crucial in obtaining convictions against Harvey Weinstein at his trials in New York and Los Angeles, at which a significant number of other accusers were permitted to testify. However, it should be noted that during the writing of this script, on April 25th, 2024, Weinstein's New York verdict was overturned and is subject to retrial precisely because the appeals court found the testimonies of Weinstein's other accusers were not connected to his charged crimes other than to demonstrate his bad character. This was found to have prejudiced the jury and deprived Weinstein of his constitutional right to due process and a fair trial. On September 6th, 2016, the Montgomery DA filed a motion to have 13 of Cosby's accusers provide testimony. Cosby's defense team objected, saying that, quote-unquote, old casting couch claims do not substantiate a pattern of behavior. I'm sorry, but if they go there and they say, yeah, this happened to me, this happened to me, this happened to me, isn't that exactly what establishing a pattern of behavior is? On February 24th, 2017, in a move that was criticized by Cosby's accusers at the time, Judge O'Neill ruled that one of the additional 13 women would be permitted to testify to establish a pattern of behavior. Well, 1 point is not a pattern. What's going on? But as we shall see, O'Neill's decision-making on this issue would, shall we say, fluctuate. The propensity witness chosen by the prosecution was Kelly Johnson, allegedly a former longtime friend of Cosby's, who claimed that while working for the William Morris Talent Agency in 1996, Cosby drugged her at a business lunch at the Bella Hotel in LA and then took her up to his hotel room and R-worded her. Additionally, on September 16th, Judge O'Neill ruled that the telephone conversation between Cosby and Gianna Constand discussing her daughter's alleged assault would be permitted in court. On December 5th, Judge O'Neill ruled that Cosby's 2005 deposition could also be used as evidence. Cosby's defense pushed back on the decision, and on April 28th, 2017, the judge reaffirmed that Cosby's deposition mentioning his use of quaaludes and other women he'd had sex with could be used at trial. Well, this is going to help establish that pattern of behavior that we're also keen on. Judge O'Neill excluded from mention in court that Andrea Constand received $3.4 million in the settlement of a civil lawsuit and excluded a defense witness from Temple University who claimed Constand had told her that she was considering making up a false allegation against Cosby to get money. Whoa. The trial commenced on June 15th, 2017. In opening arguments, the defense claimed that Cosby and Constand had a long-running flirtation and that on the evening in question, Constand had brought him incense and bath salts, showed up in a midriff exposing top, that they had dinner and sipped cognac in front of the fireplace, and at one point prior to the drugging, Cosby had touched her leg and Constand did not pull away, as was mentioned in an early police report. The claim that Constand was a lesbian instead of bisexual was implicitly disputed. Then Constand testified to her version of events, being invited to Cosby's Pennsylvania home home, being advised to take 3 pills with a glass of wine, becoming severely impaired, and then being sexually assaulted. Under cross-examination, the defense produced phone records showing Constand made 53 phone calls to Cosby in the 3 or 4 months after the alleged attack, including twice on Valentine's Day. One call lasted for 49 minutes. So this is very much a he said, she said thing at the moment. Then the prosecution called the Canadian police officer who took Constand's complaint in January 2005, followed by the mother and lawyer of Kelly Johnson, followed by Johnson herself. Under cross-examination, Cosby's defense lawyer pointed out to Johnson in a workers' compensation claim made after she was fired from William Morris in 1996 that she'd claimed Cosby had assaulted her in 1990, not 6 years later. Johnson replied that she must have misspoken at the time, responding to a series of follow-up questions with the statement, "I do not recall," all of which reduced her credibility with the jury. Yeah, no surprise. Surely they would have come up... Wow, that's a good one, for the defense. Just to find that little nugget and be like, whoa, you said it was completely 6 years different before. And then just to shut down. It's it doesn't look great. Then Gianna Constand testified, relating her daughter's state of mind and what she'd been told. Then the 2-hour phone call between Gianna Constand and Cosby was played in court. Twice during the call, Cosby apologized, offered to pay for therapy, and offered to pay for college tuition so long as Andrea Constand maintained good grades. While Cosby did express contrition in the phone call for the extramarital nature of the encounter, Andrea Constand's interpretation of events and her reported trauma, twice apologizing at one point, saying about his extramarital affairs, "I feel bad telling you this, I sound like a perverted person." He did not, though, explicitly say that he had sexually assaulted Andrea Constand. Cosby also said that he could not remember the name of the pills he gave Andrea Constand, but would look them up and mail her mother the name. In regard to what drugs Constand took, Cosby's defense team maintained that they were allergy medication, Benadryl, something that Cosby also said in a 2005 deposition, and that Cosby had given her 3 half pills, not 3 full ones. An expert witness was brought in to attest that Benadryl would not have the pronounced sedative, disorientating, and paralyzing effect that Constand testified she felt, and there were other side effects like dry mouth that she did not testify to having. The prosecution maintained the pills were something stronger, but they could not specify what. It goes without saying that Quaaludes were white pills, not blue, and had been off the market since 1985. Yeah, but they were still, you could still get them on the black market, no? Oh wait, could you? Because in that movie, The Wolf of Wall Street, don't they run out of Quaaludes or something? And there's no more left? Then the defense again fought the decision to permit Cosby's 2005 deposition to be read in court, but Judge O'Neill again struck down the motion. Extracts involving Cosby saying that he used Quaaludes during sex with women in the 1970s and his various comments about Andrea Constand and Teresa Serengesi were recited to the jury by Kevin Steele and a detective. Also, Montgomery County Police Sergeant Rachel Schaffer testified that in 2004, Constand had attended a performance of Cosby's at Casino Rama in Canada and had introduced her parents to him and given him the gift of a sweater. The prosecution brought forward psychologist Veronique Vallier as an expert witness who explained why, due to trauma, Constand might have waited a year to report the incident to the police. The defense then moved to declare a mistrial, claiming Vallier wasn't impartial because she'd posted an article on Facebook about Judge O'Neill allowing the case to proceed and called it, quote, a victory. The defense, well, she's the prosecution's witness. Hang on, isn't she... I guess she's not supposed to be biased, but she's the prosecution's witness. The defense claimed that Vallier, as an expert witness, had sought to prejudice the jury. Then what, on a Facebook page that I'm sure the jury are following? It's like, can you imagine being the jury and looking up on Facebook, being like, oh yeah, I'll add that expert witness as a friend. She seems nice. It's a psycho thing to do. Don't do that. I don't think anyone does that. Then the defense tabled a motion to throw out the case because Andrea Constand could not remember the date of the alleged assault or even be sure which month it had happened in, thus it was unclear if the charge actually fell within the 12-year statute of limitations. That's a pretty clever argument, but Judge O'Neill rejected the motions. That's a pretty clever argument, though. Can't they argue on that? That sounds like a good way to get reasonable doubt. Bill Cosby did not take the stand in his own defense. Yeah, it's pretty common. The jury deliberated for 52 hours. On June the 15th, they reported to the judge that they were deadlocked. Of the 3 charges, 7-5 voted to convict Cosby for digital penetration without consent. 7-5 voted to acquit Cosby for Constand being unconscious or unaware during the assault, and 6-5, with 1 abstention, voted to acquit Cosby for drugging without consent. 2 days later, the jury voted 10-2 to convict Cosby on digital penetration and drugging, but 11-1 voted to acquit Cosby on Constand being unconscious or unaware. Shortly thereafter, 3 jurors changed their mind and the vote became more of an even split. Speaking to CNN after the trial, the juror said parts of Constand's testimony were unbelievable. There was no new evidence since the civil trial, and there was no decisive evidence, and they took issue with the wording of the charges. With a hung jury on June the 17th, Judge O'Neill declared a mistrial. That same day, District Attorney Kevin Steele announced that they would retry the case. The second trial. The date of the second trial was originally set for November the 6th, 2017, but in August, Cosby swapped defense attorneys, hiring Thomas Messereau, a lawyer who was famous for defending Mike Tyson, Robert Blake, and Michael Jackson to lead his defense team. All-star right there. As such, the second trial was delayed until April 2018, when Messereau and his team familiarized themselves with the case. Meanwhile, in October 2017, the Me Too movement kicked off with the downfall of Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein. Oh, okay, so my Russell Brand thing, that must have happened way before Me Too, I think. That was like at least a decade ago. In the subsequent months, numerous other powerful men in the entertainment industry, news media, Wall Street, sports, the fashion industry, academia, big tech, the military, and the government lost their jobs or were otherwise disowned by organizations and institutions and effectively cancelled. Some of them, like Weinstein, were eventually convicted at trial, and some of them lost their positions and reputations due to allegations made on social media and in the press alone. Partially out of frustration at the low conviction rate for reported R-word and sexual assaults, a large portion of the Me Too movement were suspicious of the police, the justice system, institutionalized sexism, and thus the proper exercise of due process and the principle of innocent until proven guilty. This surge of feeling came to be symbolized by the hashtag #BelieveWomen that was widely used at the time, though it is sometimes misquoted as Believe All Women. Yeah, it sounds like it's being misquoted as Believe All Women by people on I don't know, the people who aren't into the Me Too movement, which seems a bit weird. It's like, yeah, I mean, shouldn't we be encouraging people to come out about horrible sexual crimes? This socio-political trend only went into remission in 2022 after the Johnny Depp and Amber Heard defamation trial, during which a large portion of the public came to the conclusion that Heard had allegedly taken advantage of the Me Too movement's willingness to believe women in order to make false claims about her ex-husband. Wow, Amber Heard. Wow, that's really bad, Amber Heard, in my opinion. But in 2018, when Bill Cosby's second trial was taking shape, it was the height of the Me Too movement's furious campaign to bring powerful men accused of being sexual predators to justice. Commenters at the time discussed whether Me Too would have influence on the trial. Attorney Gloria Allred, representing over 30 Cosby accusers, said, quote, "Now those who have been silenced, who have feared victim shaming and victim blaming are speaking out. And now the accused are the ones who are afraid of being blamed and shamed. So we're living in a new age." At the start of 2018, the prosecution, again led by DA Kevin Steele, asked that 19 of Cosby's other accusers be allowed to testify in order to establish a pattern of behavior. Judge Stephen O'Neill, who would also be returning for the second trial, increased the number of testimonies from 1 to 5, arguing that all 5 testimonies contained significant similarities. The court would hear, well, exact good, so you got the 5. They're all very similar, which is, that's what we're doing, isn't it? We're establishing that pattern of behavior. The court would hear from Janice Dickinson, Janice Baker-Kinley, Heidi Thomas, Chellan Lasher, and Lisa Lottie Lublin. Kelly Johnson was dropped from the roster. There were a lot of allegations to discuss in court alongside Andrea Constans, but one thing the defense had going for them was that of the 5 witnesses, only Janice Dickinson had allegedly tried to go on public prior to Andrea Constans' highly publicized civil suit in 2005, claiming that Cosby had drugged and assaulted her. In 2002, Dickinson had reportedly provided the story in her memoir, but her publisher told her to cut it for legal reasons. Oh, I remember that from thousands of words ago. Dickinson eventually succeeded in going public in 2014, but the defense had their own plans for Dickinson. Meanwhile, the other 4 witnesses had come forward in 2014 and 2015 after the Hannibal Buress clip that went viral, and there was a renewed burst of media activity. The defense contended that these 4 women had come forward either for money, public attention, or revenge against Cosby for past slights. Indeed, to the considerable advantage of Cosby's defense team, unfortunately 59 of the 63 Cosby accusers came forward fully on the public record only sometime after Andrea Constand's 2005 civil suit, which detailed the MO of drugging and sexual assault. The remaining four were Jenny Dickinson, Joan Tarshish, who allegedly told journalists about Cosby sometime in the 1980s, but to my knowledge this has not been verified, Victoria Valentino, who allegedly talked about Cosby in an unaired interview in 1996, but to my knowledge the tape has not been found, and Lasheel Covington, who went to the NYPD in 2000, but no drugs were involved, and a prosecutor at the time decided that since Cosby had not persisted in his advances after Covington pulled her hand away, that no crime had been committed. Yeah, fair enough. That was possibly the weakest one that we've seen today. Sean Brown, the mother of Autumn Jackson, is sometimes incorrectly included in this group because her affair with Cosby came out in 1997, but she only made a public R-word allegation after Andrea Constand's civil suit hit the media in 2005, going into detail in 2014. That really only left Janice Dickinson, who could not be tarred by Cosby's defense team with the brush of copying the MO in Andrea Constand's allegations to get money, public attention, or revenge. Cosby's representatives argued that to see such a massive influx of accusers after Constand's civil case in 2005 and the Hannibal Buress viral clip in 2014 wasn't infeasible for a celebrity known to hundreds of millions worldwide. It wouldn't happen to a plumber, but it sure as hell could happen to Bill Cosby. I mean, but surely some of these, there's a lot of women here. Surely some of them are pretty well off and they don't need money. There won't be the motivation for them or attention or all of this stuff. Is that really attention you want? In 2018, the defense team filed a motion to dismiss the case, arguing that the statute of limitations had definitely passed. They filed a separate motion to dismiss, alleging prosecutorial misconduct, claiming that the prosecution had not informed the defense of an alleged friend of Constand's who had told detectives the assault had not taken place and that the notes from the friend's interview had been destroyed. Judge O'Neill rejected the two motions. In March, it came out that Judge O'Neill's wife, Deborah O'Neill, a social worker at the University of Pennsylvania, had donated money to a Me Too advocacy group that planned to stage a protest in front of the courthouse during the trial. Bill Cosby's second trial began on April 10th, 2018. In his opening statement, defense attorney Thomas Messerow revealed to the jury that Andrea Constand had received $3.4 million from Cosby and characterized her as a quote-unquote con artist who entrapped Cosby with fake assault allegations for monetary gain. To support this contention, Messerow claimed that before 2005, Constand had struggled financially, frequently falling behind on things like phone and credit card bills. Messerow also claimed that Constand ran a pyramid scheme as a sideline while working for Temple University's women's basketball team. Messerow concluded, "This is the person the prosecution wants you to trust beyond a reasonable doubt. I think you're in for a surprise when you find out who this person is." This is another reason why people don't like coming forward with this. Because you got to go and sit in court while some dude is going to attempt to destroy you, to bring up all of this, alleged things against you, make accusations, all sorts of stuff, just to get their client, some reasonable doubt. And that's miserable. The jury heard from Heidi Thomas, who alleged that Cosby had drugged and sexually assaulted her in Reno in 1984. The defense largely failed at cross-examination, trying to imply Thomas had received a significant amount of money from coming forward, which Thomas simply denied, and pointing to a Facebook message Thomas had sent Constand saying, quote, "I got your back, sister," which means practically nothing. Then the jury heard from Sheelin Lasher, who claimed that Cosby had drugged her and humped her leg at the Las Vegas Hilton in 1986. At one point during her testimony, Lasher spoke directly to Cosby, saying, "You don't remember me, do you?" Now, this is a big no-no in criminal trials. The defense immediately moved for a mistrial. Judge O'Neill denied the motion and reprimanded Lasher. Meanwhile, the defense brought up a 2007 conviction of Lasher's for lying to law enforcement. Then the jury heard from Janet. Wait, can't you lie to law enforcement? Is that a crime? That's not a crime, is it? Wait. Unless you're under oath, why can't you lie? Where's the crime? Lying's not a crime. David must mean perjury or something, right? Then the jury heard from Janice Baker Kinney, who alleged in 1982 that she had been drugged and R-worded by Cosby in Las Vegas. Under cross-examination, Messerow quoted Baker Kinney's statement to the media, quote, "For 30 years, I didn't know that I had been R-worded." Baker Kinney accused Messerow of twisting her words, saying she meant it took her a long time to come to terms with what had happened. Then the jury heard from Janice Dickinson. This is a very, competent defense. This is why it's quite so a lot, isn't it? Who accused Cosby of drugging and her there in Lake Tahoe, Nevada in 1982. She showed the jury a picture she had taken of Cosby talking on the phone in his hotel room. Dickinson claimed her editor later convinced her to drop the story from her 2002 memoir for legal reasons. During cross-examination, Mesereau approached Dickinson holding a copy of that memoir called No Lifeguard on Duty and asked why her account of Lake Tahoe in 1982 differed significantly from the one she just gave on stand. Mesereau read out a passage from the memoir that said Dickinson rebuffed Cosby's advances, and then she took 2 Quaaludes and went to sleep alone in her own hotel room. The implication being, if she was worried about Cosby suing, why mention an incident with Cosby at all? Dickinson replied, quote, "It's all a fabrication in there because I wanted a paycheck for my kids." She added that her ghostwriter had taken quote-unquote poetic license with a life story. Mesereau asked, "So you made things up to get a paycheck?" Right, but there's obviously a huge difference here, Mesereau. One is a book. The other is saying something on the stand under oath, where if you lie and they find out, you go to prison, maybe. Or you get a criminal record. To which Dickinson replied, "I wasn't under oath when I wrote the book." Very smart reply. Mesereau then started reading excerpts from 3 of Dickinson's books, where she described scenes in the 1970s and 80s that involved heavy drug use and promiscuous sex. Dickinson denied that she actually took drugs or engaged in promiscuity, saying that her ghostwriter took quote-unquote dramatic liberties. A number of news outlets reported at the time that all of this reduced Dickinson's credibility as a witness, as did the fact that Dickinson only came forward in public with the version involving drugging and R-word in 2014. Do I believe her? Yes. If I was on the jury, is that defense lawyer doing a good job of establishing reasonable doubt? Hell yes. That effectively left 5 propensity witnesses who could credibly establish that they'd spoken on public record about their experiences and the MO of drugging and sexual assault prior to 2005. Then the jury heard from Lisa Lott Lublin, who alleged that Cosby had drugged and sexually assaulted her in Las Vegas in 1989. Under cross-examination, the defense pointed out that in Lublin's testimony, she could only recall Cosby stroking her hair and could not remember how she got home. The defense argued that Lublin only assumed she'd been assaulted after seeing media accounts in 2014. Oh my god, this is such clever lawyering. It's such clever lawyering. In my personal opinion, this argument was fairly weak in one respect, since it implicitly acknowledged Lublin's diminished state of consciousness while in Cosby's presence. Then the prosecution called Andrea Constant, who gave her account of the 2004 incident, saying that she had come to court, quote, for justice. Under cross-examination, Mesereau asked her about the confusion over the month in which Constant said the alleged assault happened, namely January or February, and Constant explained that when talking to police in 2005, she conflated 2 dates, one for the incident itself and another for when she tried to confront Cosby about what he allegedly did. This is fine. People are gonna get dates wrong when they're talking about times quite distant past. People, of course. Quote, "I was just trying to recall an enormous amount of information and I was very nervous and I was just trying to piece it together." Mesereau then asked Constant about her money troubles prior to 2005 and asked her about the alleged pyramid scheme and the alleged cheating of an investor. Constant said she did not clearly recall the alleged pyramid scheme and claimed that she was just helping out a friend. Mesereau then asked Constant why she spent time with Cosby in a Connecticut hotel just prior to the time of the alleged assault. Constant claimed she'd gone to the hotel to pick up some baked goods from Cosby, sat on the edge of the bed, and had stayed no longer than 10 minutes. Then Mesereau asked Constant why she phoned Cosby twice on Valentine's Day. Constant said that those calls, and all 53 post-incident calls with Cosby before leaving her position in April, were always related to Temple University business, with her as operations manager for the women's basketball team and Cosby as a Temple University trustee. Mesereau expressed astonishment at the idea that such a number of business calls would be required between a sports employee and a trustee. Again, doing so well at establishing that reasonable doubt. Then the court heard testimony from Gianna Constant, similar to that of 2017, and again heard the secretly recorded telephone conversation between her and Cosby. Gianna Constant denied that she had benefited monetarily from her daughter's $3.4 million settlement. Judge O'Neill again ruled that the jury could hear from Cosby's 2005 deposition involving his use of Quaaludes in the 70s, his pursuit of Andrea Constant, and his encounter with Teresa Serengesi, and it was all read in court again. On April the 18th, the jury heard from former Temple University academic advisor Marguerite Jackson, who claimed that on a university basketball trip to Rhode Island in 2004, she was watching TV with Andrea Constant. According to Jackson, they observed a news story where a celebrity had been accused of sexual assault. Jackson claims that Constant told her, quote, "Oh wow, something similar happened to me." Jackson told the court that she'd encouraged Constand to report it, but Constand allegedly switched gears, allegedly saying that the assault didn't happen, but, quote, I could say it did, I could say it happened, get that money, quit my job, go back to school and start a business. Uh-oh. Marguerite Jackson was not allowed to testify at Cosby's first trial because Constand denied ever meeting her. Then another Temple employee testified she recalled seeing Constand and Jackson interacting regularly while at Temple University, and so at the second trial, Constand simply testified that she did not recall having this conversation with Jackson or seeing her in Rhode Island. Again, if you're on the jury, this is reasonable doubt. This is what reasonable doubt is. Then the defense called Cosby's publicist and travel manager, who testified that according to private jet travel logs, Cosby had engagements all over the country in January 2004, and no record suggested he'd traveled to Philadelphia. But due to the fact that no specific date in January had been given, and that the assault potentially could have happened in another month, and that Cosby could have used a different plane to travel to Philadelphia, it was difficult to use Cosby's travel logs as a solid alibi. Then the defense filed a motion asking for extracts from an interview they'd conducted with Sherry Williams, the alleged former friend of Constand and alleged architect of the pyramid scheme, to be read to the jury. Sherry Williams had not responded to 8 subpoenas to appear in court. In the interview, Williams claimed that Constand was a willing participant in the pyramid scheme, sending out emails soliciting investments. But Judge O'Neill ruled that Williams' interview could not be read out in court because the prosecution would be denied an opportunity to cross-examine the witness. Yeah, fair play. I mean, you tried. You sent her 8 subpoenas. Was it? Hasn't she been? Don't they do it where they have the person in the movies like, you've been served. It's like, hey, Simon. You're like, yeah, what's up? You've been served. It's like, okay, and then it's like, don't they come and get you? Like, take you to court and be like, you got to sit there and say some. Once again, Cosby did not take the stand in his own defense, and shortly after confirming that was still the case, Judge O'Neill sent the jury into deliberations. After 2 days, they came back with a verdict of guilty beyond a reasonable doubt on all 3 counts of aggravated sexual assault against Andrea Constand. Again, do I believe on balance of probabilities that this is correct? Yeah. Do I think they got to beyond all reasonable doubt? I don't think so. Kevin Steele rose and asked that Cosby's $1 million bail be rescinded since he owned a private plane and could be a flight risk. However, Cosby had divested himself of his private jet, given that he'd been on bail awaiting trial for the last 2.5 years, and at that point, Cosby angrily shouted, "He doesn't have a plane, you asshole." Judge O'Neill did not deem Cosby a flight risk and set his sentencing hearing for September 24th, 2018. 5 months later, at the sentencing itself, Andrea Constand's comments were brief, asking for, quote, justice as the court sees fit. Kevin Steele said that Cosby, quote, had shown no acceptance of responsibility for his actions, no remorse. He doesn't think he's done anything wrong. Cosby's lawyers argued extensively that his sentence should be house arrest, and a back and forth between the defense and prosecution over sentencing took the rest of the session. Court reconvened on September the 25th. Judge Stephen O'Neill sentenced Cosby to 3 to 10 years in prison, depending on when he could successfully apply for parole, plus a $25,000 fine, plus paying $420,000 of the cost of prosecution. Judge O'Neill told Cosby he was a, quote, sexually violent predator that had crushed Constand's beautiful young spirit, and, quote, it's time for justice, Mr. Cosby. This is all circled back to you. NPR heralded the sentencing as, quote, the first celebrity prison sentence of the Me Too era. Not the last, though, Harvey. As good as it gets. Bill Cosby was sent to Pennsylvania State Correctional Institution, Phoenix, recently constructed in 2014 with a capacity for 3,800 prisoners. Cosby shared a space with death row inmates like serial killer Harvey Miguel Robinson, along with a multitude of wife killers and mass shooters, drug dealers, and R-wordists. Cosby had initially requested that he be placed under house arrest while he appealed his conviction, but Judge O'Neill denied this. Cosby was appealing on the grounds that the propensity witnesses were too remote in time and too dissimilar to be admitted into evidence. He also cited Judge O'Neill's pre-trial dismissal of Bruce Castor and his decision to allow reading of the 2005 deposition. 2.5 months after going to jail, Cosby's appeal with the Superior Court of Pennsylvania was unanimously denied, saying that the 5 propensity witnesses and deposition had demonstrated a distinct signature pattern of sexual assault and that it had not been proven that O'Neill had a personal bias against Castor. And indeed, the bar to have a judge proclaimed biased is very high. In January 2020, Cosby applied to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court for a further appeal. District Attorney Kevin Steele fought against this appeal being heard. After 6 months, on June the 23rd, 2020, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court agreed to hear Cosby's appeal. This time, it was based on the use of propensity witnesses being, quote, more prejudicial than probative, whether statements Cosby made in his 2005 deposition should have been used against him in court, and whether the declaration of then DA Bruce Castor not to prosecute meant that Cosby's 2 trials should have happened at all. Cosby's appeal was heard by the Pennsylvania Supreme Court over 5 months later on December 1st, 2020. They took a further 7 months to consider their ruling. Meanwhile, 2 years and 8 months after Cosby had been jailed, he applied for parole. This was denied by the parole board on May 28, 2021. The parole board stated that Bill Cosby had received a negative report from prison officials and that he had refused to enroll in a sexual violence treatment program. The parole board said that until Cosby enrolled in the program, he would not be granted another hearing. Cosby representative said that he would never enroll in such a program since it would be tantamount to an admission of guilt. You're in prison. They decided you were guilty. As such, the 83-year-old Cosby was looking at serving the full 10-year sentence. Then, on June the 30th, 2021, the Pennsylvania Supreme Court overturned Bill Cosby's convictions. This comes out of left field, doesn't it? The court found that both trials had violated Cosby's Fifth Amendment rights to due process and against self-incrimination. Right, because they said you won't be prosecuted on these charges when he went to do the civil case. Right? In 2005, Bruce Castor had publicly declared that he would not prosecute Cosby in order to prevent him from taking the Fifth and refusing to give a deposition at the Constand civil trial. The deposition was then used against Cosby as evidence in 2017 and 2018, depriving him of a fair trial. This also deprived Cosby of his 14th Amendment rights, which confirm the rights of due process and against self-incrimination apply to both state and federal levels. Castor had not signed a formal immunity agreement with Cosby, but he didn't need to. And although Castor had ceased to be the district attorney in January 2008, no time limit or qualification was given in his declaration, and the Pennsylvania Supreme Court ruled that the declaration not to prosecute was therefore binding on all of his successors. And I mean, this is a fair play. If that's like, this is fair. In the ruling, Justice David Wecht called Cosby's subsequent arrest in December 2016, quote, an affront to fundamental fairness, particularly when it results in a criminal prosecution that was foregone for more than a decade. Due to the open-ended guarantee given by Castor, the Supreme Court barred any future district attorney from retrying the case. The court did not rule on the use of propensity witnesses, declaring the point moot since Cosby should not have been arrested, charged, and prosecuted in the first place. The dissenting judges also agreed with the majority that when Stephen O'Neill dismissed Castor's declaration and admitted the 2005 deposition into evidence, it had deprived Cosby of a fair trial. But they argued that since Castor could not speak for his successors, Cosby could still be retried, just not with the 2005 deposition in evidence. One of the dissenting judges added that the prosecution's use of propensity witnesses was far more problematic than the Castor issue. District Attorney Kevin Steele, who had brought charges against Cosby after being elected on a promise to do so, reacted to the judgment by claiming that Cosby was released, quote, on a procedural issue that is irrelevant to the facts of the crime. Similarly, on social media and among some commentators in the press, it was repeatedly stated that Cosby had, quote, gotten off on a technicality. No! It was like they made him a promise and then they reneged on that promise. And then he's like, guys, you come on. Please note that the constitutional right to a fair trial and the right to remain silent are not technicalities. They are the bedrock of the American judicial system. You could, like the dissenting judges, reasonably make the argument that the constitutional violations toss out the results of the previous 2 trials and Cosby could be rearrested and retried without the 2005 deposition, given the way things are going, probably without the propensity witnesses. But a technicality? No. In November 2021, DA Kevin Steele filed a petition with the United States Supreme Court asking for them to conduct a judicial review over whether Cosby and his legal team were reckless to assume that Bruce Castor's declaration was binding. Cosby's lawyers fired back that, quote, the Montgomery County DA asks the United States Supreme Court to throw the Constitution out the window, as he did, to satisfy the Me Too mob. On March 7, 2022, the U.S. Supreme Court rejected Steele's petition in a unanimous decision. Essentially, Steele couldn't blame Cosby for Bruce Castor inadvertently setting him up to violate the 5th and 14th Amendments. You could debate whether Bruce Castor should have prosecuted Cosby in 2005. You could debate whether Andrea Constand's case was strong enough to convince a jury on its own without propensity witnesses or the cultural influence of the Me Too movement in 2018. But the rush to prosecute Cosby on an electoral promise, the ignoring of a DA's declaration not to prosecute, and the use of the 2005 deposition in court twice not only deprived Bill Cosby of a fair trial, regardless of his guilt or innocence, but in the long run also deprived Andrea Constand and the other women who invested their emotions in the two trials of enduring sense of justice. All that judicial sloppiness had retrospectively robbed both Bill Cosby and Andrea Constand of their day in a free and fair court. Yeah, it's really unfortunate. It's just how it played out. It's just super unfortunate for people who, allegedly think Bill Cosby belongs in jail, allegedly. Bill Cosby was released from prison on June the 30th, 2021, the same day the convictions were overturned and driven to his house in Elkins Park, Pennsylvania. His spokesman said, "What we saw today was justice. Justice for all Americans. Mr. Cosby's conviction being overturned is for the world and all Americans who are being treated unfairly by the judicial system and some bad officers." Cosby tweeted, "I've never changed my stance nor my story. I've always maintained my innocence. Thank you to all my fans, supporters, and friends who stood by me through this ordeal. Special thanks to the Pennsylvania Supreme Court for upholding the rule of law." Meanwhile, the reaction was quite different among Cosby's accusers. Lily Bernard said, quote, "I'm so concerned now for any woman that comes into close contact with him." PJ Marston said, "You want to talk about rubbing volcanic salt into the wounds of the survivors? My God, how much more can we take?" Tamara Green said, "I thought, well done, lawyers, because I did not see the issue coming at all. I thought it was just a practice swing. But I want people to understand that this does not mean he's been exonerated." And Teresa Seregnesi said, quote, "We all know who he is, and whatever happens, he did spend 3 years in prison. In America, I guess that's about as good as it gets for a sexual assault victim." Dismembered appendices. Number 1. In the aftermath of the Hannibal Buress video bringing Cosby back into the news, a number of his accusers launched civil suits against him in 2014 and 2015, either for R-word or for defamation after Cosby's public denials. Renita Hill's defamation lawsuit was dismissed in 2016 by a federal judge because she couldn't demonstrate malice, which has a very high tier. Christina Rulli dropped hers the same year, saying she didn't need the money, just the vindication. Catherine McKee's lawsuit was dismissed in 2017, again on the malice obstacle. In 2019, while Cosby was imprisoned, his insurance company, AIG, settled with Janice Dickinson, Chloe Goines, who in her second lawsuit listed the now-dead Hugh Hefner as a co-defendant, and a defamation suit composed of Tamara Green, Teresa Seregnesi, Linda Traits, Barbara Bowman, Joan Tarshish, Louisa Morris, and Angela Leslie. Cosby was enraged that AIG had settled, saying they had done so without his permission. Judith Huth, who was 16 at the time of her alleged assault, started a lawsuit in 2014 and it dragged on for years, with Cosby refusing to settle until 2022, when a California jury ordered Cosby to pay Huth $500,000. In 2021, Lily Bernard filed a lawsuit asking for $225 million, including $25 million per alleged sexual assault and $125 million in damages. She was later joined by 8 other accusers, including Janice Dickinson and Angelina Leslie, who were back for another round of litigation. As far as I know, the case is still ongoing. In 2023 and 2024, 4 more of Cosby's accusers launched individual civil suits. Cosby has publicly vowed never to settle, since it would be interpreted by some as guilt. Well, he's almost 80 years old, right? So he's just got to run out the clock. Just hope you don't run out of money before you run out the clock. Number 2. Mark Whitaker's biography, Cosby, His Life and Times, was researched and written over several years and came out in 2014, just prior to the Hannibal Buress video. In the preface, Whitaker writes about how he had been rebuffed by Cosby's representatives in writing the book, but then Cosby got in touch and supplied him with key names and information. Whitaker's book does not mention the Andrea Constand civil trial or any such allegations, and the book was derided shortly after its release for sanitizing Cosby's story. However, as far as I can tell, contrary to some accusations made in the press and on social media at the time, Whitaker wasn't part of some paid Cosby propagandist thing or a stooge. He just had terrible, terrible timing, and perhaps should have expanded his sources or chosen a different subject to write about. Yeah, we can't blame him, though. He didn't know. Oh, in 2014, there was a bit of stuff about it, right? But nothing like there was later on. Bill Cosby's 2-time screen wife, Felicia Richard, remained steadfast in support of Cosby during the period of 2014 to 2021, refusing to believe the allegations against him. She made several statements of support, resulting in significant public backlash. When Cosby was released in 2021, Richard tweeted, "Finally, a terrible wrong has been righted. a miscarriage of justice is corrected. 4. After Cosby got out of prison in 2021, he began planning a comeback. He started scheduling comedy tours across the US, Canada, and the UK. He also started plans to produce a 5-part documentary about on his life and the events of 2014 to 2021. Cosby also plans to release a book. However, citing legal problems, these plans are, at the time of writing, still on hold. The cost of getting everything legally sound on that would be enormous. Number 5. Norm Macdonald's famous routine on Cosby centers around fellow comedian Patton Oswalt saying to him, "The worst thing about the Cosby affair is the hypocrisy," to which Macdonald replies, "I don't think that was the worst thing. I think it was all the R word." Norm Macdonald's incredibly funny. Macdonald's routine also involves the coining of the term Cosby cock, pretending to be waking from a drug-induced stupor saying, "What is that? Is that a Cosby cock? Why would there be a Cosby cock?" Family Guy also memed the Cosby allegations, showing a rendition of the old intro sequence to The Cosby Show, where Cosby is dancing around and all his female co-stars are unconscious. Fucking hell. Number 6. A much earlier Cosby reference by The Simpsons has an episode where Homer reads Cosby's ghost-written book Fatherhood in order to become a better parent to his son Bart. In the next season, Cosby's book can be seen burning in the fireplace. Meanwhile, to my knowledge, nobody has burned my books, and they remain on sale in all fine bookstores. Number 7. My paternal grandfather loved Bill Cosby, and from the 1960s to 1990s, he was constantly doing impressions of him until one day, his wife told him nobody thought it was funny anymore. You should shut the hell up. Number 8, and the final one. Oh, this was a long video. The words alleged and allegedly appear 417 times in this script, so probably 1,000 by the time I've been done with it. Anyway, that's where we end this beast of an episode. Thanks for being here, and I'll see you next time.